Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. There is also a link in the description to my Patreon. It has Naruto fanfiction that cannot be posted on YouTube. There is some free content on there. So, you don't have to be a paying member to enjoy listening to excellent fanfiction.
Hinata alone. The path had no markers, no signs, no system pop-ups, no chakra trail, only a map carved into the inside of a tree. 3 spirals nested together, the lines drawn in ash and faded red thread. Hinata found it in a dream. Or maybe it found her. Now she walked alone through a forest that had never known sunlight. The trees grew too close together. Their trunks split like fingers, curling upward into spirals of bone-white bark. The moss was pale, the roots shaped like sleeping figures. The deeper she walked, the quieter the world became. No birds, no chakra signatures, not even wind, just breath, not hers, the world's, like the whole forest was breathing with her. You have entered a memory-locked domain. Divine access Azura, the 3-headed breath of life. Spiritual invocation conditionally triggered by grief and refusal. She stepped between 2 spiraled trees, their trunks arched like ribs. And there it was, the temple of Azura. Not a building, a crater, circular, swallowed into the earth, lined with broken statues. 3 faced figures with their mouths stitched shut. One smiled, one wept, one screamed. The temple floor was made of shattered mirror tiles, reflecting the sky in pieces. At the center, a stone prayer mat, faded from centuries of forgotten knees. No one was here. No one had ever been here. And yet, she felt them all. Hinata stepped forward, kneeled, and breathed. Not a technique, not meditation, just breath, in and out, and the world breathed with her. Invocation recognized first breath, the one who remembered, past life sync protocol initializing. She closed her eyes, and the mirror beneath her flickered. Not with light, with lives. A girl holding a child during the fall of the valley. A monk tending fire for rebels beneath the divine mountain. A soldier carrying her sister's bones across the battlefield of the 10th cycle. A medic who died before healing even one person. A boy who looked like her, but didn't call himself Hinata. Who held a sword and wept as he betrayed someone he loved. They appeared around her like afterimages, sitting cross-legged, one by one, in a ring around the crater. Not ghosts, not visions, versions. Her. One spoke first. She was old, hair braided, eyes blind. You're late. Another. A teenage boy with burn scars down his face. No one told her. They never tell us anything. A third. Calm, pale, dressed in white funeral robes, let her remember on her own. Hinata trembled. Her breath hitched. But she didn't cry. She just asked, "Who am I?" The wind didn't answer. They did. All of them. At once. You are all of us. And none of us. You are the one who lived long enough to ask. Hinata opened her eyes. And the crater had changed. She wasn't kneeling on stone. She was standing in a ring of fire, beneath a sky shaped like Azura's 3 heads. Smiling, weeping, screaming. Above her, 1,000 memories swirled like stars. And all of them whispered, "What will you do with what we left behind?" She stepped forward, and the first of her past selves walked toward her. She looked maybe 16, wore a cracked forehead protector with the Senju clan crest. Her hands were burned, her eyes tired. But when she looked at Hinata, she smiled. "We always wanted to be strong, but we were never allowed to be. What are you going to become?" Hinata didn't answer yet, because this is just the beginning. She's not here to inherit. She's here to remember, and decide what to do with what she finds. The crater temple quieted, not with silence, but with reverence. The mirror tiles stilled, the sky above folded like fabric. The breathing of her past self slowed. And then, he stepped through. No grand entrance, no wind, no title announced. He walked like he had always been here, like he was coming home. Azura, but not golden, not crowned. His robes were stitched from funeral cloth, dirt-stained, marked with seal script so old even the gods had forgotten how to read it. His 3 heads were not physical, but felt. An emotional trinity. One smiled, one wept, one whispered prayers in a language only the dead remembered. Hinata didn't bow, not out of disrespect, because she couldn't move. He was compassion made real, and it made her ache. He stopped before her, tilted his head slightly, and spoke with a voice that wrapped around the soul like warm breath on a winter day. "So, you came." Hinata's lips parted, but no sound came out. He smiled. The weeping face shed a tear behind it. "I was never the strongest. That was never what he needed me to be. My brother inherited the blade. I inherited the breath. Hagoromo chose me to carry the stories." He sat across from her, folded his hands, didn't demand anything. He just watched, waited, until she asked, "Why me?" He nodded. Not approval, just acknowledgement. "Because you're the one who never looked away. In every life. When the world burned, when your clan fell, when the boy died. You kept your eyes open." The wind moved. The crater tiles flickered again. She saw herself kneeling over broken bodies, helping children from collapsed homes, writing names no one else remembered. Do you know what this is? He asked, gesturing to the temple. Hinata shook her head. He smiled again, softer now. It's not a place of power. It's a tomb, for every version of you that was never allowed to live. The breath caught in her chest. He leaned forward, voice a whisper now, still carrying that impossible gentleness. But you're alive, and because you are, you can carry them. He reached out, placed 2 fingers on her brow, and the world split open. A rush, not a vision, but a feeling. Rage from a warrior queen cut down in betrayal. Hope from a boy who refused to kill. Grief from a healer who failed to save her friend. Joy from a child who planted flowers in a garden that burned the next day. 1,000 lives, 1,000 selves, all of them her, all of them waiting. And then, stillness. She gasped, fell to her knees, tears slipping down her cheeks without sound. Not from pain, from weight. Azura didn't comfort her. He just sat with her, let it settle, then spoke again. You now have access to the state of the breath-bound mirror. Every memory, every talent, every failure, every scar, but not for power, for stewardship. He rose, looked not at her, but through time itself. You are not a fighter, not first. You are a keeper, of the names, of the pain, of the ones the world would rather forget. Hinata looked up, voice raw. Why me? The weeping face behind his smile answered, because you asked. And the screaming head whispered, because you doubted. Azura took 1 step back, and the world folded again. But he lingered. Just long enough to say doubt is sacred, but don't let it decide for you. They need you to remember, and you need to decide what to do with everything you've kept. He faded, like he had never been there, and the crater was hers again. You have entered the state of the breath-bound mirror. Recollection access partial sync initialized. Legacy slot guardian of the 1,000 echoes, 12% awakening. Hinata stood, alone, but no longer lonely, and behind her, the wind carried 1,000 names, waiting to be spoken. She walked for hours, no need for direction. Something inside her pulled. Like breath made gravity. Not chakra, not instinct. Memory, one she hadn't lived yet. She found the waterfall at dusk. It carved itself down a cliff of petrified roots, the stone veined with old bloodstains from wars fought in another life. The water was pale, not clear, not blue, pale, as if even the spring had forgotten what light was supposed to feel like. No birds, no insects, just the roar of falling water. And something deeper, a hum that throbbed behind the sound. Not physical, personal. She stepped into the pool. The water rose to her waist. Freezing, but not unbearable. It bit like truth. She knelt beneath the fall, let it crash down her back, and closed her eyes. Initiating inner mirror confrontation. Breathbound sync 37%. Psychospiritual host integrity stable. Warning unresolved trauma detected, manifestation imminent. The world turned black. She stood in a hall of paper and blood. Tatama floors. Scroll-lined walls. A high window through which the Hyuga compound loomed, its symbol etched into the ceiling like a brand. She was barefoot, wearing her childhood robe, the one they made her wear at court when she was introduced as the adopted Senju. Her hands were bleeding. Kneel, a voice said. Speak your lineage. She turned. No one stood there, but she remembered this room. This day, she was 8. I'm Hinata, Hinata of the Senju. Crack, the cane. She had forgotten the sound, but not the feeling. You are Hinata of the Hyuga, said the voice. You were given our name. You will live under it. She fell to her knees, hands trembling. She didn't want to cry, but she did. She always had. Another voice, this one familiar, bitter, sharp as iron. Crying again? She turned, and saw him, not her cousin, not anymore, not the Niji she buried in another life. Her, dressed in his skin, the same eyes, the same judgment, her inner darkness. He stepped forward, arms folded, smiling the way Hyuga elders smiled when they said you're lucky to be here. They took everything from you, your name, your clan, your father, even your pride, and you still bowed. Hinata stared at him. Tears fell again, but she didn't run. Not this time. You're not Niji, she whispered. The figure tilted its head. No, I'm the version of you who didn't forgive them. The version who remembered every slap, every silence. Every time you prayed, they'd let you be yourself. And they told you to kneel instead. He stepped closer. The walls cracked. The scrolls bled. The window shattered. You don't get to carry memory if you can't carry this. You want to remember your past lives? Then remember your life first. You want to speak for the world? Then say your own name like it matters. Hinata clenched her fists. Her knees shook, but she stood, slowly. I am Hinata, of the Senju, and I was never yours. The Niji figure laughed, louder now, mocking, but cracking. Then prove it. He lunged. No jutsu, no weapons, just fury, her own, reflected back. Hinata didn't run, didn't fight back. She caught him, mid-swing, held him in place, and cried, but not from fear, not from pain, from grief. I didn't deserve it. But I survived it. The figure stilled, eyes wide. His fist shook. He looked at her for the first time without hate. So remember me, he whispered. Even this part. Hinata nodded, and held him until he vanished. Inner darkness resolved 1-3. Breathbound synced 61%. Memory authority awakening, in progress. Fable fragment gained the one who held her own name. She opened her eyes. The waterfall roared, but the water felt warm now, and her hands no longer trembled. She stepped out of the water, soaked to the bone, the forest mist curling around her like fog. The air felt different, not lighter, but quieter, the kind of quiet that came after someone stopped screaming. Not because they were safe, but because they were too tired. Then, a sound, snap, a branch, quick breath, someone trying to hold still. She turned. Chakra flickered just behind the trees. Unstable, wounded, afraid. She didn't reach for a weapon, just stepped forward, hands open. And there, beneath a half-collapsed root arch, hidden in moss and broken cloth, a child, maybe 10, skin scraped raw, one arm bound in crusted bandages, the other hand gripping a rusted kunai that was too big for his fingers. He didn't speak, didn't beg, just stared, eyes wide, like he thought she might be another monster. Hinata didn't move. She just knelt, lowered herself, made her presence smaller. I won't hurt you, she said. The boy flinched, didn't believe her. Of course he didn't. Why would he? She waited. One breath, two, and then he collapsed. Not from trust, from exhaustion. His body gave out. The kunai dropped. His bandaged arm curled up against his chest. He hit the dirt like a whisper. Hinata rushed forward, caught him before his head struck stone. His body was burning. Fever, poison chakra. She placed her hand to his forehead and stopped. A whisper echoed in her chest. A memory, a face she didn't remember living with. The healer. A past life. Her hands moved without asking, not with practice skill, but with ancient memory. She pulled gauze from her pack, used pressure points the child didn't flinch from, wrote a symbol on the wound with fable ink. Keep the breath steady. Remember his name. The system flared, not in her vision, in the world. The trees tilted toward her. The air bent slightly, and the boy's breathing slowed. Not fixed, not healed, but surviving. Memory reclamation triggered. Breath of the Ash Healer 4% synced. You have saved one life. Path of Stewardship affirmed. Recognition 1. You were seen by the broken sky. She carried him to a hollow in the stone, built a fire, watched him sleep, didn't speak, didn't move, just watched. And as the night deepened, the wind shifted. A message on it. Not system, not God, just a whisper. One life remembered is worth 10 forgotten deaths. Hinata didn't know whose voice it was, but she believed it. And when the boy stirred, she said the words she never got to hear herself. You're safe. And I won't forget you. She walked again. The boy was safe. Left in a makeshift shelter near the old spring. His fever was breaking. The forest had quieted. But Hinata couldn't stay. Something in her bones pulled her eastward. The trees changed. The leaves turned gray-blue. The bark grew tight, as if the trunks were holding their breath. Fog rolled in. Not thick enough to hide, but just enough to distort. And ahead, a lantern, soft, swaying, held by a girl no older than 12. The girl turned toward her, eyes wide, not scared, not surprised, just curious. Are you lost too? She asked. Hinata froze. Something about her felt off. Not threatening, not broken, just quiet in the wrong way. What's your name? Hinata asked gently. Hina. Where are you from? Urei village. Down past the hollow crossroad. Urei. She'd never heard of it, but her breath caught anyway. You shouldn't be out here alone. Neither should you, the girl said. She smiled. Not creepy. Soft. Like a lullaby. They walked together. Hina held the lantern. Hinata stayed behind her. The forest didn't resist. It welcomed them. 30 minutes later, the fog broke. And the village appeared. Simple homes built into hill faces. Soft lights flickering behind paper walls. No sound. No chakra signatures. Only the scent of flowers that hadn't bloomed in years. I'll take you to my parents. She led Hinata to a small home near the square. Knocked once. Smiled again. And vanished. The door creaked open. A woman stood there. She was pale. Not sickly. Not weak. Just dim, like a candle near its end. Hinata explained everything. The forest. The lantern. Hina. The woman listened. Eyes wide. Then she began to cry. Not sob. Not weep. Just tears. Falling like dust. Hina died during the 17th scenario. We all did. Hinata didn't speak. Couldn't. Not yet. The woman stepped aside. Let her in. And there, around a table, were others. 10, 20, maybe more. All quiet. All watching. None surprised. This village has been dead a long time, one of them said. But the system didn't let us go. We remember who we were. But no one else does. Except you. The fog outside thickened. Lanterns swayed. Hinata's breath shuddered. We saw you walking with her, the woman said. That means she trusts you. Will you do something for her? Hinata nodded. She didn't ask what. They brought her a ribbon, faded red, worn through at the middle. Tie this on the gate, they said. She's been waiting for someone to come back for her. Hinata walked back through the fog to the edge of the village, found the old gate, and tied the ribbon on the top beam. For a moment, the fog stopped moving. The trees stood still, and beside her, Hina's voice returned, "Thank you." She turned. No one there. But something in her chest felt lighter. Not happy, not healed, just less forgotten. She walked back to the village, but it was gone. No ruins, no signs, only a hill, and a single plum blossom blooming where the gate once stood. Hidden scenario completed. They only needed one person to remember. Breathbound sync 84%. Fable fragment gain the one who walked with the forgotten child. The forest was behind her. The plum blossom still bloomed on the wind. But Hinata didn't turn back. Not yet. She walked through dead hills, through fog that no longer clung. The world was quiet. Not peaceful. Just watching. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. Not since Kina. But something in her kept moving. A rhythm. A promise. Not to the gods. Not to the system. To herself. She reached the hilltop shrine just before dusk. It was broken. Just a ring of stones and a half-rotted pillar. But she knew what it was. A breath-marked altar. A place where a piece of her had died in a life before this one. She stepped into the ring. The sky dimmed. The earth breathed. And the world whispered, "There is still one of you left." The shrine vanished. The ground shifted. And she stood in a place that wasn't real, but had always existed. A city, burning. Streets split by ash and screams. Children crying in the distance. Names carved into doors that no one answered. And a woman standing in the center. She was older, taller. Her hair long and gray at the edges. She wore battlefield cloth. Boots caked in mud. No clan emblem. No village headband. Just a blade on her hip and a blank look in her eyes. Hinata approached slowly. The woman didn't turn. Just stared into the fire. "Who are you?" Hinata asked. "I was the one who lived when no one else did. The one who forgot." She turned. Her eyes were dead. Not blind. Not cold. Just tired. "I was born during Scenario 21. The one with the collapsing borders. The one where no gods were watching anymore. They sent us in as negotiators. We walked into a city that had already eaten itself. When it ended, I was the only one left. And I didn't remember any of their names." She stepped forward. The air around her broke like glass. Her chakra leaked in faint trails of static. "You think memory makes you kind? You think it makes you strong? It doesn't." Hinata didn't flinch. Didn't run. She just asked, "Then why did you survive?" The woman stopped. Laughed once. A dry, hollow sound. "Because I stopped caring. I stopped remembering. And the system didn't punish me. It rewarded me." She drew the blade. Not in threat. In ritual. She laid it at Hinata's feet. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to ask you. Do you really want to carry all of us?" Hinata knelt. Ran her fingers along the blade. It was warm. Not from heat. From the hands that once held it in grief. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "But I want to try." The woman's face cracked. Just slightly. A tremor in her dead eyes. "Then take it. But remember what it means. To hold us all is to carry what broke us." She stepped back. Faded like dust caught in breath. And left behind only a ribbon of pale light, wrapping around Hinata's wrist. Breathbound sync 100%. You have reclaimed the forgotten one. Fable awakened the 1,000 lives of Hinata Senju. Unique skill gained memory cascade. Channel selective legacy abilities in times of emotional resonance. The world snapped back. She stood alone on the hilltop. But not empty. Not anymore. She held the blade. No longer a weapon. Now a reminder. And she whispered. Not for gods. Not for the system. Just for herself. "I remember." The wind picked up. Carrying something old. Something soft. A prayer in Azura's tongue. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she had to earn her name. She was Hinata. Senju born. Hyuga forged. Azura touched. The one who chose to carry it all. She stood on the hilltop. Alone. Her blade at her side. The memory of 1,000 lives steady in her chest. The breath of Azura moving through her like a second soul. But she wasn't done. Not yet. She Saturday cross-legged. Faced east. Toward the place her heart had been pulling for days. The place the world refused to show her. "I remember myself," she whispered. "Now I remember him." The wind stilled. The trees stopped swaying. Even the system paused. Warning: the following action violates system-approved memory boundaries. Subject: Uzumaki, Naruto. Status suppressed. Censorship active. Memory lock status 97.9% effective. Erasure compliance fully integrated. Hinata exhaled. She didn't resist the warning. She read it out loud. Suppressed. Censorship active. Fully integrated. She raised her head and spoke his name. Naruto Uzumaki. The world shook. Not the ground. The world. Like the code beneath it glitched. Just for a moment. A stutter. A flicker. A heartbeat trying to start after centuries of silence. She spoke again. Louder this time. Naruto Uzumaki. Memory lock breached. System stability threatened. Warning accessing forbidden name class entity. Authority intervention required. Searching. But she didn't stop. She drew a line in the dirt with her blade. And with her finger, she wrote Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto Uzumaki again and again, until the world screamed. The wind became static. The trees bent inward. The sky lost its color. And something ancient moved between the cracks of time. She felt it. Not watching her. Not approaching. But recognizing her. Like a mirror that didn't reflect light, but reflected memory. Then, a voice. No language. Just meaning. You should not remember him. You should not be able to. You have opened a path that does not exist. Hinata's body ached. Blood from her nose. Fingertips splitting. Vision dimming. But she spoke one more time. With every breath, every life, every sorrow she'd ever carried. I remember Naruto Uzumaki. And now so will the world. And something tore. Not apart. Open. Illegal fable awakening memory engraved against the will of the sky. Fable created the one who refused to forget the erased name. You have breached the border of the forgotten vault. You are now tethered to. The screen fractured. Even the system message bled. Black glyphs twisted into the air, not readable. Not meant to be. Hinata collapsed forward. Hands in the dirt. Breathing shallow. Chakra unraveling in loops of memory ribbon around her. And then, it spoke again. Not the system. Not Azura. Not the gods. Something older. A presence she had no name for. But it knew her. And it whispered, with something like awe. You remembered him. Even outside the story. Even after we erased the ending. The air shimmered. The world struggled to right itself. And just before the light returned. A flicker of orange. Just behind her. A boy. Smiling. Blurry. Unreal. But there. She didn't turn. Didn't need to. She just smiled. And whispered. Naruto. And the world, for a moment, remembered. Everything broke when she said his name. Naruto Uzumaki. Not once. Not twice. Again and again. Into the dirt. Into the sky. Into the trembling bones of the world. The name clawed its way back into reality like an unwanted memory. And the world reacted. The sky unraveled. The ground lost color. And Hinata. She collapsed forward. Not unconscious. Just. Somewhere else. She opened her eyes to nothing. Not blackness. Not void. Just silence carved into shape. She stood in the heart of a dying light. A space where causality had been paused to allow one last conversation. And someone was already waiting. He wasn't tall. He wasn't monstrous. He wasn't glowing. He was still. Curled beneath a dead tree with 9 long, soft tails draped like worn cloth over old regrets. His eyes shimmered like molten memory. He didn't look up. Didn't move. He just spoke, like he had been waiting centuries to say it. That's not any Naruto you know. Or ever will know. That's an ancient dream holding on a hope. Hinata stepped forward. The air didn't push her back. It welcomed her. Like it had been hollow, waiting for a girl who still remembered something she shouldn't. I'd love to see him again, the fox said. But I don't think the narrative likes the idea he ever met the other me. She didn't ask his name. She couldn't. It slid out of her memory the moment it entered. But she felt it. Like a storm buried in storylight. Who are you? The fox shifted slightly. Not pridefully. Like someone remembering how to speak in front of the grieving. I am the 9-tailed apostle of the end. And you shouldn't be here. She lowered her eyes. Her throat tight. But the words came. Soft. True. Why did you bring me here? And for a moment, the fox didn't answer. The stars around them flickered. Not from distance. From pain. Then he said it. Quiet. Like it cost him something to shape the words. I watched a little boy kill himself. Over and over again. Hinata froze. Her heart didn't beat. It just held. Waiting. He died alone. In an orphanage no one visited. In alleys where they called him a demon. In rivers no one checked. In corners of his room where even the mirror forgot he existed. The fox's voice cracked. But he didn't stop. He did it because no one loved him. Because the world, his world, was built to forget children like him. Because he was born into a story that erased him before the first chapter. Hinata's hands shook. But she didn't speak. Not yet. He died so many times that the system stopped counting. So I counted for him. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of memories that should never have existed. He didn't even know I was there. That's how quiet I had to be. The fox finally looked at her. Eyes like burning patience. Like someone who had made a deal with eternity to witness something no one else would. You want to give him that book? Then you'll forget this. The system won't let you remember me. Not this me. A book appeared between them. Bound in threads of ash and ink. No words on the cover. No weight. Just presence. She reached for it. But paused. If you care for him so much, why aren't you with him? The fox exhaled. Slow. Heavy. Not tired. Shattered. Because when you watch a little kid kill himself thousands of times. When you see him pray to be loved. Just once. Before jumping again. When he tries to smile the day after hanging himself. just so no one worries. You give up everything for him. Even your place in the story, even your name, even your right to hold his hand. Because someone had to count. Hinata's chest cracked. Not physically, spiritually. Tears spilled freely now. But she stepped forward, held the book, nodded. Then I'll remember for both of us. The fox tilted his head, and for just a moment, he smiled. You won't be able to, but a part of you will. And something split. Not a break. A division. A second Hinata emerged behind her. Silent, glowing faintly with stored memory. A part of her soul that would not forget, even if the real one was made to sleep. The fox nodded once. She'll stay awake when the world tries to close your eyes. When he needs you most. She'll be the one who remembers this. Hinata's body began to fade. Her real self collapsing back into the mortal world, unconscious. But the other stayed, holding the book, holding the memory, watching the apostle with eyes full of names. And just before she vanished, he whispered, "Tell him I'm still counting." She woke beneath the plum blossom tree. Alone. The wind was soft. The sun filtered down like it had forgotten how to burn. Birdsong returned, faint and tentative. And in her hands, a book. Not heavy, but it felt like it should be. The cover was cracked leather, stitched with worn thread. No title on the outside. Just a swirl of faded orange ink, smeared at the corners like it had been thumbed through 1,000 times by hands that needed it more than food. She opened it, slowly, carefully. There was no title page, no author's name, no dedication, just blank. Page after page, hundreds, thousands, millions, each one completely empty. But the paper wasn't white. It shimmered faintly, like parchment made from forgotten breath. Hinata turned another page, then another. She couldn't stop. She wasn't trying to read. She was trying to understand why she felt like crying. After 10,000 pages, she stopped, closed the book, and held it to her chest. This belongs to Naruto. She didn't know why, didn't know how it ended up with her, didn't remember the fox, or the dead star, or the second self still watching from deep inside. But something in her soul whispered this is the reason he's still alive. She tucked it away, wrapped it in cloth, sealed it with Azura's breath mark, placed it in her satchel like it was made of glass and prayers. And for the first time in days, she stood, steady, not healed, but whole enough to walk back. The wind shifted again, like it had been waiting, like it was relieved. A trail had formed behind her. Narrow, stone-lined, leading out of the memory forest. She stepped onto it, and didn't look back. You have completed the path of the breath-bound mirror. All lives synced, memory authority active. System adjustment unknown spiritual entity embedded, unable to redact. Item obtained tale of the utterly gutsy shinobi. Classification narrative key anchor of the erased. Somewhere far away. In a different sector, under a different sky. Naruto's heart beat once. Hard. And for a second. He swore he could smell plum blossoms. But the wind passed. And the feeling left. For now. Hinata walked. The company was waiting. The gods were stirring. And the name she held in her heart burned brighter than ever. She didn't know what the book was. But she knew it was a story. And it needed to be given back to the boy who forgot he was worth reading. Hinata slept. Wrapped in layers of silence. Breathing gently beneath the plum blossom tree. Her fingers twitched now and then, like someone chasing fragments of a dream she didn't choose. And above her, the other one woke. She wasn't a clone. She wasn't a god. She wasn't a fable. She was what Hinata could not hold. A second self, forged from memory, shaped by grief, left behind by a being who couldn't be remembered. She sat beside the sleeping girl, her reflection, her burden, her gift, and in her lap, the book. It was still blank, still endless, still silent. Not even the system recognized its weight. It had no aura, no chakra, no divine code, only pages, waiting. She opened to the first. No hesitation, just reverence, and in steady, careful handwriting, like someone tracing the edge of a prayer. She wrote, "Tales of the utterly gutsy shinobi." She paused, breathed once, then signed it. By YMN. No name, no explanation. 3 letters, untraceable, unclaimed. She turned to the next page, and began to write. His name is Menma. He is not a hero. He is not chosen. He is not remembered. She wrote of a child with a smile too big for the room they gave him. Of a boy who counted the steps between trees because no one ever came looking. Of a boy who once stood on the roof of a building, wondering if anyone would care if he jumped. She wrote of the day he decided not to die, not because someone stopped him, but because he read a book he didn't remember picking up. She wrote of how he fought, not to win, but to be seen, of how he failed, and bled, and kept walking anyway. She never used the name Naruto. The world hated that name. The system scrubbed it from memory, but she remembered, so she buried him under another name, Menma. The pages filled, but they never ran out. She wrote the present, the past, the loops he forgot. She wrote down everything he wouldn't let himself say aloud. She wrote of the way he reached out first, and how they all forgot him after. No gods watched. No fable grew, only the story, told in silence. When the stars began to fade, she stopped, closed the book, held it to her chest, and whispered, "You'll find it, and when you do, maybe you'll understand." She stood. Her body glimmered faintly, not from power, from dissolution, like she was made of candlelight being called back to the wick. She leaned down, gently placed the book in Hinata's satchel, wrapped it in plum blossom cloth, and sealed it with nothing. Not chakra, not ink, not name, just faith. She looked at her sleeping self, touched her forehead, and whispered the only blessing she knew remember enough. Then she turned and walked into the mist. The system never noticed. The world didn't log her exit. She never existed, but the pages remained. Somewhere far away, a boy stirred in his sleep. His hands trembled, and he dreamed of turning pages he had never seen. By day, Hinata walked, not to fight, not to lead, not to defy gods or rewrite the system, but to mend. She walked through towns no one remembered, through fields still bruised from where scenarios had passed like storms. She picked up pieces no one thought were worth carrying. She replaced ruined shrine stones. She whispered names into grave markers. She helped a little girl bury a doll and called it a funeral. The villagers never asked who she was, because she never said. She just listened, and the land began to soften around her. Everywhere she walked, the world remembered how to breathe. Unrecognized entity detected. Spiritual harmonic equilibrium rising. System observers attempting correction failed. Unknown compassion signature radiating through damaged terrain. And by night, while Hinata slept beneath canvas stars, she wrote. The second self, still, silent, flickering just beyond the edges of reality. She sat beside the fire with the book in her lap, and she filled it. Not with heroism, not with fate, but with hope. She didn't write about a hero, she wrote about a boy who didn't give up, a boy who looked at a world that called him worthless and smiled anyway. She wrote about scraped knees, broken ramen bowls, tattered sandals, about small kindnesses, a glance, a nod, a word that might have saved someone's life. And she never said his name. She called him Minma, because if she gave him his real name, the world would try to delete him again. She wrote of despair, of endings, of loops no one survived, and then she wrote of the future that hope clawed its way to. The book remained unreadable to all, even gods. The system tried to parse it once, and failed. The pages turned themselves inward, like a story only meant for one reader. Still she wrote. She didn't write to change the world. She wrote so that the world couldn't change him again. And in the morning, when Hinata rose with sun-sore eyes and aching hands, she never knew the story beneath her skin had grown another chapter. She only felt lighter, like something lost had been carried for her. And the world healed, not because someone conquered it, but because someone cared for it. She was not a hero, but the story needed her anyway. Somewhere far ahead, the boy she wrote about would bleed again, fall again, smile again, and when the time came, he would find the book. And finally, he would remember that someone had been watching, someone had been writing. Not about gods, not about war, not about fate, but about him. The world was quiet again. She didn't know when she'd stopped walking, didn't know where the road had gone. She just knew. She was at a crossroad. Not a real one. No signs, no dust trail, no system notifications, just a space where decisions meet. A circle of wind and breath. A place carved out by 3 lives shaped by sacrifice. She stood on one path. Her blade was at her hip. Her satchel held a book no one could read. And behind her trailed a long road paved with silent names. Across from her, Sasuke stepped into view. His eyes were steady, his cloak marked by ash and resolve. His presence heavy. Not with darkness, but with decision. He did not bow. He did not challenge. He simply stood. To her left, the wind shimmered, and Naruto appeared. Not the boy she remembered, but not a god, either. He looked tired. He looked frayed. But he stood, just like always. And for a moment, none of them spoke. They just looked. 3 lives, 3 burdens, 3 truths. Each of them had died before. Each of them had forgotten who they were. And now, they stood at the place where the world might end again. But not yet. Not while they could still speak. Hinata breathed, then stepped forward, eyes filled with flame, wind, and grief, and said I would sacrifice the world for just him. Her voice didn't tremble. It didn't shout. It burned. Quiet and absolute. Sasuke didn't flinch. He lowered his eyes, then raised them again, and said I would sacrifice everything for the world. There was no pride in his words. Only weight. Then, Naruto exhaled, and spoke, like it was the only thing he had ever believed. I will sacrifice myself for my companions. The wind turned. The ground held its breath. And for a moment, the world understood these were not just characters. They were ideals. Hinata, the one who remembers love, even when the world does not deserve it. Sasuke, the one who would burn heaven to spare others hell. Naruto, the one who dies quietly, again and again, so others can live loudly. None of them argued. None of them bowed. They just stood together, at the place where fate must choose. And for the first time in a long time, they didn't feel alone. A name that holds meaning. The road had no name. It hadn't for a long time. The signs had long since collapsed, overtaken by roots and quiet moss. Paper faded, metal rusted. No system marker dared designate this trail anymore. It belonged to no domain. But the three of them walked it anyway, not because it was safe, but because it led forward. They didn't speak at first. The air was too still, too clean. It smelled of memory. Like the world itself was trying to recall what it used to be before it was shattered into god scenarios and fable-locked regions. And yet, something was different now. Trees were growing again, slowly, brokenly. They curled like they were afraid of being seen. But they grew. Water flowed down hills that hadn't breathed in cycles. Villages flickered in the distance, rising like ghosts unsure if they were allowed to return. And somewhere, far above, the systems I blinked. For the first time in a long time, it felt like the world was healing. Naruto walked in silence. Hinata at his side, fingers laced lightly through the handle of her blade. Sasuke behind, hood low, cloak brushing against the ground like shadowed paper. They didn't look like saviors, but the land knew them. Every step they took rewrote the space around them. Unregistered entities, censored names, system-declared anomalies. And still, they walked. Naruto was the one who finally spoke. Not with certainty, but with conviction shaped by loss. There's someone we need to find. Hinata glanced over. Her expression soft, cautious. Sasuke didn't respond, but he slowed, just slightly. Listening. Naruto didn't stop walking, didn't look back. He just said it. A man in a mask. He's been watching me for a long time. I met him. In a place no one should go. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Hinata narrowed her eyes. What kind of place? She asked. Naruto didn't answer directly. He just looked at the sky, where clouds were starting to move again. A place made of the dead, of memory, of lives that no longer fit in the story. And he was there. Like he was waiting. He knows things about this world, about the system, about me. His name is Obito. It's hard to remember anything about him. Just the mask. But I think he remembers everything. Silence again. Then Hinata nodded once. If he knows you, and the truth about what's happening, then we need to find him. Sasuke exhaled. It was almost a scoff, but there was no dismissal in it. Only focus. And if he's dangerous? Naruto looked ahead. His eyes weren't angry. They were resigned. Then we'll still need to find him. The three continued down the trail. The path wound through a half-buried temple, reclaimed by vines and ash. Children ran between the stone ribs of fallen gods. Old women painted new god marks beside shattered altars. Villagers looked up when Naruto passed, but did not speak his name. They didn't know it. Not anymore. But they remembered the feeling of safety that followed in his wake. One child tugged Hinata's coat and asked her what color the sky used to be. She smiled and said, brighter. One old man offered Sasuke a bowl of dried fruit. He accepted it, gave nothing in return but silence. And the unspoken promise of protection. The world was breathing again, but it was still wounded, and something in its skin was beginning to shift. They passed through regions that hadn't held form in years. Collapsed scenarios. Broken terrain. Once, they passed a tree growing upside down from the sky. Once, they stepped over a fissure that whispered words from a language the system no longer supported. Hinata paused once to light incense for a village that no longer existed. Sasuke stepped into the dreams of a dying animal to still its pain. Naruto stood by a river and watched the water pass over his reflection like it didn't know what face to return. And then, they felt it. A shift in the air. Not pressure, not chakra, but attention, like something had been waiting for them to get close enough. The trail ended. A hill, cracked, covered in bone-white lilies. And at the top, a man stood. No sound, no movement, just a mask, red spiral, one eye visible, not glowing, just watching. Naruto stopped first. Hinata's breath caught in her throat. Sasuke raised a hand, but did not draw his weapon. The man said nothing, but the wind around them stilled. As if time had stopped to witness this moment. Obito had found them, or maybe he'd never stopped waiting. The wind shifted around the hill, not loudly, like an old book turning a page you didn't realize was there. Obito stood at the top, unmoving, his single eye, black, endless, unreadable, settled on Naruto. And then, he spoke. You know, in all the turns I've watched, I've never seen one like this. The voice wasn't cold. It was almost curious, like a man watching a play that finally broke its script. Naruto stiffened. Hinata and Sasuke tensed. But Obito didn't move. He wasn't radiating malice. He didn't look ready to attack. He just watched them like a contradiction he couldn't solve. Three of you, Obito murmured. Still breathing. Still yourselves. Still together. Even after everything. His eye turned back to Naruto. There was something almost fond in the way he looked at him. Not gentle, but familiar. 2 foxtails in one timeline. That's new. The wind stopped again. A system message blinked and died before it could fully form. Sasuke glanced at Naruto. Hinata's hand hovered near her satchel, fingers brushing the cloth-wrapped book. But she didn't move. Naruto took a step forward. His voice didn't waver. He didn't shout, but it burned. You know who I am. You knew what this world was before I ever did. You remember the turns. The timelines. You remember me. Obito said nothing. He didn't deny it. Then tell me something, Naruto said. If I'm really the same as him. If I'm really the same boy in all those turns. His voice cracked. Not with weakness, but with something deeper. Need. Then why didn't I grow up with them? Why don't they remember me? Why did I have to learn about my parents from a book full of corpses? Silence. The mask didn't flinch, but the eye behind it dimmed. Almost. Regretfully. Minato. Kushina. They're alive in this timeline. They walk. They breathe. They look like my parents. But they don't know me. And I don't know them. So tell me. What am I? The sky didn't answer. The gods didn't interfere. Even the system was silent. Only Obito remained. Still watching. Still remembering. And then, after a long breath, you're asking questions this world isn't ready to hear. But I'll tell you anyway. He turned. Walked down the far side of the hill. Not fast. Not fearful. Just waiting to be followed. If you want the truth, he called over his shoulder. Then follow me to where it ended. Naruto took the first step. Sasuke followed, silent. Hinata looked once more at the sky. And then, they walked into memory. The space they entered wasn't a battlefield. It wasn't even marked. Just a faint shimmer where the world had stitched over something it wanted to forget. Obito didn't speak as they passed through it. Naruto felt it first. The way the chakra thinned. Hinata heard it second. The way even the wind held its breath. Sasuke simply followed, eyes narrowed, already sensing that this was no illusion. This was memory, but not theirs. This is where it started, Obito said, walking ahead. Not the beginning, but the first turn I remember. The world reformed around them. Old Konoha, before the sky broke, before the scenarios, before the divine tier structures and the eye of a Moi King. Just smoke, and stars, and fear. It was the night of the Nine-Tails attack. But something was wrong. There was no beast, no craters, no fight, only silence, and the soft, intermittent crying of a baby, wrapped in sealing cloth, marked already with a symbol he should never have born so early. Eyes closed, face red, body untouched. Fragile and impossibly small. Naruto stepped forward. He knew this place, knew this air, but it shouldn't feel like this. He felt it in his bones. This wasn't a reenactment. It was a record. And then he saw him. Obito, younger, slower, without the eye that watches. Just a boy in a mask, crouched beside the crib. The same one that now floated like a ghost in front of them. I didn't know your name, Obito said softly, watching his past self. Didn't know who you'd become. All I knew was that the child of Minato and Kushina was born that day, and that breaking him was the only way to break the village. Obito knelt beside the baby. He didn't hesitate. He didn't cry. He just killed him. Quick, clean, surgical, a pulse of chakra. And the crying stopped. Nothing screamed. Not yet. But the world shook. Just slightly, as if grieving in advance. Then came Minato. Too late. Kushina, falling to her knees. Their screams didn't echo through the timeline. They echoed through Naruto. The image blurred, shattered, reformed. Another timeline. This one. Different. There was no Hokage child in the manor. No whisper of prophecy. No protective seal drawn in the night. Just an orphanage. A newborn. Nameless. Except they gave him a name. They didn't know why. Didn't know what it meant. But it felt right. Naruto, the matron said aloud. Like the fish cake. That swirl. Like something that never disappears. Obito spoke again. I didn't attack that time. There was no child to kill. No Hokage's heir. No reason to move. I didn't even remember doing it before. Not yet. Naruto's hands clenched. His voice was low. So I died. And no one remembered. Obito didn't respond at first. Then. You came back. Somehow. But by then. Something had changed. Your name didn't stick. Your presence twisted the script. The system didn't recognize you. Naruto stepped closer to the vision. Watched the baby in the orphanage smile. Eyes the same color as his. You weren't placed into the timeline, Obito said. You were rewritten into it. And the gods. They never noticed. The world around them began to fade. But the silence lingered. Heavy. Grieving. Naruto turned back toward Obito. His voice was soft. But final. That was the first timeline you remember. But it wasn't the beginning. Obito looked at him. No answer. Just a quiet, unreadable stare. The path ahead opened. It wasn't bright. But it was open. You wanted answers, Obito said. There's more. But it doesn't get easier. And Naruto nodded. Then walked into the dark. The world around them was still. Not because it was peaceful. But because even memory was holding its breath. Obito stood above the ghost of a grave that never existed. Eyes fixed on something only he could see. And then, slowly, he began to speak. I died twice. Once under a rock. And once when I saw her heart stop. By the hand of someone she loved. The world shifted. Rin, pierced by Kakashi's Raikiri. Smiling as blood poured from her chest. Obito's scream swallowed by thunder. Rin chose to die by Kakashi's hand. To protect the hidden leaf. She made that choice, and still, he swallowed. No matter what you say. To me, the Kakashi who couldn't protect Rin was an imposter. To me, Rin is someone not meant to die. So the Rin who died. That was an imposter too. Rin is only Rin. When she's alive, the air felt heavier. Even the gods, if they were watching, said nothing now. The shinobi system. The village. The shinobi themselves. They created this. They built a world where children die for nations. Where love is a weakness. Where hope is a target. He looked at Naruto now, and his voice broke. This world. It's a counterfeit. It killed her. It's killed you. Over and over again. Don't you remember your own words, Naruto? You said the most painful thing isn't dying. It's not having real comrades in your heart. I quoted those words back to you, because I still believe that the old Kakashi, the one who would have resonated with them, was real. Obito spread his arms. There was no malice in his face. Only ruin. Look at me. There's nothing in my heart. No rage. No forgiveness. No pain. That hole inside me. It was carved by this world. And for a long time. It was all I had. So I let it go. I abandoned it all. The guilt. The memory. The grief. Because I couldn't live inside a story that let Rin die. He stepped forward, toward Naruto now. Not threatening, but closer. Meanwhile, Kakashi mourned. At Rin's grave. At mine. But I chose to move on. Because Madara showed me something better. The moon returned. Vast, cracked, watching. A world without war. Without sorrow. Without mistakes. A dream cast over the heavens. In it, Rin is there. Smiling. Alive. He looked back at Naruto. And said it as if offering a gift. In that Jinjutsu world. Anything is possible. Wish for whatever you want. That hole in your heart. It can be filled. Immediately. Silence. And for a moment. Even Naruto didn't speak. Because the scariest thing about Obito was that he meant every word. The silence after Obito's words was long. But it didn't last. Not forever. Because even quiet has an expiration date when the world's ending. Obito stepped back. His mask dangled at his side, forgotten. His gaze never left Naruto. You know what I want now. What I've given everything for. And I've almost done it. He raised his hand. And the sky darkened. Just enough to reveal the moon once more. Cracks of seal-marked light crawled across its surface. Unnatural. Watching. Waiting. 8 pieces of the chakra fruit are mine. I've crossed timelines. Killed gods. Killed myself. But only one piece remains. His voice dropped lower. Like a priest confessing to a dying god. And the only thing standing in my way is Nagato. The name landed like thunder. Naruto didn't react outwardly. But something shifted in the wind. Hinata's brow creased. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. Obito didn't stop. Nagato is a contradiction. A mortal who cannot ascend. A god who never fell. As long as he walks the world, no god can manifest fully. No mortal can rise. He is the boundary. The checkpoint. The warden of reality. Images bloomed in the air behind him, Nagato standing against storms that bent mountains. Gods splintering when they reached toward the mortal plane. A divine spear shattering on invisible air. Reality refusing to glitch around him. You think the gods don't fear me? They fear him more. Because he remembers how the cycle ends. Obito exhaled. Then, he extended a hand toward Naruto. Palm open. Not in malice. Not in challenge. But in invitation. You want answers. You want peace. You want a world where Sasuke isn't cursed. Where Hinata isn't forgotten. Where you were never erased. His voice softened. I can give you that. Under the infinite Tsukuyomi, there will be no system. No loop. No sacrifice. Only peace. He looked at all 3 of them now. Help me defeat Nagato. And I will give you the future you all deserve. The moon pulsed once above them. Like a heartbeat. Like a promise. Obito's hand remained outstretched. But his voice lowered now. Like a priest sharing forbidden scripture. If the heavenly demon is the strongest god. He paused. His gaze turned distant. Like he wasn't speaking to them, but remembering something that left a scar across eternity. Then Nagato. Nagato is the strongest mortal. The air changed. It wasn't chakra. It was certainty. Like the universe flinched at the name. You really can't understand how powerful he is. Not because he hides it, but because the world itself obeys him. He looked at Sasuke now. Then Hinata. Then back to Naruto. As long as you're bound to the system, you cannot defeat him. No matter what you try. No matter how strong you become. Because the system wants him to win. Silence again. Even the wind dared not stir. That's his ability. The system favors him. Every divine law, every scenario rule, every balance fails in his favor. Images flickered, a god's domain crashing against an invisible wall. A sponsor's message disintegrating mid-sentence. The system freezing as Nagato spoke. And rewriting itself mid-script. Obito continued, voice quiet now. Not reverent. Not afraid. Just resolved. No god can act directly while he exists. No mortal can ascend. He is the axis of the mortal plane. The seal between stories. The system's chosen warden. His hand still hung in the air. Help me bring him down. Because if you don't, you will never reach the ending you're fighting for. The moon above them pulsed again. But this time, it looked like a key. Obito's hand hung in the air. The moon behind him beat like a second heart. His voice had gone quiet now. Still, convincing. You've seen what this world does. How many times has it broken you? How many versions of you have died just trying to matter? His eye didn't burn with madness. It didn't plead. It simply told the truth. This isn't a trap. This is a door. The infinite Tsukuyami shimmered in the distance. An illusion large enough to swallow the sky. A perfect ending. A world where no one has to be strong to survive. Where grief is undone. Where pain is remembered only as a dream. And then, Naruto lowered his head. Eyes shut. Fists clenched. Silent. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, I get it. His voice was quiet. More honest than rage. You're not lying. You're not even wrong. He looked up. But that doesn't mean I'll follow you. The wind didn't stir. So he kept going. You said it yourself. Rin died to protect the hidden leaf. She made a choice. Even if the world was cruel. Even if the system failed her. She believed in something. He pointed at the moon. You'd undo that. You'd overwrite everything. Just to make it stop hurting. Naruto took a step forward. Past the point of hesitation. Past the edge of mercy. If you love someone, you carry them. Even when they're gone. Especially then. Hinata stepped beside him. Her voice was steady. But inside it was a fire the moon couldn't hold. You offer safety. But it's not real. It's not Rin. It's not Naruto. It's not anyone. She held out the book. The one no one else could read. I would sacrifice the world for him. But I won't let it lie to him. He deserves more than a perfect lie. Sasuke said nothing at first. Then he walked forward. Just once. So the distance between him and the moon was clear. I've walked through the graves of my family. Watched gods pretend they cared. Fought my brother knowing it was never his choice. I don't want a world without pain. I want a world that doesn't need to be rewritten. He unsheathed his sword. Let it hum once in the air. You think I won't cut down a false paradise? I was born to destroy systems like yours. The sky cracked just slightly above them. Not from power. Not from defiance. From conviction. Obito's hand remained out. But none of them reached for it. I'm sorry, Naruto said. You were right about a lot of things. But that doesn't mean you're right. He turned away from the moon. So did Hinata. So did Sasuke. And Obito? He lowered his hand. Slowly. Gently. And whispered, so this is the turn where you all say no. He didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. And perhaps just a little proud. The moon flickered. The illusion held. But the offer was gone. They didn't say anything for a long time after turning away. Not to each other. Not to Obito. Not to the sky. Because what they had rejected wasn't a trap, or a lie, or even a war. It was peace. And turning your back on peace, even a false one, leaves a kind of silence no battle ever does. Obito still stood where he had been. The moonlight trembled across his cloak. But his hand, it was no longer reaching. Instead, he exhaled. Slow. Measured. Final. Then he said, good. That was the goal. Naruto blinked. Obito didn't move. A long time ago. That was my goal. To offer the fruit of paradise and see if anyone was still strong enough to spit it out. He lowered his head. The shadows shifted behind his maskless face. Flickers of thousands of lives not lived. You passed. And now, I'm done. He knelt. Not in defeat, but like someone exhausted from carrying too many timelines inside his skin. I don't want this anymore. I don't want the moon. Or the world. Or Madara's dream. I don't want the fruit. His voice dropped into something raw. Scarred. Stripped bare. I just want to die. The wind stopped. Not from power. From grief. But I can't. He looked up. His lone eye flickering with thousands of broken lights. My consciousness is fractured. Every version of me. In every timeline. In every moment I suffered. I still remember them. Not just the big ones. Not just Rin. But every betrayal. Every failure. Every death. All of them. All the time. The sky cracked just faintly above his shoulders. Like the weight of remembering had scarred the sky itself. That's my curse. Not immortality. But memory. I don't get to forget. And I can't end. His voice broke now. Splintered. But not from weakness. From the weight of unrelenting clarity. Madara betrayed me a long time ago. He isn't trying to save the world. He's trying to make it kneel. He reached into his cloak. And when his hand came out, there were 8 glowing fragments. Each one thrumming with a truth no god had permission to speak. These are the pieces of the chakra fruit. Sin and virtue. Life and death. Suffering and silence. He held them out. Not like a gift. Like a confession. Naruto, you've already ascended. You just don't know it yet. The 9th piece. The final one. It's in yourself. Naruto froze. Obito didn't. It won't be quick. It won't be clean. It'll take years. Maybe more. Because it isn't something you find. It's something you remember. Obito stood now. Straight. Heavy. Brighter than before. Like someone finally shedding the chains of narrative control. Eat it when you're ready. When you want to be more than a weapon. When you want to be more than a story. He placed the 8 pieces in Naruto's hand. They burn nothing. But they weighed everything. You don't deserve a way out. But maybe. You can be mine. Naruto looked at him. Eyes burning with unspoken sorrow. You mean you want me to kill you? Obito's eye flickered. Then nodded. Once. When the time comes. Lay me to rest. All of me. Every version. Every loop. Every regret. Erase me like I was never written. And then. He turned away. Nagato will come. Not because he hates you. But because the system will send him. Because he is the last firewall. The lock. Good luck. He took one step forward and vanished. Not like a jutsu, not like a teleport, just like someone who was never truly here. The moon trembled. The fragments pulsed in Naruto's palm. And far, far away, Nagato opened his eyes. They felt him before they saw him. A pressure in the air, like memory folding in on itself, like gravity giving up the lie that it was ever neutral. The moon dimmed. The wind stopped. The world paused. A red ripple shimmered in the dust. Then another. Then 1,000. And from those ripples, woven from nothing but refusal and recognition, a figure stepped into being. He didn't walk. He didn't teleport. He simply was. White robes. Burnt red hair trailing like falling ink. Eyes like impossible truths written into flesh. 6 rings. Black tomo. And a gaze that could erase hope just by noticing it. Nagato. None of them moved. Not Naruto. Not Sasuke. Not Hinata. Even the gods said nothing now. Even the system did not blink. He looked at Naruto, then at the fruit in his hands, then at the horizon, and said, "So now you know the truth." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It simply filled the space, like it had always been waiting to be spoken. Obito gave you what you needed. 8 pieces, 1 lie, and a reason to keep walking. He stepped forward once. The earth did not crack. It acquiesced. But you still don't know everything. Naruto's grip on the fruit tightened. Nagato didn't look at him. Not directly. He was staring at something only he could see. Something behind every version of reality. Let me show you how gods are made. The world around them blurred. Not with chakra, with witness. A rain village appeared. Bright, small, laughing. The children had names. The sky wasn't red. And a woman with silver eyes held her son beneath a tree that had never known war. My mother was the strongest god, the heavenly demon. She walked through the divine hierarchy like it was paper. The scene twisted. A shrine collapsed. The air turned to steam. The villagers screamed. And then, silence. One day she left. Just left. No war. No reason. No last words. She abandoned the mortal world. And my village. He closed his eyes. And when they opened again, they held a graveyard. My village burned. My gods fled. And everything that came after was an apology written in blood. The rain returned. Only now. It was made of names. Thousands. Millions. Each one known. Each one dead. I buried Yahiko myself. Conan held the blade. He smiled when he died. Because he believed we were the last people who would have to suffer. Nagato stepped closer now. The moon dimmed behind him. He was wrong. You want to save this world. You think peace is something you build with your hands. But peace is just memory filtered through enough lies. He looked at Naruto now. Directly. You think you're ready. You're not. You carry power now. A future. A story the gods can't burn. But you are not me. He turned his palm. The sky opened. Not upward. Inward. And from that rift, a vision of the future emerged. Naruto. Burning. Bleeding. Falling. And above him, Nagato. Unmoving. Unchanging. Unshaken. I am the last seal. The boundary between man and God. No mortal may ascend while I stand. No god may descend. That is the will of the system. And the system bends to me. His voice did not rise. But the world cracked beneath it. You could kill me one day. But not now. Not yet. He raised a hand. And the vision vanished. Only silence remained. You've earned the right to try. So I won't stop you now. Walk your path. Find your 9th piece. Unbind yourself. He turned. And with one final glance, but when you come for me, I will destroy you. Then he vanished. Not like a shadow. Not like a ghost. Like a law being withdrawn. The fruit pulsed in Naruto's hand. And far above them, the system whispered. World-level interference suppressed by registered authority. Category Nagato. Override rights denied. And Naruto finally understood. He was still bound. But not forever. The wind returned long after Nagato vanished. Not as a storm. Not as a sign. Just as breath. Gentle. Worn. Real. The world didn't shake anymore. It didn't need to. Because the 3 of them were already still. Naruto stared at the empty sky where Nagato had stood. He didn't speak. Didn't move. He just breathed. Once. Twice. And then. Sorry. The word hit the earth like a bell rung at the wrong funeral. Hinata turned. Sasuke glanced back. Naruto was smiling. But it was the kind of smile people learn only when they've lost and remembered enough to smile anyway. Looks like I've got to split up again. His hand trembled slightly at his side. But his voice was steady. There's a piece of me I haven't found yet. And I think I need to be alone to see it. I don't know how long it'll take. I don't even know if I'll make it back in time. He looked at both of them now. Sincerely. A little broken. But no longer afraid to be. So I need you to carry me a little longer. He turned to Hinata first. Eyes soft. Voice low. Tell them about me. My parents. Even if they don't remember. Even if it doesn't make sense. Just tell them. Hinata nodded. Slow. Her eyes were already glassed with tears she didn't let fall. They deserved to know their son. He turned to Sasuke next. Didn't joke. Didn't smirk. Just said. Get stronger. Stronger than me. Sasuke snorted. That's not possible. But I'll try. Naruto chuckled. And for a moment, it felt like nothing had ever gone wrong. Promise me something. Both of you. They stepped closer. Listened. As long as you're alive. Remember my name. That way, even if the gods forget me again, I won't be alone. Hinata stepped forward. Silently, she held out the book, wrapped in cloth. Old, but warm. The title gleamed in gold. Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. I don't know where I got this, she said, but I know it's meant for you. Naruto took it with both hands, held it like scripture. Thank you. Sasuke turned his back. Don't take too long, bastard. We might finish the rest of the scenarios without you. Naruto laughed. It echoed against the world like something that belonged. Then, they split. No explosion, no grand departure. Just three people, choosing their paths. Interlude. The world that's left behind. Naruto walked alone again. But this time, he wasn't alone. The book at his side hummed quietly. The 8 fragments pulsed in his chest. The 9th piece still out there, waiting, somewhere he couldn't yet name. He walked, through a world still healing, through a desert where glass trees hummed with broken chakra, through a ruined city where time only moved when no one watched, through a cave system where once, long ago, a child had cried to be remembered, and the rocks still whispered his name. He walked, and the world changed around him. A village of children ruled by a forgotten god who thought bedtime stories were doctrine. A canyon where 2 dead gods were still arguing across a split in the land, each blaming the other for the fall. A beach where the ocean had turned to ink, and every wave crashed with the voice of someone who once screamed in a scenario. He asked questions in places where no answers existed. He lit candles at graves with no names. He gave bread to spirits who didn't know they were dead. He read the book, sometimes, not all at once. Pages filled slowly, always in second person, always like someone knew him better than he knew himself. The boy stood at the edge of the story again. But this time, he would not fall in. He trained. He bled. He remembered. And when he slept, he dreamed of a name spoken by voices he'd never met. Naruto Uzumaki. And they said it like hope. The world still burned. Scenarios still ran. The company still fought. And somewhere, Nagato waited. But Naruto? Naruto was walking into himself. And when he came back, it wouldn't be as a player, or a god, or a mistake. It would be as the name the world had always been trying to forget. And finally couldn't. The foolish boy stood under the stars again tonight. And he looked up like the sky might carry him back to the ones he left behind. He wondered if they felt his gaze, wherever they were. And I wondered how long I could keep him company without breaking the rule. Naruto walked through a forest that used to be a library. Trees now grew through broken tomes. Wolves made dens and shattered altar halls. Every few feet, he stepped on a name the world once recognized. A title, a story, a god. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Only the wind whispered. And the boy who bore no god mark answered back in silence. He thinks he's alone. He's not. I am here. Still. Always. Even if he doesn't remember. He slept under the ribs of a dead colossus, once worshipped as a fertility spirit. He dreamed of nothing. Not because he was at peace, but because his dreams had learned to be afraid of what he might remember. He passed a village of glass, people who bowed to the sun, but cried at the moon. They touched his hand and told him he felt like someone who had already died, but hadn't been buried yet. He stayed for a meal and left before dawn. He doesn't talk to me anymore. I don't blame him, but I miss his voice. One night, beneath a bridge made of bones and prayer flags, Naruto stopped. He took out the book. He held it in both hands. Didn't open it. Just held it. And whispered, I hope you're okay. Then the flashback began. A memory. Sharp. Unplanned. Warm. They were sitting on a rooftop the night before they split. The stars were dull, but the air was soft. And for once, there was laughter. Hinata was carefully stringing chords together, her hands glowing faintly with chakra-smoothing pulses. Sasuke was pretending not to care, but his cord was already tied and twice as precise as hers. Naruto fumbled with his. What is this again? He asked. Wayfinder, Hinata said. A charm to guide you back to the people you love. That's real? Naruto asked. No, Sasuke said immediately. Yes, Hinata said over him. Naruto grinned. I'll take the yes. They all exchanged them in silence after they finished. Just a simple triangle of string and stone and memory. Naruto tucked his into his belt. Hinata placed hers near her chest. Sasuke tied his around his wrist. So if we get lost, Naruto said. We come back, Hinata finished. I never get lost, Sasuke muttered. Naruto didn't remember when the flashback ended. He just realized the stars were overhead again, and his hand was on his belt, where the Wayfinder still hung. He touches it when he's not thinking, when he forgets that he's forgotten how to be held. He crossed a desert where time only passed if you named the people you missed. He spent 3 days there in silence. On the 4th, he whispered Hinata, and the sun rose for the first time in years. He found a shrine to a god no one remembered. The statue was of a boy with wind-scattered hair. Beneath it was a single phrase etched in sand: the one who chose the wind, even when it couldn't carry him home. He didn't say anything, but he sat there for a long time. He is looking for the 9th piece. But he doesn't know that what he's finding instead is himself. Not the version they made. Not the glitch. Not the hero. Just Naruto. He entered a city where no one had eyes, but everyone saw. They asked him where his god was. He said he didn't have one. They said, then you must be your own. He didn't argue. But he didn't believe them. Not yet. He passed a girl who claimed she could hear future echoes. She reached out to him, then recoiled. You have too many endings stacked inside you. Which one wins? He didn't answer. Because he didn't know. He walked still. Not towards something, but away from everything that ever tried to make him someone else. Some nights, the wind speaks in Hinata's voice. Some days, his shadow walks with a limp like Sasuke once did. He never turns to look. But he listens. He opens the book. One page reads the boy stood at the edge of the world again. This time, he didn't jump. He smiled at that. Didn't laugh, but smiled. He is beginning to believe that he was always the one who kept the story going. Not the gods. Not the system. Not the loops. Just him. And the people he loved. And the name they refused to forget. Naruto walks on. Through memories no one else can hold. Through lands the system redacted. Through love that was never given, only made. He still hasn't found the ninth piece. But he's close now. You can tell by the way the world starts to hum when he passes. Like it's remembering. Like he's becoming unforgettable. I am still watching. Still here. Still with him. Even if he never remembers who I am. Because I remember him. And that is enough. Foxtail, it wasn't marked on any map. It wasn't protected by jutsu. There were no guardians. No curses. No signs. Only silence. And gravity. Naruto stumbled on it after 7 days of walking without direction. The air was thin. The world too quiet. Even the system windows refused to manifest here. As if reality itself had stepped back. He thought it was just another mountain at first. But then, he saw the light. It wasn't glowing. It was moving, spiraling, breathing. A single breath. Drawn in and out from the heart of the earth. And from that breath came the cave. It didn't open. It unfolded. Like the mouth of a star. He stepped inside. And the first thing he felt was scale. Not width. Not length. Scale. The cave was wider than the world. Deeper than the sky. The walls moved like slow galaxies. Each one pulsing with planetary rhythm. The ceiling hung not with stalactites, but with constellations. And when he looked down, the floor reflected the void between them. It's not a place. It's a mirror of everything. As above, so below. He Saturday cross-legged. No fire. No protection. No system. Just breath. And silence. He placed the book beside him. He placed the Wayfinder on his lap. He placed his hand over his heart, where the 8 fruit fragments pulsed like fading stars. And finally, he closed his eyes. The foolish boy has found a place the gods forgot to erase. A space outside system jurisdiction. A heartbeat left behind by the universe. I do not know what will become of him here, but I know that if he listens long enough, he will remember the name he wrote on the sky before it broke. He felt it first in his spine. A hum. A low, slow vibration that wasn't sound or chakra or thought. It was presence. It was like sitting inside the breathing chest of a dead god that hadn't finished dreaming. The constellations above began to pulse. One by one. Not randomly, but in rhythm. To his own heartbeat. His breath slowed. 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 Until the cave felt like an extension of his lungs. Until time lost meaning. He wasn't Naruto anymore. He wasn't anything. He was just still. He felt the fragments shift. Not activate. Not glow. Just settle. As if recognizing they were close to their missing piece. The stars spun faster above. The ground pulsed with memory. The constellations above began to form shapes. Words. Names. He saw the one who lied to oblivion. The calamity of salvation. The wind that refused to leave. The one who engraved his name. Each title blinked into place. Then flickered out. Leaving only Naruto. He did not open his eyes. But he smiled. Not because he'd found the ninth piece. But because for the first time, he felt where it lived. Somewhere inside him. Below the memories. Below the power. Below the grief. Something ancient. Small. Bright. And still alive. He would not find it today. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not for years. But now. He knew where to look. And that, Foxtail whispered, is the first step toward becoming someone the world cannot erase. The cave did not hum. It waited. Like it had been holding this silence for 1,000 eternities. Like it had been carved from the breath of something that couldn't speak anymore. And now it held him. Not gently, but completely. Naruto Saturday, the galaxy above pulsed to his breath. The void below rippled with memory. And inside his chest, the 8 fruit fragments burned like witnesses. Not alive. Not judging. Just recording what came next. He didn't try to reach for the ninth piece. He knew now. It would not come to him. He would have to create the space for it. And to do that, he would have to delete the version of himself the system had written. Every line. Every loop. Every God-sponsored correction. If I'm going to be real, then I have to erase everything they made me into. And so, he began. 1. The name that was given, he started with the surface. The name. Uzumaki Naruto. Not a name he chose. Not even one anyone remembered correctly. A name the system assigned to a character for balance. For pity. For narrative control. He took it in his hand like a scroll. The way the system might display it in blue gold lettering. And he ripped it. Digit by digit. Sound by sound. Until there was no Naruto left in the codebase. Only the breath that first carried it. The stars above flickered. A window error blinked behind his eyes. Identity not recognized. Memory conflict detected. restoring default parameters. He smiled and refused. 2. The face the world remembered. Next came the shape of his body. The version that the system kept defaulting back to. Blonde hair, blue eyes, Konoha standard build. A vessel crafted from nostalgia and marketability. A body easy to idolize, easy to forget. He reached into himself, found the line of chakra that defined his form, and cut it. His hands dissolved, then his face, then the outlines of his bones, until he was nothing but chakra suspended in breath. He did not scream. There was no pain, only certainty. This body wasn't mine anyway. It was theirs. The system tried again. Stabilizing host structure. Error avatar construction failed. Recommend rebirth protocol. Auto-initiate in 3, 2. No, the number didn't reach 0. It shattered. He forced himself back into being. But this time, he chose his own outline. It didn't look like anything at first. It changed every second. Wind, ash, light, flesh, stars, smoke. But it was his, and the system couldn't read it. 3. The story that was never his. Then came the hard part. The narrative. The system's version of Naruto was a boy cursed but lucky. A mistake with heart. A glitch with charm. The demon hero. The boy with no parents. The vessel who proved he was more than what he held. But he never chose that. They did. The gods. The writers. The system. They made him palatable. They made him safe. And now he reached inside himself, to where the lines of his story were buried. The fables. The arcs. The system events that had been written into his life since turn 1. He found them. And one by one, he burned them. System notice legendary fable. The boy who was left behind has been deleted. System notice sub-narrative thread. The demon child redeemed has been deleted. System notice compatibility with path of light heroism has been lost. He didn't flinch. He kept burning, until nothing remained but ashes and silence. The cave watched. The stars watched. Foxtail watched. He is unmaking himself like no one else ever dared. Not because he wants to disappear, but because he wants to exist without permission. 4. The gap between system and self. Naruto opened his eyes. He saw the cave again. The galaxy. The void. His body was half there. His chakra no longer looped in circles. His thoughts were no longer constrained to choices. His name was not on any interface. He was now something the system could only label with blanks. Question mark. Status undefined. Existence error active. He breathed. Once. And the stars changed rhythm. He wasn't done. There was more to delete. More to confront. But he had begun. And the 9th piece? It stirred. Not visible. Not reachable. But closer. He is not becoming a god. He is becoming a self. And when he returns, the world will not be able to recognize him. But it will not be able to deny him, either. Foxtail memory is a weapon the world only lets you use when it's safe to remember. So he began picking up the dangerous ones. The ones they redacted. The ones he bled in. The ones where he lost everything and never got it back. Foxtail Naruto sat inside the cosmic cave. Half there, half not. The chakra around him stilled, like a sea finally done waiting for a storm. And then, the memory came. No trigger, no words. Just a heartbeat that didn't belong in this body. In a house he'd never seen before in this timeline. He blinked, and he was there. The walls were gray. The table broken in the corner. The smell of burnt rice and iron. The door was cracked open, and the window let in too much wind. He was young, not child young, just old enough to want to run. She was in the kitchen. His mother, not Kushina, someone else. Tired, silent, one hand still bandaged from the night before. And he was sitting at the table, pretending this was normal, pretending this was a home. And then the man came back. Heavy boots, slurred breath, door slamming too hard. His chakra felt like rusted nails and spoiled sake. He said nothing at first. Then he started shouting. His mother didn't cry. Naruto didn't move. But his hand tightened around the fork on the table, so tightly it bent. And when the man raised his voice again, Naruto stood. He didn't remember grabbing the knife. Didn't remember running. Just that something in him had decided if I don't stop this, it never ends. But he was too small. Too slow. He wasn't a shinobi yet. The man grabbed his wrist mid-swing, slapped the knife away, and when he raised his other hand, something else struck first. The woman, his mother. She had lunged between them. Her hand hit the man's chest. And something broke. He stumbled, collapsed, didn't move again. Naruto just stood there, breathing, shaking, watching his mother fall to her knees, not because she mourned him, but because she had killed him first. And then the world glitched. The memory bent, twisted, ripped like paper doused in blood. And suddenly, he was in the orphanage. Again, no memory of the house, no adoption record, no mother, no corpse, no scars, just Naruto, nameless. The system had deleted the turn. That wasn't supposed to happen. The narrative doesn't like stories where Naruto isn't forgivable. So it threw it away. But he remembered. Naruto opened his eyes in the cave, tears running down a face that didn't belong to any template. He whispered, I had a mother. She tried to protect me, and I let them forget her. He dug his hands into the dust of the cave floor, dragged out the version of himself from that turn. A Naruto who was angry, unrefined, ashamed, but real. And then he embraced him. Hidden identity fragment recovered, the one who fought back. System notice narrative violation. Unrecoverable path detected. Memory restoration locked. He smiled and deleted the notification. The rebuilding begins. Naruto stood now, more solid than before, not because he was growing stronger, but because he was becoming himself. Piece by piece, memory by memory, he reached into his chest, found another line of false code, another constraint labeled Shinobi class optimized for protagonist role. He laughed and tore it out. System authority check invalid. Status irregular variable detected. Narrative enforcement failed. He summoned his chakra. Let it burn. Let it reshape. Not for battle. Not for training. Not for role assignment. Just for presence. His body became the container of broken memories and truths they tried to erase. His eyes no longer reflected the system's vision. They reflected his mother's hands, his friends' voices, his own name, carved deep. The system cannot read him anymore. It tries to apply filters. Fails. He is becoming a blind spot in its code. A black hole in narrative logic. And through that hole, the ninth piece stirs. He breathed and whispered, "I'm not done yet." The cave began to shift again. Deeper now, opening into a lower chamber. One Naruto hadn't been ready to see before. One memory wasn't enough. But now he could walk further, erase further, become further. He stepped forward, each step rewriting the ground beneath him. Not with chakra, not with divine power, but with the selfhood the world refused to name. There are more memories, more lives, more turns, and he will walk through every one of them until only one thing remains: truth without narrative, being without permission, a name that no one gave him but himself. The stars blinked out in the cave ceiling above him, one by one, until there was nothing left. And in that nothing, Naruto blinked and woke up, but not in the cave, not in the present, not even in the timeline he remembered. This was somewhere else. Another erased turn, another life the system had tried to bury beneath easier stories. But now it was clawing back to the surface, and Naruto felt it pull him in. He stood on cracked stone, not just broken, evaporated. The earth was dusted with ash and bone. The sky? It wasn't sky anymore. Just a canvas of gray where stars had forgotten how to shine. The air tasted like loss. The system? Silent. As if this world had passed even its capacity for record keeping. This was the end of the story. The true end. Not the one where heroes die and the world mourns, but the one where the world dies. And no one is left to remember it. Naruto looked around. No survivors. No landmarks. No horizon. Just a flat, burned memory of a planet that used to dream. And still, he was there. Alive. Breathing. Heart still beating. He dropped to his knees. Not out of pain, but out of confusion. Because he didn't understand. Why? Why him? Why was he still here? What part of the scenario thought this was the happy ending? He pressed his palms to the dust. Ash rose through his fingers like smoke. And suddenly, a voice. Not out loud. Not like chakra. Just a warmth behind his shoulder. A pressure he couldn't name. He turned. And saw it. A silhouette. Faint. Massive. Curved like fire held still in motion. 9 tails. Maybe. 2 eyes. Maybe more. Its edges flickered like a candle dying. But it didn't move. It just sat beside him. Watching. Waiting. There. Naruto didn't question it. He didn't flinch. He just leaned toward it. Like it had always been there. You still here too? The shape didn't answer. Not with words. But Naruto felt something stir behind his heart. A pulse. A name not spoken. He looked down. And whispered. I lost them. Hinata. Sasuke. Everyone. I didn't even get to say goodbye. The shape didn't flicker. But something inside him warmed. I don't know if they're in another loop. If they got rewritten. Or if this is just it. He closed his eyes. Let the ash settle on his skin. But as long as I have you, I'll never be alone. The shape shifted. Not closer. Just deeper. Like it sank into him. Or he leaned into it. Or maybe they were always the same shape, and he just forgot. He smiled. Tired. But true. I don't even remember what you are. What you were. But I know you're mine. The shape leaned its head down. Pressed its snout. If that's what it was. Against his shoulder. No chakra. No flame. Just a memory of warmth the world forgot to delete. Even here. In the turn that ends all others. He wasn't alone. Because someone refused to let him forget how it felt to be loved. Foxtail, he stayed like that for hours. Days. Years. There was no time here. Only remembrance. Only waiting. Then the world flickered. The cave returned. The dust on his fingers was gone. But the warmth wasn't. And when he looked behind him, there was no one. But he still felt it. You're still with me. He placed his hand over his chest, where the fragments of the fruit pulsed like a second heart. And deeper still, something stirred. Not a god. Not a fable. Not a title. Just a truth. A piece of him that chose to remain. Even when nothing else did. I survived that loop. I wasn't meant to. But I did. And now I know. Even if the world forgets me again, I remember how to stand in the silence. He reached back into himself. And this time, he didn't delete anything. He reclaimed it. That version of him. That lonely, dying Naruto who still chose to live. He pulled him forward, wrapped arms around him, and breathed. Memory restored the last one left. Narrative thread rejected by system. Authoritative override accepted by host. Selfhood alignment 67% complete. He sat again. In the cave. Breathing. Waiting. Not lost. Just becoming. The ninth piece pulses. It does not need to be found. It only needs to be remembered. And he is almost ready. When he finds it, the world will finally understand who they tried to forget. Foxtail the cave was quiet again. The cosmic dust had stopped swirling. The fragments had dimmed to embers. And Naruto was almost gone. Not dead. Not vanished. But deliberately unwritten. He sat cross-legged in the heart of the galaxy cave. His breath slow. His heartbeat shallow. And in front of him, the system hovered. Not with power, but with confusion. Because it no longer knew what to do with him. He was no longer compatible with any class. He didn't fit any narrative role. He couldn't be targeted by scenarios. He had no fable left that the system could read. Only the ones he carved into the empty space beneath structure. He exhaled. One more. The final tether. The last thread between himself and the person he was built to be. The thing he hadn't dared to erase until now. The root file Uzumaki Naruto, hero of the loops. Not just the system's name for him. The idea of him. The core assumption that he was meant to survive for others. To be a beacon. To inspire. To hurt. So the world could hope. He reached into himself. Found that root. The endless chain of sacrifice. The template of martyrdom. The boy who was always there. Even when he broke. Even when he died. Even when he was erased. The thing they always put back in place. He looked at it. And said, you served your purpose. Now let me rest. And he tore it out. Not with a scream. Not with power. Just with silence. The system blinked. Critical warning anchor deleted. User identity lost. Narrative integration failed. Reconstruction impasse. Naruto exhaled. And the window shattered. No light. No explosion. Just a quiet unmaking of everything they once forced him to be. He no longer had a destiny, a class, a heroic arc, a protagonist clause, a survival flag, a god mark, a redemption tag, a childhood narrative, a village, to return to a family, to avenge a tale, to cage. He has nothing the system can measure. And so, he becomes more than it can hold. He stood now. Naked. Not in body. In presence. No name overhead. No health bar. No fable glinting behind his eyes. Just a figure made of chakra, memory, will, truth. He turned to the galaxy walls. And saw himself. Not the current him. The one being built. Slowly. Carefully. In fragments. There was no face yet. No shape. Just intention. A framework of potential. I'll spend the next few years finishing you. He whispered. But not with their words. Not with their loops. With mine. He raised his hand. And around him, the galaxy dimmed. Like the stars were bowing. Not in worship. But in recognition. For the first time. Naruto did not belong to the world. The world belonged to him. He is now a being the system cannot regenerate. A story without precedent. A soul without a plot. And he will rebuild himself, not as a hero, but as a witness. A truth. A choice that was made again and again until it became real. Foxtail, he sat down again. Folded his legs beneath him. Placed the blank book in his lap. Set the wayfinder on top. Closed his eyes. And finally, let himself vanish. No wind. No system noise. No farewell. Just silence. The stars above pulsed once. Then fell still, as if holding breath for what he would one day become. He was not gone. He was not forgotten. He was not written. He was becoming. And it would take time. Years. More maybe. But when he returned, it would not be to finish the story. It would be to rewrite the ending. The beginning after the end. 6 months since the name Naruto Uzumaki was last spoken by the system. 6 months since the sky flickered with unregistered power. 6 months since the last anomaly vanished into the fracture between stories. And the world decided to keep turning anyway. The 5 great nations were whole again. Not united. Not healed. But functioning. They had gods now. Real ones. Not faiths whispered in shrines or war cries from crumbling statues. No. These gods had names, faces, domains, and systems. They issued quests. They assigned fables. They voted on lives. And now, they had grown tired of each other. Scenario 40. The Great Extinguishing War. The gods demand convergence. 5 villages. 9 champions each. The last village standing earns a single absolute wish. The others will be erased. This was no longer a game of sponsors and survivors. This was a thinning of the narrative. The gods called it balancing. The people called it divine extinction. Each village had assembled its best. No. It's final. 9 champions. The culmination of legacy, bloodline, sacrifice, and myth. Chosen not just to win, but to become what remained of their world. The arena? Not built. Revealed. When the sky broke, and the ground peeled back, and the stars themselves made way. A floating world, orbiting a blind sun. Stadiums carved from the bones of forgotten dragons. Chambers where time was thinner than breath. This was the Concord. And once the scenario began, no one would leave. Konoha was not ready. Not because it lacked power. Not because it lacked heroes. But because the strongest among them was gone. Sasuke Uchiha had disappeared after scenario 39. Not into exile. Not into grief. into distance. He was not sulking. He was not lost. He was watching the world, alone. And the world had learned something in his absence. Sasuke was no longer Naruto's rival. Sasuke was no longer the last Uchiha. Sasuke was no longer the one who walked behind. Sasuke was now the strongest in the leaf. Stronger than the revived legends. Stronger than Minato. Stronger than the gods thought he should be. But the system had one rule: a village without 9 champions forfeits. So they needed him, not to win, but to keep the leaf alive long enough to matter. And so the search began. Seen before the departure, the briefing hall was carved from restored obsidian. A gift from the system after Scenario 36. Hinata stood at the center, fingers laced. Her hair was longer now, her eyes softer. But her posture made people sit straighter. Around her stood Niji, arms folded, a fable burning behind his left eye. Tenten, checking the seals on a weapon case that looked older than the system. Rock Lee, radiating a silent fire even as he drank his morning tea. Kushina, back from her grief, but not from the pain. Kakashi, now godmarked, but quieter than ever. Minato, looking at the map like he might set it on fire if it dared show him something wrong. Guy, smiling, but slower now. He moved like someone who'd seen the end and walked back. And above them all, a screen flickered. Sasuke's last known coordinates. He's in the old blood sector, Niji said, where the Tower of Abandonment used to be. He's not hiding, Tenten added. He's watching. That place sees everything. Hinata nodded. We have 6 days until the scenario locks. If we don't bring him back, they'll erase the leaf by default. Silence. Until Guy said, then we go together. Seen the journey begins. They left that night. All 8 champions. 8 myths in motion. Moving like shadows across a world that had forgotten peace. They passed through collapsed sectors. Realms still haunted by broken fables. They passed refugees who no longer prayed. Only bargained with gods who kept receipts. They passed new nations rising from the cracks, built on fear of becoming the next erased. And still, no Sasuke. Until the 5th day, they reached the edge of the blood sector. It no longer had sky, just red light, stretched thin across obsidian peaks. The tower loomed, collapsed, but burning from the inside, like something alive still slept there. Hinata stepped forward. She could feel it. Not just power, not just chakra, a presence, one that knew they were here, one that had been waiting. Sasuke stood at the edge of the ruin, cloaked in something that wasn't chakra. His Rei-Jinshu cloak flickered like plasma across black feathers. The Susanoo, no longer a giant, just a shadow now, and behind his eyes, the storm. He turned to them, spoke without flinching. You want me to fight? You want me to win? But what happens if I do? No one answered. Not yet, because they all knew. The system wasn't just testing who could survive. It was testing who deserved to remain. And Sasuke wasn't sure the world deserved anything at all. And above them, the sky cracked, and the scenario began to count. The crater that once held the Tower of Abandonment smelled like old iron and scorched memory. Sasuke stood at the edge, looking down at a void that no longer reflected the sky. His cloak barely moved, not because there was no wind, but because the wind no longer touched him. The others arrived in silence. Hinata stepped forward first. Niji stayed behind her, arms crossed. Tenten unslung her sealed weapon scroll, but didn't open it. Lee bowed, not in greeting, but in recognition. Kushina said nothing. She just looked at him like a mother seeing a son she never met. Guy and Kakashi exchanged no words. They didn't need to. Minato watched the edge of the crater, the way Sasuke's shadow didn't line up with the terrain, like the world wasn't finished rendering him. And then Sasuke turned. His left arm ended at the shoulder. Where it should have been, an arc of bladed lightning snapped and unfolded. Coated in compressed chakra and Raijin's will, shaped into a skeletal limb of shifting energy. It didn't mimic flesh. It was something else. A Susanoo phantom. A Rei-Jinshu extension. A prosthetic made of conviction. He spoke, not as greeting, as judgment. You waited 6 months, and now you come. His voice didn't echo. It didn't need to. The words carried the weight of finality. Hinata didn't flinch. Because we need you. Sasuke's eye narrowed. The Raijin flame in his left socket sparked like thunder restrained. Then say it correctly. You don't need me. You want me to destroy your enemies. You want me to erase what stands in your way. You want me to impose my truth on a world that forgot yours. So say it. Niji's voice broke in next. Calm, clipped, proud. You're the strongest among us. Stronger than Kakashi, than Minato, than even him. And we don't want to win through compromise. We want to win through clarity. Sasuke tilted his head. And if my clarity looks like annihilation? If I rewrite cause and effect, fracture the stage, and burn gods by name, will you accept that as your victory? Lee bowed his head lower. If it protects my comrades, I will accept any fire. Tenten muttered under her breath. I just want to walk off that stage alive. If you can get me there, I don't care if the world doesn't understand how. Sasuke's Susanoo arm folded across his chest. The lightning in his shoulder unfolded like paper soaked in rain light, becoming dozens of weapon shapes before stabilizing into a jagged, semi-transparent fist. He looked to Guy. And you? The one who burned so brightly once. Are you still ready to die again? Guy smiled. Not brightly, not arrogantly, just steadily. if the youth around me can live because of it. Yes. Sasuke turned next to Kushina. You were given a second chance. Would you spend it watching another massacre unfold by your side? Kushina didn't flinch. No, that's why I'm here. To end it this time. Then Minato. And here, Sasuke paused. They locked eyes. Not as teacher and student. Not as master and subordinate. As two men who had both died and returned to find the world unrecognizable. You once died to save the village. Would you now kill to preserve it? Minato's voice was quieter than expected. But it didn't tremble. Only if I don't have to ask someone else to do it for me. The air grew heavier. Even the gods watching from above dared not interrupt. Sasuke raised his right hand. Opened his palm. The crater behind him began to glow. Cracks of divine glass bled light that wasn't from this plane. I've seen the edge of this story. I've met the other versions of myself. The ones who submitted. The ones who fell in love with godhood. The ones who wanted to be remembered more than they wanted to be true. He took a step forward. The crater quaked. I am not one of them. I am not your leader. Not your god. Not your legacy. I am a weapon that chose to be more. Hinata stepped in again. Her voice never rose. But it resonated. We don't want you to lead us. We want you to walk beside us. Not because we need a sword, but because we remember the boy who stood at Naruto's side. The name. It hit. Hard. Sasuke's lightning arm shuddered. The phantom chakra rippled. Not in rage, but in memory. He whispered. You think I do this because he's gone. But I do this because he was the only person I couldn't catch. Niji lowered his head. Then surpass him. Kakashi, for the first time, spoke. No, walk with him. When he returns. That broke the silence. Completely. Sasuke turned his head to the side. Lightning cracked around his feet. The crater behind him folded into nothing. And he whispered, then follow me. We have gods to silence. The wind moved like ash through the crater. The gods were watching. But for now, they said nothing. The company stood at the edge of the blood sector. They had reclaimed Sasuke. But the weight of what was coming hadn't faded. It settled into their bones. The system's countdown was audible in the static of the air, a pressure that layered on skin and soul. Tomorrow began Scenario 40, the Great Extinguishing War. And before the world ended again, they needed to talk. They set up temporary shelter in the corpse of an old battlefield, where the flags of 100 forgotten scenarios still fluttered like prayers tied to dead trees. No fire, just presence. 9 sat in a loose circle. No hierarchy, just memory and purpose. Sasuke, resting against a jagged pillar of crystalline ash. His left arm, a rage-forged phantom limb of Susanoo force, hummed with barely contained lightning. His presence made the world hesitate. Hinata, seated opposite, her gaze like still water reflecting truths no one wanted to name. Niji, silent and focused, the mark of Tsukuyomi behind his eye dull from meditation. Tenten, whispering to a sealed scroll longer than most swords. One inked with the blood of a dead fable. Lee, radiating invisible flame. His gate work had stabilized into a myth-tier technique. He no longer burned. He carried fire. Kushina, twining a red ribbon between her fingers like it was a seal she had to hold herself together with. Minato, golden chakra flickering like warning tape on a collapsing bridge. His speed was irrelevant now. He moved where space broke. Kakashi, barely visible unless he wanted to be. His cloak held a faint spiral pattern. Hagoromo's mark, but altered, like a signature written upside down. Guy, seated with legs crossed, breath so steady even the ghosts nearby stopped screaming. Hinata was the first to speak. We should prepare. Strategically, mentally, and emotionally. Niji nodded. Iwa, Humo, Suna, Kiri. Each village will send 9. We have names for most of them now. He looked to Sasuke. Want to start with threats? Sasuke's Susanoo arm flexed. Mimicking an inhale. Start with Iwa. Niji recited without inflection. Anoki, Deidara, Rashi, Han, Kitsuchi, Kuratsuchi, Akatsuchi, Gari, Ishikawa. 2 confirmed demons. Han and Rashi. Deidara's sponsor is unknown but likely myth tier, possibly tied to a god of creation or entropy. Anoki doesn't need one. He's Anoki. Tintin added Han's combustion trail collapsed the sector during Scenario 38. He's a demon with mass-enhanced kinetic flow. If he gets moving, he can't be stopped. Just redirected. Rashi's fable lets him fuse terrain into weapon-state magma. Touch-based ignition. If they're running formation, Kitsuchi will act as anchor. Kuratsuchi and Gari will flank. Gari's detonation style has narrative impact now. He can tag multiple metaphysical layers. Lee, quiet their defense will be iron. Their pride will be greater. Hinata added softly, and that pride can be used against them. Minato crossed his arms. Suna, Niji again. Raza, Gara, Sasori, Chio, Temari, Kinkaro, Pakura, Baki, Fu. Fu is a confirmed demon. Gara is changed. His fable shifted after Scenario 34. His sand doesn't protect. It consumes. Tintin made a face. Sasori rebuilt himself completely after being erased in Scenario 29. He's held together by divine threads and a grudge that predates sponsorship. I don't want to fight him. Sasuke looked up. Gara is calm now. Still. But if we see him act first. He didn't finish the sentence. They all understood. Kushina didn't look up, but her voice was clear. If we go up against Suna, I'll handle Fu. Demon to demon. They turned to her, but no one protested. The ribbon around her fingers pulsed once, then dimmed. Niji nodded. Kumo. A. Killer B. Yujito. Darui. Karui. Omoi. Samui. Dodai. Toroi. B and Yujito are both confirmed demons. B's sponsor is likely the Eight Tails. Title: the song that dragged oceans into silence. Yujito has held Fire State in stasis since Scenario 35. That's not normal. She's pulling power from a twin-aspect Demon King, the silent pyre of Forgotten Queens. Lee looked up. Kumo will come hard. Day 1. No delays. Tintin laughed once, without humor. O is still A. Punch first, shout second, apologize never. Kakashi, finally speaking, they'll burn themselves out fast. If we last longer than 3 trials, they'll lose momentum. Sasuke, but they'll take someone with them. Make sure it's not one of us. Silence again. Not awkward. Focused. Minato Kiri. Nijime. Yagura. Utakata. Haku. Zabuza. Ao. Suigetsu. Chojuro. Mangetsu. Yagura and Utakata. Confirmed demons. Yagura is a control type. Wide area suppression and recursive illusions. Demon title: the mirror-scaled tyrant beneath still waters. Utakata manipulates corrosive pressure as a miasma state defense. Very little is known about his internal mechanisms. Demon title: the blooming rot that sleeps beneath the mire. Sasuke glanced at Hinata. Haku. Hinata soft. Gentle. But if pushed. Terrifying. He doesn't enjoy hurting people. But he's never failed to kill someone when he had to. Tintin shuddered. Mangetsu is going to try and kill me. He still blames me for his brother's loss in Scenario 32. I'm going to have to kill him first. Kushina finally looked up. Her voice wasn't angry. It was precise. Let them come. Let the whole world turn its knives against us. Because we're going to win. And when Naruto returns. She exhaled. Soft. Steady. There'll still be a world waiting for him. There'll still be a village. And this time, I'll be there. Not as a shadow. Not as a name. As his mother. Minato placed a hand on her shoulder. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. Sasuke stood slowly. The stars dimmed behind him. Like even they were afraid of what might happen next. We know what's coming. We know who they are. But they don't know who we've become. He looked at each of them. You are not the leaf's last hope. You are its final memory. Burn it into the world. Because after this, there will be nothing left but what we choose to leave behind. They had been sitting in silence for too long. The strategy talk had faded. Threat assessments made. Enemy names spoken aloud like omens. The others began to settle, recalibrating their thoughts. But Kushina's fingers never stopped moving. A red ribbon was wrapped around her wrist. Twice, then 3 times, then knotted at the center. Like a seal. Like a boundary. Like she was trying to hold herself together. She stared at it without blinking. And then, without being asked, she began to speak. I used to think I was the loud one. The fierce one. The one people remembered. Her voice was quiet. Not gentle. Just stripped raw. Turns out, I forgot the most important thing. The others looked at her now. But no one interrupted. My son was right there. In the village. In the orphanage. In front of me. And I didn't know him. Didn't feel him. Didn't even stop to ask why the name Naruto sounded familiar. Her fingers tightened around the ribbon. It frayed slightly. Like it didn't want to hold the truth either. That's what the system did. What the gods let happen. They stole him from me. And worse. They made me think he was no one. He died. Came back. Was erased. Again and again. Her breath hitched. But she didn't stop. And I was alive. Living my life. Laughing. Fighting. Smiling. While he was forgotten by the world that should have loved him. She stood. The ribbon snapped. Red threads blew away like ash in the wind. Kushina's eyes were dry. Her chakra burned invisible spirals down her arms. The mark of the demon queen of the dying flame flickered behind her. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fight. Not just for Konoha. Not just to survive. I'm going to fight so that when he walks back into the world. Her chakra ignited, silent and searing. There's a place still standing. One with people who remember his name. One with a mother who sees him this time. She looked up now. At the sky. At the gods she couldn't name. And when he sees me again. I want to be someone worthy of being his mother. Not a symbol. Not a casualty. But the first hand he reaches for. Not a single person spoke for several heartbeats. Even the wind circled wide around her. Because they all knew. No matter what else the world forgot. Kushina wouldn't. Not again. The Concord did not exist until it was needed. It was not a place. It was a judgment given form. It hung in the sky like a scar. A ring of cracked islands and floating monoliths spiraling around a black sun that didn't give light. Just wait. Below, the world had been sectioned into 5 domains, each a twisted echo of its parent village. Designed by the gods. Blessed by their sponsors. Made to challenge and reflect the champions that would soon walk them. 5 stages. 9 lives per nation. And 1 absolute wish. Konoha's sector. The hollow flame ring. Had been quiet for hours. But the world was about to get louder. A distant chime rippled through the sky, followed by jagged system script made of starlight. Pre-scenario window 12 hours until activation. Stage 1 map, rotating Konoha's centralized entry gate. Inter-village interactions permitted until trigger. Warning: early elimination consequences active. Begin psychological warfare at will. The first to arrive was Suna. They came as sand and wind, appearing at the outer edge of Konoha's sector like a whisper of an old storm. At their front, Raza. His cloak was stitched with golden thread shaped like falling suns. His eyes were lined with metal, his hands gloved in crushed myth. He didn't carry a gourd. He didn't need to anymore. Konoha, he said, voice dry as a battlefield forgotten by rain. Still standing. I was beginning to think you were a rumor. Behind him stood Gaara, hooded, silent. Sasori, red-eyed and smirking. Fu, drifting above the ground, her back arched like she was waiting for a fight to land first. Niji stepped forward. Raza, always a pleasure. Raza smiled without warmth. We'll see if you still say that in 24 hours. Kushina folded her arms. The seal over her chest shimmered faintly with heat. If you're trying to intimidate us, you'll have to do more than bring puppets and sand. Sasori's voice, sharp and smooth, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to see if your blood makes better ink than last time. Lee raised a brow. You still talk like an artist. But your brushwork was sloppy the last time we met. Fu giggled. Tilted her head, eyes alight with wild mischief. Are you flirting with him? Because if you are, I get to kill you second instead of first. Before anyone could reply, the sky cracked again. New arrival detected village. Kumo, lightning bloomed. And they arrived like thunder, remembering it used to be a man. Killer Bee strode beside him, humming bars from a dead language. The words summoned sparks. Not metaphor. Literal sparks. Yujito followed last, wrapped in black and blue fire, the outline of a lioness pulsing at her heels. Her eyes never blinked. She didn't look at the others. She looked through them. Or rolled his neck. The sound echoed. Is this it? He asked, voice like dropped stone. These are the flames we're supposed to fear. They look like ash already. Guy stepped forward, smiling. Be careful how close you get to embers. The ones that glow are the ones that still burn. Yujito turned to Kushina. Their eyes met. Two demons. Two flames. One born of quiet regret. The other forged in controlled fury. Yujito's voice was soft, like a lullaby humming over a funeral pyre. He's not here. So why do I still smell his scent all over your chakra? Kushina didn't flinch. Because you're about to learn what kind of mother loses a son. She stepped forward. And what kind of fire she becomes to get him back. Before the tension snapped, another crack in the sky. New arrival detected village. Kiri, fog rolled in. Salt heavy, red at the edges. Yagura appeared first, eyes closed, hand resting on a lacquered staff. Behind him Haku, walking barefoot on crystallized mist. Zabuza's sword trailed behind him, connected by thin strings of chakra. Not wielded, but commanded. May walked ahead of them all. Her hair was shorter now. Her mouth was a smile that warned the tongue not to taste it. So many strong men, she said, glancing between Minato and Kakashi. And yet, none of you managed to hold on to Naruto. What a waste. Hinata tensed. Sasuke narrowed his eye. Minato stayed still. But Kushina. Her flames didn't rise. They compressed. A coil. A breath held. You're welcome to die trying to replace him. Yagura opened one eye. I didn't expect him to be absent. It changes the prophecy. Zabuza spat to the side. Doesn't change the outcome. Leaf still bleeds. Another crack. Another warning. New arrival detected village. IWA. And then came Deidara, riding a clay bird that cracked with stormlight, laughing like nothing mattered except the things he could blow up. Rashi followed, shoulders molten. Han behind him, walking like a living planet. Anoki drifted in like a specter of inevitability. Kuratsuchi stood between them, arms crossed, eyes burning. Anoki pointed at Sasuke. You're the one they say outpaced Minato. Sasuke didn't reply. Anoki grunted. Doesn't matter. You'll be ground to dust just the same. Deidara cackled from above. I'll paint the sky with your fables. Call it obsolete flame in 12 strokes. Tintin muttered to Niji, that's not even a good title. Hinata finally stepped forward. She looked at them all. All the enemies. All the armies. All the gods behind their eyes. I don't care how long you've waited. How strong you've become. What sponsors whisper in your heads. She pointed at the center of the arena, where the absolute wish still pulsed, glowing red. We're not here for that. She turned back to her team. Eyes steady. Voice certain. We're here for him. The system flared. Scenario lock imminent. Champions, return to your sectors. The gods began to descend. And the war began tomorrow. Night fell over the hollow flame ring. Not real night. There was no sun here. No moon. No stars. Just a shifting, smoldering sky that glowed red from the inside, like something ancient was trying to breathe through it. But the system dimmed the light when it knew humans needed darkness. Or maybe it just wanted to see what they'd say when they thought the world wasn't listening. Konoha's sector was quiet now. And so the 9 gathered. No plans. No drills. No more strategies. Just a final night before the world demanded blood for remembrance. Kushina sat with her back against a boulder. Minato beside her, his head tilted back like he was counting flickers in the sky. She didn't speak first, but he did. When this is over, I want to plant something. She blinked. What? A tree. Doesn't matter what kind. Something dumb. Something small. He trailed off. I want something in this world that doesn't ask us to save it. Kushina's fingers curled into fists. I just want him to come back. And remember me. Minato looked at her. Softly. No judgment. He will. Even if the world forgets again. We won't. Elsewhere, Hinata sat near the edge of the ring, staring down at the abyss that separated their sector from the others. The empty space below looked like a throat with no end. Niji knelt beside her, quiet. After a moment, he asked, does it hurt? She blinked. What? Knowing he's alive. And still not here. Hinata's voice was distant. It hurts more knowing what he gave up, so we could be. Niji nodded. I never apologized. She turned. For what? For resenting you. For everything that happened when we were children. He looked at his hands. The eye branded by Tsukuyami pulsed once under his brow. I was taught that your blood meant more than mine. That I was a branch. You were a root. He paused. But you chose to grow. Hinata smiled. Just faintly. Then let's make sure there's something left for him to grow into. Lee and Guy were training in slow motion. Not combat. Just form. Movements carved like temple prayers. Fists through air. Breath synced like fire being born. Kakashi sat nearby, watching them like a painter studying the world before color was invented. Guy spoke mid-kick. Do you think he'll be proud? Lee didn't stop moving. Yes. Guy nodded. Then I can die happy. Kakashi muttered without looking up. You're not dying. None of us are dying. We're going to win. And when he comes back, his voice caught. He'll never have to fight again. Tintin leaned over a set of old fable scrolls. Her hands were stained with fresh ink, her wrists bandaged where the seals had burned. Sasuke stood across from her, silent. She didn't look up. You don't sleep either, huh? Sasuke didn't reply. I've been trying to write down everything I know about the others. Not just their powers. Their tells. Their favorite techniques. The way they move when they think they're safe. She looked up now. Eyes tired, but alight. If we all make it out, I'm going to publish it. A field guide to surviving your enemies. A history of our war. Maybe even a few dumb jokes at Daidar's expense. Sasuke stared at her. He won't read it. He's going to be dead. Tintin smirked. That's the idea. He started to walk away. But then she said Sasuke. He stopped. Do you think Naruto would have fought in this? A beat. Then another. And then, very quietly, no. He turned. Lightning flickered faintly in his phantom arm. But he would have made sure we survived it. Silence held. Until the system began to stir. A faint hum. A low vibration in the soul. Like a heartbeat made of countdown. They all gathered at the center again. 9. Not a team. A memory made of movement and fire and loss. Kushina spoke first. No speeches. Minato added no regrets. Niji stepped forward. No second deaths. Lee raised a fist. No fear. Tintin clicked her scroll shut. No mercy. Kakashi lifted his head. No surrender. Guy smiled. No backing down. Hinata looked up. No forgetting. Sasuke clenched his lightning fist. No one left behind. And above them, the sky cracked. The scenario screamed. And the gods sharpened their eyes. It had been 6 months since the sky last remembered the name Naruto Uzumaki. The world had moved on. The system no longer counted him. The gods did not speak his name. His old fables were buried under rewrites. His old friendships lived in echo. And yet, he still existed. Somewhere. Alone. Naruto sat cross-legged in the heart of a hollow star. Not metaphor. The cave he had found. On the edge of a world that wasn't on any map. Was built like a planetary system, but inverted. Galaxies spun inside walls of stone. The sky had no outside. Tom had stopped asking him what day it was. And still, he remained. Meditation had stopped being a technique weeks ago. Now, it was architecture. Each breath tore down what remained of the Naruto the system had once allowed to exist. Each exhale built something new. But slowly, painfully, he no longer wore a name. Even his thoughts hesitated to call himself anything but that boy. The one they forgot. The echo. The shard. Around him were the fragments of self he'd sealed. Little floating sigils, orbiting like memory satellites, a scar from someone who once loved him. A prayer tag that should have exploded but didn't. A menu window, cracked and dark, still showing. Foxtail critical integrity. A single kanji carved into stone hope, written by a child he failed. Foxtail stirred. Not with words. With weight. Like a second soul curling through his skin. Then came the voice. Not booming. Not divine. Just there. You've almost erased everything. Are you sure what you're building can survive? Naruto didn't move. His voice was a whisper scraped out of time. It has to. Foxtail pulsed again. Do you even know what it is you're becoming? He closed his eyes. Not yet. But I know what I'm not. I'm not a tool. I'm not a player. I'm not a prophecy. He exhaled. I'm not a memory. The cave trembled. Something responded. Not from within, but from the past. Another flash. Another timeline. A vision. He was 8. In a house he didn't remember being adopted into. The man was cruel. The mother was silent. The beatings were routine. And one day, the blood came. But it wasn't his. He ran. The system rewrote it. He woke in the orphanage again. No one remembered the adoption. Not even him. Until now. Back in the cave, Naruto opened his eyes. A new scar glowed on his chest. Etched in the shape of a truth denied. He placed his hand over it. Let it burn. Foxtail asked again. If you could end your story right now, how would you make it end? Naruto stared at the floating sigils. Then the void beyond. I wouldn't. Not yet. Because there are still people in the story. Foxtail was silent. Then, a new sigil appeared. One he hadn't made. A book. Leatherbound. No title. No pages. But he knew what it was. The one Hinata had left. Tales of the utterly gutsy shinobi. It opened. Pages still blank. But on the first one. Chapter 1. A boy named Minma lives alone in a world that never knew him. Naruto whispered. Minma. Something in him shifted. Like a lock. Like a heartbeat. Like an answer. Foxtail pulsed. You remember it now, don't you? The day you read this. The day you were going to. Naruto cut it off. Yeah, and I chose to live. He smiled. For the first time in months. Even if no one could see it. He stood. His shadow unfolded. It stretched far. Farther than the cave, farther than the light, farther than the system could trace. He was no longer meditating. He was becoming. This isn't done. But it's enough to begin again. The sigils shattered. Reformed into light. And the world shifted. As Naruto took a step forward, still hidden. Still uncounted. But no longer lost. He didn't leave the cave. Not yet. The air had started to thin. Not because there was no oxygen, but because the world itself had grown tired of sustaining someone who didn't exist. Time passed in fragments. Some days, he slept. Other days, he floated. Sometimes, he talked to himself. Just to prove he could still speak. But always. He rebuilt. The stars that spun within the cave walls had grown slower. Not because they were real, but because they were responding. To him. To his breath. To the shape of the thing he was becoming. Naruto didn't know what his name meant anymore. Every time he tried to remember what it felt like to be Naruto Uzumaki, the image blurred. Sometimes he was that boy who ate spoiled ramen and chased approval. Sometimes he was the creature gods tried to erase with kindness and cruelty alike. Sometimes he was just a scream. A scream without lungs. Without origin. Without anyone left to hear it. The book sat unopened at his side. He wasn't ready. Not to read it. Not to become the boy inside. He meditated again. But this time, he invited the memory. Another forgotten timeline. He was 13. The world had not yet fallen into divine hands. But his had already begun to tremble. He remembered standing on the Hokage monument, watching the sun fall behind a village that called him nothing. No missions. No recognition. No family. A boy with a dream. But no name attached to it. And then, the fall. Not the metaphorical one. The literal one. A misstep. A half second. The wind rushing faster than thought. And in that moment, he hadn't screamed. He had smiled. Until something caught him. Not a person. A thought. What if it gets better tomorrow? He never remembered where the thought came from. Until now. Back in the cave, he placed a hand on his chest. The scar there pulsed again. Like a heartbeat not fully claimed. He carved a word into the air with his finger. Not chakra. Not fablecraft. Just will. Live. Foxtail stirred. You're stabilizing. The world still doesn't remember you. But it's starting to make room again. Naruto frowned. I'm not ready. The voice didn't argue. It never had. Foxtail simply listened. Because Naruto wasn't like the others. He didn't follow the system. He didn't break it either. He simply refused to die. Another memory. This one more recent. A timeline where the war ended. He was a hero. They threw parades. Statues. Dances with his name carved into every flag. And yet, he couldn't feel it. He wandered that village for years. Surrounded by gratitude and silence. Because no one actually knew him. Just the version that one. Not the one who had suffered. He erased that self too. Not with anger. With mercy. His chest now bore 8 scars. Each one a name he no longer needed to carry. Each one a version of himself that could finally rest. He stood again. His legs were thinner than before. But stronger. His balance was perfect. Because gravity didn't control him anymore. The book glowed. Only faintly. Still closed. Still waiting. Naruto sat again. This time not in pain. But in discipline. Not yet. He whispered. I'm not ready to be him yet. But I'm going to become someone he would be proud to know. Above him, the stars in the cave spun faster again. Like they were watching. And somewhere, far beyond that forgotten sky, a system flickered. An error message blinked once. And vanished. Because even now, the story couldn't calculate what he was becoming. The Concord was not a battlefield. It was a system-made sin. A floating continent broken into 5 territories, suspended around a sun that had no warmth. Only gravity. This star was not celestial. It was divine, hollowed, and weaponized. Each village had its own ring, its own terrain, its own legend to burn into the world. The gods had built it this way, not to test them, to judge them. Konoha's ring was the first to activate. A forest without roots. A valley of petrified flame. Mountains sculpted from memory. Ash settled in the sky like snowfall that had forgotten its name. At the center of it all, the 9 from the leaf arrived. Not with glory. Not with flourish. They arrived like the final chapter of something the world wasn't ready to finish. They stood in silence for a moment. Each of them knew what was coming. No speeches. No countdowns. Just instinct pulling them apart. They didn't need to discuss it. They knew who needed to walk with who. Because in wars like this, not everyone gets to return. Sasuke left first. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't need to. His movements didn't ripple the air. They cut through it. like a sword made of unfinished sentences. He walked toward the north sector of the ring, where trees hung upside down and shadows grew longer when you looked away. None of them stopped him, because they knew Sasuke didn't fight to win. He fought so someone else could walk away. Tintin watched him vanish into the haze and muttered that man probably won't speak to another human until this whole thing ends. Niji didn't look up. That man probably plans to end it himself. Guy and Kakashi moved next. Not as a unit. Just in sync. Like two halves of an equation that had never needed solving. Only surviving. They said nothing until they crossed into the burnt river path that wound around the outer cliffs. Then Kakashi said so. Last one standing buys the drinks? Guy grinned. Deal. But I'm paying either way. Kakashi chuckled. Still the same idiot. Guy's voice softened, just slightly. Still the same friend. And then they were gone. Minato and Kushina went together. She burned. He hovered. They walked in a direction with no path because they'd already made their decision. Kushina's eyes were darker than fire now. Quiet. Measured. But every step she took left embers behind like a mother marking her way back to her son. Minato watched her, silent for a long time. Finally, when this is over. I'd like to build something with you. Kushina didn't stop walking. You already did. She looked back at him. He's not here. But he still exists. So we fight until the world is ready to remember. Niji, Tintin, and Lee moved as a trio. Not by strategy, but by gravity. Some configurations weren't tactical. They were emotional. Tintin walked ahead, scroll already half unrolled. She was muttering trap locations to herself, flicking ink into the air as she moved. Niji walked beside her. Calm. Eyes active. Already mapping the sector with precision born from obsession. Lee walked last. His steps were measured. His fists were loose. His gaze was steady. He didn't speak until they reached the first overlook. A ridge with a view of what looked like a battlefield sculpted from broken mirrors. Do you feel it? Tintin blinked. Feel what? Lee's voice was soft. Everything in this place wants to see who gives up first. Niji, then we make sure it's not us. Tintin smirked. Lee, if you even think about opening a gate without telling us first, I swear I will throw you off this cliff myself. Lee grinned. Understood. But if I fall, I will run back up the air itself. Tintin looked at Niji. Why do we let him talk? Hinata walked alone. Not because she had to. Because she chose to. She walked through the southern sector where the trees whispered in the voices of those who had died in the original Konoha. Before the systems, before the gods. She didn't flinch. She listened. A child's laugh echoed from somewhere in the branches. A flicker of white. Like a blur of cloth too fast to see. She paused. And in that breath, a voice whispered in her mind. If he were here, he'd be walking beside you. Hinata smiled. He's not gone. He's just preparing. Somewhere behind her, a rustle in the wind carried his name. But no one was there to say it. They had scattered now. 9 fragments of the same village. And the system responded. Phase 1 initialization complete. All sectors online. Cross-village contact now permitted. Victory condition only 1 village may remain. Trial 1 begins in 001000. The Concord shivered. The sun cracked once. Silently, the gods leaned closer. And the war began to listen. Somewhere in the north sector of the Concord, the wind stopped breathing. Not just stillness. Refusal. The trees bent the wrong direction. The sun overhead cracked like glass held too long in divine heat. In the battlefield, the one shaped by the system's memories of a Wagakure. Twisted, because Sasuke Uchiha was no longer walking across it. He was imposing something on top of it, and the world couldn't decide if it wanted to survive that imposition. He moved through the ash field like a blade already drawn. No wasted motion, no theatrics, just silence that cut deeper than sound. The first to intercept him were 4 from IWA. Gari, his palms already glowing with detonation chakra. Karatsuchi, stone armor activated, trailing molten seismic lines. Akatsuchi, towering and grinning like a man who thought he couldn't die. And Ishikawa, Anoki's shadow technique specialist. Already phasing between layers of terrain. They didn't hesitate, because they didn't understand. Yet, Gari struck first. He blurred into position, aiming a detonation palm at Sasuke's blind side. The moment it connected, a trigger word formed on his tongue. Explode. He hit. He felt the jutsu connect. And then, he blinked. He was standing 10 feet away. Arm broken. Chest fractured. Mouth filled with ash. Sasuke hadn't moved. Not visibly. WH. But Sasuke didn't let him finish. He flicked a single finger. A line of black lightning arced from the ground up Gari's spine. And his words short-circuited into vapor. Karatsuchi responded next. She pulled the terrain itself up like a wave, stone fist slamming down from 3 angles. Sasuke didn't dodge. He lifted his left arm. The one made not of flesh, but of condensed Susanoo folded into Reijinchu. And pointed. Fall. He said the word like it was a truth the earth had forgotten. And the stone obeyed. It shattered in midair. Not like stone breaking, but like narrative collapsing. Karatsuchi stumbled back, sweat forming instantly. She couldn't breathe. What? What did he just do? Akatsuchi barreled forward, enraged. He was the tank. The indomitable weight. He leapt, preparing to collapse a mountain's worth of chakra into a single seismic slam. Sasuke looked at him. Just looked. And the air bent sideways. The terrain beneath Akatsuchi suddenly wasn't there. He fell through a space that shouldn't exist. Landed on his back 100 meters away. His ribs cracked on impact. He vomited blood and static. Ishikawa finally activated his technique. He flickered into visibility just long enough to chain a shadow tag across Sasuke's legs. Caught. But then he saw it. Not Sasuke's body. Sasuke's world. The shadow under Sasuke didn't behave like shadow. It pulsed with lightning and grief and something older. It rejected him. Ishikawa screamed. He's not following the rules. His words were eaten by wind. Sasuke finally moved. One step, and the world changed. The terrain folded. Not visually. Not physically. Causally. Everything that had happened 5 seconds ago shifted. Replayed. Reversed. Reasserted. Gari hit the ground again. This time missing 2 fingers. Kuratsuchi found herself kneeling. No idea how her knees had hit the dirt. Akatsuchi blinked, and the sky was upside down. Ishikawa simply vanished. No explosion. No scream. Just absence. And in the center of it, Sasuke exhaled. It was like the battlefield was paper, and Sasuke was the editor, not rewriting the story, just choosing which parts to leave in. His world pressed outward. The sky groaned. A low system hum began. Narrative instability detected. Champion Uchiha. Sasuke is exerting unrecognized worldview. Sasuke drew a short blade. It wasn't glowing. It wasn't enhanced. It was just real. I'm not a god. I'm not a hero. He stepped forward, blade carving sparks into fractured dirt. I'm not even a shinobi anymore. I'm a consequence. Gari charged again. Desperate, he screamed. He activated every seal in his body. But before he reached Sasuke, the battlefield bent in a direction that shouldn't exist. Sasuke appeared behind him, blade unsheathed, blood silent. Gari fell. Sasuke didn't look back. Kuratsuchi's voice cracked through the calm lake. Desperate. This isn't a person. He's a threat gutter. He's rewriting. He's imposing. But the system didn't care. The system didn't protect from truths it had no way to understand. Akatsuchi made one final move. He rose. Roared. You can't take all of us. Sasuke stopped walking. He turned. Eye glowing. Voice still low. Then send more. The rest of IWA didn't come. Not that day. Because 4 had gone in. And none came back. The wind returned an hour later. But it moved around the spot where Sasuke had walked. Because it remembered. Even if the gods tried not to. Far from the crackling distortion Sasuke had left behind, a very different kind of battle was unfolding. No divine pressure bent the terrain. No time rewrote itself. No shadows dissolved like paper. Here, the rules still applied. And Team Ga was bleeding for every inch of ground they held. They had run into the first enemy unit 15 minutes after splitting off. A squad of 4 from Suna. Not just fodder. Bakura, who moved like flame bottled in flesh. Baki, lean and sharp and always one command ahead. Temari, her fan unreadable, her chakra swirling in unnatural patterns. And Chio, alive again. Rebuilt with forbidden strings, moving not like a puppet master, but like a prophecy still looking for its ending. The 3 of them. Niji, Tenten, Lee, stood against them, and it already wasn't going well. The opening salvo had been devastating. Tenten barely managed to block Bakura's first assault. A searing, flame-threaded kick that would have incinerated her entire scroll belt. Lee had clashed with Baki and Temari at once, using gates just to stay in the fight, not even gain ground. Niji was fending off Chio's puppet chain, trying to track too many moving chakra points at once. They weren't losing, but they sure as hell weren't winning. Tenten skidded backward, her boots carving trenches into blackened soil. Alright, new plan. Avoid Bakura. Don't let Temari build up momentum. And if that old hag strings one more chakra seal to my spine, I'm going to burn this forest down. Niji replied through grit teeth, his Byakugan spinning. Temari's wind is infused with divine rotation. It's being redirected mid-flight. There's no predictable vector. Lee ducked a sand-wrapped kunai, twisted into a handstand mid-air, and kicked off the bark of a burning tree. We must split them up. They're stronger together. Let's give them isolation. They moved like they had trained for this their entire lives. Because they had. Niji surged forward. His strikes weren't elegant. They were precise. Targeted. He didn't aim for Chiyo's core. He aimed for her memory threads, the glowing lines of forgotten lives that held her together. Chiyo clicked her tongue. You think I haven't fought Hugo before? She pulled one thread. A puppet detonated between them. Niji flew back. Shoulder scorched. But he landed. Spun. And waited. Tenten launched herself over the battlefield, tossing down 6 scrolls mid-air. Formation Delta. Lee caught the cue immediately. He kicked a falling scroll. Activating a trap Tenten had woven hours ago. The ground beneath Bakura shattered, runes glowing. Fire swallowed her in a cylinder of reverse breathing compression. She didn't scream. She laughed. I like this one. She kicked out of the seal mid-activation. Burning through it. Tenten blinked. Well, that didn't work. Lee landed beside her, bruised, bleeding, smiling. Try again. Niji and Chiyo were locked in a death waltz. Her puppets danced like memories with claws. Niji dodged. Struck. Dodged again. She's not attacking to kill, he muttered. She's watching. Learning. She's recording our movements. Tintin whispered into her comm seal, then let's give her the wrong ones. Lee's voice echoed back. Understood. The three of them moved again. This time, out of sync on purpose. Lee stumbled mid-step, throwing off Baki's rhythm. Niji delayed his rotation just long enough for Chiyo to strike first, only to reverse it, catching her puppet from behind. Tintin drew two fake scrolls, flaring chakra trails meant to mimic sealing techniques she hadn't mastered. The enemy adjusted. And in adjusting, they faltered. Temari finally spoke. Something's wrong. Pakura answered with another burning leap. They're tricking us. Baki narrowed his eyes. No, they're getting desperate. Which means we're close. He moved to break formation, to finish it. And that's when Lee opened the fifth gate. The forest bent. But not like with Sasuke. No rewrites. No narrative distortion. Just raw, earned force. His skin flushed. His muscles screamed. His voice cracked as he shouted for Konoha. For the people who believe in me. For him. He launched into the fray. Tintin dropped a chain bomb behind him. Niji followed from above, falling like a blade of wind. It was coordinated chaos. A blitz with no room for error. And for one single moment, they had the upper hand. But then, Chiyo snapped her wrist, and the puppets collapsed into each other. They fused. Baki struck Lee mid-air, cracking bone. Temari released a fan swing that shattered Tintin's defensive scrolls. Pakura slammed a palm into Niji's chest and burned memory. Not chakra. They hit the ground. Hard. Alive. But barely. Lee groaned, pushing himself up with shaking arms. Again. Niji coughed. Blood. We can't win like this. Tintin wiped her eyes. Then we don't win. We survive. Until someone does. Above them, the system pulsed. Konoha combatants' critical condition detected. Suggestion retreat or call support. They ignored it. Because there was no one coming. Sasuke fought his battles alone. Naruto was gone. This was their war. And they would fight it the way they always had. Together. Lee wasn't moving. Niji was barely breathing. Tintin stood between them, in the end. Pakura's fire circled her ankles like wolves deciding how to tear her down. Temari's fan was raised, ready to split the air. Chiyo's puppet, a godless construct of history rewritten, danced with a dozen blades glowing red. And Baki, he had begun walking forward, one step at a time. No rush, no mercy. You have nothing left. Konoha's hope ends here. Tintin dropped the last scroll. It unspooled on its own, not because she activated it, but because the world recognized what she was about to do. The sky split, not metaphorically. A crack appeared above her, jagged and wide. Like the first line of a broken story. The scroll did not glow. The world around it dimmed. Color faded. Sound dulled. Time slowed. And above her head, a spiral of gold began to form. She spoke. Her voice was not Tintin's. It was something older, wrapped in her lungs, borrowed from a dream no one dared write down. In the beginning, heaven and earth were one. Order was unformed. Chaos reigned. The gods did not yet divide the sky from the soil. The wind stopped. Temari's fan stopped. Flame froze in place. Even gravity forgot how to move forward. And then came the sword of rupture. The weapon not forged in fire, but in principle. The wound from which creation itself split. I do not wield it. I remember it. I unseal it. She raised her hand, and the spiral in the air compressed. The world screamed. The ground beneath her warped into glyphs no mortal had drawn. Celestial gears spun above. Not chakra, not jutsu, but the bones of the system itself groaning in protest. Pakura stumbled back. That's... Chiyo gasped. It can't be. Tintin's voice thundered, behold the sword that ended the first unity. The final authority. The betrayal of nothingness that gave birth to possibility. She pointed the unsealed scroll forward. And the system said, Enuma Elish sword of rupture, star of origin, a line of gold carved through reality. Not as light. As a fracture. The air didn't explode. It peeled. Like the world was just a skin stretched over something real beneath. And that real thing? It hated what was happening. A beam surged from the spiral above her. Not fire. Not plasma. Not energy. A concept. Pakura disintegrated instantly. No fire. No sound. Just rejection. Temari's fan reversed itself. The metal bent backward. Her chakra bled out of her body in silence. Chiyo's puppet crumbled into sand. And even the idea of its blades vanished. Baki tried to move. He didn't. Because time around him had ceased to exist. He screamed without breath. And the beam reached him. Everything in its path was undone. Not killed. Not destroyed. Erased. Like none of them had ever stepped foot on this battlefield. The earth tore open behind them. Into a canyon of molten time, devouring the trees, the sky, the stones, the records. The scroll burst into flame, eating itself in reverse. Tintin dropped to one knee. Lee saw nothing. Only light. Niji couldn't breathe. But felt the pressure leave. When it cleared. There was no crater. There was absence. Just a line in the earth. A perfect, smooth wound. Stretching to the horizon. And in the middle of it all, Tintin was breathing hard. Alive. Barely. Her skin cracked. Blood at her lips. But her hands didn't shake. Lee groaned from behind. WH. What was that? Niji tried to sit up. Failed. Did you just rewrite? Reality? Tintin stood, wiped her chin. Not quite. She looked at the scroll burning to ash at her feet. I just reminded the world where its first scar came from. Far above, beyond the reach of mortals. A few gods stood, watching, silent, and afraid. The sky did not crack. It unfolded. A ripple moved across the concord like a breath taken by something too large to ever exhale. And then, system notice scenario 40, balance deviation detected. Leaf Village combat performance exceeds tolerated parameters. Adjustment required. Solution: a champion must be chosen. Silence fell across all 5 sectors. Even the gods did not speak. Not yet. Scenario rule insertion: divine interference authorized. Condition 1: Kanoa champion must die. Selecting randomized from active combatants. Guy felt it before the name appeared. Like his soul had already braced for it. His knees hit the ground before the system finished. And then. Selected Rock Lee. Transposition initiated. Lightning cracked the sector open. But not from chakra. From the system itself. Lee vanished in an instant. One breath, he stood. Bruised, tired, triumphant. The next, he was gone. Guy rose so fast the ground cracked under his feet. No. No, no, no. No. He reached out. There was nothing to reach for. His chakra lashed out wildly. He burned a tree down trying to follow the trail. There wasn't one. Not a seal. Not a summoning. Not a space-time mark. Just absence. Secondary system announcement to restore equilibrium. All villages may now engage the selected champion without limit. New rule: no interference permitted. Location hidden. Condition 1 versus all. And from above, in the system that watched. The gods spoke. Amaterasu unacceptable. The leaf has unbalanced the narrative. Susanoo, the blade cuts too deeply. The Uchiha rewrites what should be witnessed. Omoi Kane, and now a mortal wields a sword from before the first truth? Takamikazuchi, this is no longer a scenario. It is a slaughter. Tsukuyami, then balance it. Hachiman cut something precious from the narrative. Inari, make them feel loss. Guy wasn't listening. He had fallen to his knees again. His hands dug into the ash like he could pull Lee back from wherever they took him. He's a child. He's just a boy. The sector's sky shimmered. A screen opened above. Not a system window. A punishment display. It showed Lee, standing alone, in a gray wasteland made of ruined terrain. Around him, 28 enemy champions. Multiple from each village. Some he had fought before. Some who had watched from afar. Some who had been waiting for a chance to break the Leaf's core. Lee said nothing. He just took off his ankle weights. And smiled. Guy screamed. Let me go to him. Please. I beg you. He activated every gate. First. Second. Third. He opened the 5th while screaming into the air. I'll trade. Do you hear me? I'll trade my life for his. The system pulsed red. Interference prohibited. Guy collapsed. His knees hit stone. His fist broke the earth beneath him. But it didn't matter. The battlefield had become a cage. And his student had been thrown into it like a lamb before God's craving equilibrium. The image of Lee on the screen remained. Still smiling. Still standing. Hands trembling. But feet planted. One of the Kumo champions stepped forward. Toroi, magnetic seal chakra pulsing. You shouldn't have come alone. Lee cracked his neck. I didn't choose to. But I won't die like I was dragged here. Guy could barely speak now. His voice was raw. Wrecked. Broken. Don't you die on me, Lee. He whispered it again. Don't you dare. His hand clenched into a fist, soaked in blood from pounding the ground. You're my proudest moment. Niji arrived too late. Tintin stumbled behind him. They both saw the screen. Both saw Guy. Both knew what was happening. Niji fell to one knee. No. Tintin didn't cry, but her scrolls began to burn. The screen pulsed again. Lee took his stance. He had nothing left. No support. No jounin. No gods. Just one mantra: youth is not about how long you live. It's about how brightly you burn while you're here. And then he ran. The world gave him no path. So he carved his own. 28 champions. A coalition of every village. Even the gods whispered he cannot win. But Rock Lee did not look afraid. He stood barefoot on a battlefield of ruin. Fists wrapped in cloth burned to ash. Chakra cracked his skin like lightning veins. And still, he smiled. I was never supposed to be here. His voice trembled, but not with fear. With purpose. I had no bloodline. No hidden potential. No gods whispering my name. He raised a broken fist. All I had was him. His eyes lifted, like he could see through the screen, through the system, through the gods, to Guy-sensei. Sobbing somewhere he could not reach. You found me, a boy with no future, and you gave me one. You made me believe I could still burn. His enemies advanced. He didn't flinch. To me, youth has never been about age, or strength, or how long I can survive. He stepped forward, one foot, then the other, bones grinding, lungs begging. Youth is getting up every time I'm knocked down. It's choosing to try. Even when the gods say no. The first wave struck. Darui's lightning lashed toward his chest. Lee ducked. Too fast. And countered with a spin kick that cracked the man's jaw. Another attacked from behind. Tamari recovered. Lee turned, caught the swing, and shattered her fan with a single blow. Each movement hurt. Each breath tasted like fire. They told me I couldn't be a shinobi. They told me hard work would never match talent. His hands bled, flesh torn to the bone. But Guy-sensei said effort. He ducked under a spear. Is a kind of genius. He swept the attacker's legs, dodged the blade from the side. So I trained. A punch connected to his shoulder. He spun with it, flipped, and countered midair. I trained until I couldn't stand. Another blow hit his spine. He screamed, but turned it into momentum. I trained until my tears carved mountains. 24 remained. He couldn't feel his left side, but he was still moving, still burning. I don't need to win. I just want to be remembered. He punched through a wall of sand. Not as a god. He broke a chakra chain in half with his elbow. Not as a legend. He knocked a Jounin from Kiri unconscious with a rising knee. But as a genius of hard work. The sky dimmed. Something cracked. Not in the arena. Above. Far above. A ripple. A space outside space. And the fates arrived. 3 figures in cloaks of woven eternity. One held the spindle. One drew the thread. And the last, the youngest, held the blade. They watched Lee. Their voice is a chorus of ending. He burns too brightly. His thread strains the story. He is not allowed. Lee fell to one knee, blood pouring from his mouth. The next strike came. He caught it. But his spine cracked. Another from the side. His ribs shattered. He rose again. The crowd of enemies faltered, because they saw something in his eyes they couldn't destroy. Guy-sensei. He whispered, thank you. His vision blurred. For loving me. Like a son. And then, the spear struck. Right through his gut. Another pierced his shoulder. A final one. Right through the center of his chest. The screen showed it all. Guy screamed. Lee! Tinin dropped to the ground, hands over her mouth. Niji turned away. Lee dropped to his knees. Then, he was split in half. Down the center. A clean cut. The fates raised their shears. And the system whispered. Status Rock Lee, deceased. Thread severance imminent. But then, the system paused. The blade hovered. The thread flickered. But it refused. The world shuddered. Lee's body melted. Like a silhouette made of memory. Like a man held together by something no one could define. He stood. Back straight. Half gone. But burning. And then, he began to fall again. His arms trembled. His legs dissolved. His feet stopped touching the ground. Like the world remembered its rule, you're dead. Stay dead. The thread began to unravel again. The fates reached for the shears. But Lee grit his teeth. His eyes glowed. Not with chakra. Not with divinity. But with something older. A concept the system could quantify. But not control. Warning anchor integrity failing. Body dissolving. Consciousness fragmenting. Willpower level error. And then, his hand clenched. There was no flesh. Just glowing outline. But it clenched. The world blinked. He is no longer connected to a living body. Yet he remembers what it means to fight. His ribs reassembled. His spine realigned, segment by segment. His torn flesh crawled inward like rivers of light stitching across an empty frame. His soul had no container. So it made one. And then, his heart pulsed. Once. Twice. Then louder. Until the entire battlefield heard it thump, thump, thump. The fates hesitated. The youngest turned to the eldest. He doesn't want to go. The middle replied he is gone. The eldest looked down. And said nothing. Lee's mouth opened. A whisper. Burnt into time. Not yet. He forced his body back together again. Not healed. Not whole. But enough. Enough to move. Enough to fight. A message flickered. Just once. Determination exceeds system parameters. And then again. Thread reinforced. Do not forget. His hands lifted. Flames flickered from his skin. Green and gold and something that didn't belong to this reality. He stood. Fully. Not because he was alive. But because he chose to be. This is what youth means. To keep going even when the world says stop. To rebuild yourself from the ashes of your own failure. To burn so brightly the gods have to look away. The fates closed their eyes. Because none of them could cut the thread. Because he refused to die without leaving his mark. Determination. The battlefield did not breathe. It burned. Because one boy, half melted, half memory, all will, stood between the world and erasure. But it refused. That message still echoed across the scenario. Not from the gods. Not from the system. From him. From Rock Lee. His body had no right to still exist. His skin flickered like paper too close to flame. His spine glowed. Not with chakra. But with something more violent. Conviction. The kind of conviction that doesn't ascend. It anchors. To earth. To pain. To the reason you were born. His enemies watched in horror. Chojuro backed up. Pakura's reincarnated flame sputtered out. Even Darui, clutching his scorched arm, stared in silence. And Lee? He laughed. It was soft. It cracked halfway through. But it was real. You think this is pain? His voice rattled through the fractured wasteland. You think this is failure? Let me tell you something. He stepped forward. One of his legs was gone. It pulled itself together mid-step, flame-wrapped tendon stitching onto ash. I was never supposed to win. Another step. I was never the strongest. Another. I wasn't born special. I wasn't born gifted. I wasn't born for anything. He raised his arms. No, what remained of them? and fell into a stance so familiar the system itself remembered it. But I worked. Every day. Every moment. Until I collapsed. Until my blood wrote training routines into the dirt. Until I could look at a genius and say, I'm not like you, but I'll still catch up. Flames tore through his body. He didn't flinch. You think this is death? This is youth. The word struck something ancient. The fates didn't move. They watched. They listened. Because the thread still hadn't broken. Because something inside that boy had become unreadable. Guy, watching from the screen that should never have existed, dropped to his knees again. He screamed. Once. But it broke halfway through. He didn't have words. Only hands pressed against an image. As if he could pull his student through it. Tintin had stopped crying. She was whispering something now. Over and over. Niji heard it. Barely. Come on, Lee. Come on. Show them. And Lee did. He moved. Faster than before. Faster than his broken body had any right to move. He slipped past Darui, ducked under a blast from AO, spun through a trap set by Kuratsuchi. He wasn't winning. He was surviving in defiance. Each step left part of him behind. His left eye dimmed. His shoulder cracked again. But he kept talking. You call me reckless. You say hard work can't match talent. That bloodlines decide everything. That the world belongs to gods and monsters. That my thread was meant to snap. Then listen. He clenched both fists. I am not a god. I am not a monster. I am not even a hero. I'm just Rock Lee. And I never gave up. He launched forward, striking Chojuro so hard his blade shattered on impact. Two more came at him. Utakata and Suigetsu. Lee flipped, twisted midair, and screamed. His whole body ignited in green flame. Unregistered technique detected 8th gate overclock. Youth beyond reason. Warning, this will destroy the user. Override confirmed he's already dead. The flames turned gold. Then white. Then colorless. Like pure will given form. Guy sobbed. Not with regret, but with awe. You're everything I ever hoped you'd be. You're my legacy. You're my son. And Rock Lee burned brighter. Even as his leg disintegrated mid-step. Even as his voice failed and returned through sheer effort. Even as the system tried again to declare him dead. Status deceased. Thread severance pending. But it refused. Again. Lee, now half wrapped in light, half torn by reality, screamed. Not in pain, but in victory. Guy Sensei. Thank you. For believing in me. The world responded. Not with words, but with silence. A silence louder than thunder. Enemies stepped back. Only a few dared to move now. And as the gods above watched, someone whispered, what is he made of? Another answered, not chakra, not fate, just determination. There wasn't much left of him. His legs flickered like candlelight. His skin had become silhouette. His hair was ash now. Loose strands falling like petals in a war with no mercy. And still, he moved. Not with technique, not with strategy, but with belief. He burned through Darui's lightning style with his fist alone. Tore through Suigetsu's liquefied body until water turned to steam around him. Crushed the ground with a kick that shattered 3 chakra shields. He was moving beyond jutsu now. His fists weren't weapons. They were statements. You think youth dies when your body breaks? He ducked under a scythe. His ribs snapped inward. He didn't stop. You think pain means I'm done? A kunai struck his back. It went through. He spun with it. Used the motion. And slammed his burning elbow into the face of the IWA ninja that threw it. He was a wreck. A soul sewn into the idea of what a shinobi should have never been. And still, he was glorious. I don't need power. I don't need bloodlines. I don't need a god behind me. He raised a hand. The flames on his body turned blue-white. I had my dream, and I never gave up on it. I made it real. And in the command center, Guy fell silent. Not because he didn't want to shout, but because his throat was already torn open from screaming. Because if he spoke now, he'd break again. So he watched. As a student, his boy, his Lee, became light. The last enemies rushed him. Too many. Too coordinated. He couldn't dodge anymore. He didn't want to. One by one. He took them with him. He hit Baki so hard the man's knees shattered. He dodged a sand coffin from Gaara and sent a shockwave through the desert itself. He slammed into Kuratsuchi with a leaping elbow that cracked space. He crushed Utakata's chakra bubble before it detonated. His arms were gone. They'd faded from the heat of his own conviction. His legs. One gave out. He dropped to one knee. Still smiling. He couldn't see anymore. But he could feel it. His pulse. Still there. A rhythm. He whispered. Still alive. Still burning. Still. And then, he took one last breath. And leapt. Straight into the center of the remaining enemies. They swarmed him. Too many. Too fast. The system called it. Fatal damage threshold met. Decomposition accelerated. Thread severance processing. His body split again. No light this time. Just silence. Guy whispered no. Tintin looked away. Niji stood motionless. The screen above them froze. Lee's final pose. Mid-air. Half faded. One hand open. One eye shut. Smiling. Status Rock Lee, terminated. But it refused. The message flickered. Once. Then went dark. Lee didn't regenerate this time. He didn't stand. He didn't glow. He just melted. Not like water. Not like fire. like a soul dissolving into a world that never deserved him. Guy finally spoke. His voice cracked like stone breaking. He did it. He proved them wrong. My boy. He lowered his head. His fists clenched so tight they bled. My boy was the greatest shinobi this world has ever seen, and they'll never forget him. And somewhere far away, in a cave where time had stopped, Naruto's Saturday eyes closed, breath held, and a single tear slipped from his cheek. Not because someone told him, but because a piece of his world just went silent, and he felt it. The battlefield was quiet. Not silent, not grieving, just quiet. Like the world had taken a step back and refused to move forward without first acknowledging what had just happened. A boy with no bloodline, a boy with no powerful sponsor, a boy who was chosen to die, had made the gods look away. No system message followed, no reward screen, no victory prompt, just scenario deviation locked. Eidetic trace created. Fable the fire that never gave out, myth tier, registered, and then the system said something it had never said before. This fable will be remembered. Even if you were not. The declaration echoed across every sector. Soon as fighters looked to Gaara. Gaara looked at the ground. He said nothing for a long time. Then he was supposed to be weak. They called him useless. He closed his eyes. He was stronger than any of us. And Kiri, Mangetsu, half-healed from his last exchange, leaned on his brother. What do we even do against that? Suigetsu didn't answer. He just muttered that wasn't a boy. That was a flame. And IWA, Inoki stood, his back straighter than it had been in years. I've seen many fools throw their lives away. But that wasn't foolishness. He stared up at the flickering screen. Still frozen on Lee's final leap. That was clarity. And guts. From Kumo, Samui whispered he really was. Omoi nodded. A genius of hard work. Even the rakeage. Who'd once scoffed at anyone without overwhelming power. Crossed his arms. That boy. He fought harder than the gods. Minato stood at the edge of the leaf sector. His hands at his sides. His eyes locked on the screen. He reminded me of. He didn't finish the sentence. Kushina did. Of our boy. Guy still hadn't moved. His knees were bleeding now. So were his palms. So was his throat. But he hadn't spoken again since the final moment. Because he didn't need to. Because he felt it. Lee's presence now burned into the system itself. Not as a hero. Not as a god. As a reminder. New fable activated. Myth tier. The fire that never gave out. A fable not born of power. A fable not sponsored by god nor demon. A fable born from flame, stubbornness, and love. It cannot be inherited. It cannot be sold. It will not be told by those who win. It will be remembered by those who fall. In the leaf section, Miji whispered Lee. You made them all look up to you. Tintin wiped her eyes. You're more than a legend. You're a promise. All across the sectors, people stood. Enemies. Allies. Spectators. Summoned gods. Even a few gods seated in their own myth thrones paused. Not to mourn, but to watch. Because some stories don't need permission. Some stories claim the world just by existing. In the highest tier of divine spectation, a god leaned forward. Amaterasu. The morning matriarch of Black Flame. She closed her fan slowly and spoke aloud to no one. A mortal flame. With no end? Tsukuyami, beside her, answered no, not flame. Youth. And in a dark corner of the broken sky, Lee's sponsor. Unseen, unwitnessed. Smiled. That one. He didn't need my power. He already had enough. The name Rock Lee echoed in the system once more. Not as a combatant. Not as a casualty. But as a myth. Fable permanently etched the fire that never gave out, deep below the surface of the world, far from screaming crowds and divine judgment. Naruto Uzumaki sat alone, meditating inside a cavern the size of a solar system. Galaxies rotated silently in the void above him. Projections of constellations lost in time, of timelines that never happened, of realities he was never born into. And he sat beneath them, still, breathing, listening. You still believe you can find it? The voice came from across the stone. It sounded like him, but colder, older, a version of himself erased long ago. Naruto didn't answer. He pressed his palms together, and a piece of himself crumbled, literally. His right arm detached into dust, fell through the floor of space, and didn't return. Erasure confirmed ego construct 47 deleted. He opened his eyes. Red. Not blood red. Just tired. You think you're getting stronger, the voice mocked. But you're just erasing everything you were. Naruto stood, not because he had strength, but because he was still here. He walked to the edge of the void. Another memory rose up from the stone. A house. A woman with red hair. A man with yellow eyes. He stood in the hallway, 5 years old, hearing them scream at each other. A bottle shattered. He stepped into the room, and the man turned on him. The woman begged. And Naruto. Stop. He spoke the word not to the memory, but to himself. That wasn't real. That was one of the forgotten timelines. He's dead. And so is that version of me. The stone cracked beneath his feet. His shadow grew long behind him, stretching into a shape with too many tails and no name. If you erase enough, the voice whispered, there won't be anything left. Naruto stared at the memory again, and burned it. It didn't fade. It screamed. Memory fragment 390 erased. Echo persistence failed. Emotional residue lingering. He clutched his head. His knees buckled. But he didn't scream. He let it hurt. He let it eat him. And then, he got back up. I don't want to be stronger. His voice was quiet now. I want to be real. The stone above him shifted. Another memory fell like dust. This time, a boy in orange, crying on a swing, while the world walked past. Don't erase that one, the voice said. That one made you. Naruto didn't. He sat beneath it, watched it, let himself feel it, and said that boy still deserves to come with me. Then he stood again, and walked deeper into the cavern. The systems behind him whispered, fragment unification in progress. Error subject cannot be defined by system parameters. Classification pending. Awaiting reconstruction, he didn't know how much of himself was left, but he knew what had to go. Keep watching me, he whispered to no one, because I'm not done yet. He had been meditating for days, weeks, or maybe time had stopped measuring him. His breath came like wine through a broken gate. Shallow, steady, not because he had mastered stillness, but because he had buried the version of himself that needed noise. He had erased his name. He had erased his smile. He had erased the boy who begged to be seen. And still, he hadn't found the end. Then, the void beneath his feet shifted. Not collapsed. Not opened. Just turned. Like a wheel long buried beneath the world's memory had started moving again. And Naruto, who had become so used to falling in silence, heard something. A voice. You're deeper than most ever come. He opened his eyes. The stars above were gone. The planets had crumbled. Even the endless cavern of lost timelines had vanished. Now he stood on a plain made of nothing. No light. No sky. Only one thing remained: a figure. Old. Tall. Barefoot. Standing on a floor that didn't exist. White robes layered over shoulders like dust. Eyes like twin moons that had watched the world in more than once. Naruto knew him, but not in the way people know faces. He knew him like a scar. Like a story told too often to be real, but too true to forget. Hagoromo, the sage of six paths, nodded. In some timelines, he said, you call me that. In others, you forget me completely. That's not your fault. He looked down at Naruto, and there was no judgment in his gaze. Only gravity. You came here chasing silence. But silence is not an answer. Naruto didn't speak. He didn't know how to. His mouth was full of ashes he hadn't swallowed yet. Hagoromo stepped closer. You erased yourself to find the truth. But you're still here. Which means you've only erased the shadows, not the fire that cast them. Naruto frowned. You know about the loops? The timelines? All of them? Hagoromo looked up. There was no sky. Only space. Endless, heavy space. This place is older than the loops. Deeper than the system. More hidden than the final wall. He smiled, faintly. This is the only place left where gods do not watch. And where memories are too sacred to be corrupted. Naruto shook his head. Then why bring me here? I'm not a god. I'm not a sage. I'm not even sure I'm real anymore. His voice cracked. I just wanted to stop hurting people. I just wanted to understand why I keep coming back. Hagoromo sat, cross-legged on the void. He did not float. He did not hover. He rested, and gestured for Naruto to do the same. Then stop trying to erase the pain, and ask yourself, why does it remember you? Naruto's Saturday, his knees trembled, but the ground did not shift. For the first time in this long descent, he didn't feel like he was falling. Hagoromo looked through him, and spoke again. You were trying to become something new, but even you do not understand what the old version of you wanted. You've walked through death. You've been forgotten by timelines. You've spoken to things that were never meant to hear your voice. His voice grew heavier, not louder, just truer. But you have not once asked, what caused the loop? Naruto's breath caught. His lips parted, and no sound came out. Because he didn't know. Because no one had ever told him. Not even the fox. You've been fighting symptoms, Hagoromo said. Scraping the mirror hoping it will change your reflection. That's not your fault. It is the cost of being born into a broken story. He leaned in now. Not threatening, but close enough that his next words felt like scripture. You cannot ascend unless you understand. And understanding requires you to remember what everyone else agreed to forget. The void around them pulsed. And for a moment, Naruto saw a door. Just an outline. No handle. No key. Just presence. Hagoromo said when you were ready to open that, you will begin. Not before. And not again. Naruto stared at the outline. And didn't move. Hagoromo looked at him one last time. There are things I cannot say. But there is one thing I will tell you. This loop was not started by the world. It was started by a choice. Then he faded. Not with drama. Not with light. He simply became the silence again. And Naruto was left alone, staring at a door he wasn't ready to open, inside a world that had no time. He bowed his head. Not in defeat, but in thought. A choice. Whose? Mine? No answer. Only the soft flicker of cosmic static. And the feeling that, for the first time, he was close to something real. Naruto returned to meditation like a man diving into cold water. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. The moment Hagoromo's voice faded from the void, he knew he couldn't climb back to the surface. Not yet. Not until he opened that door. Not until he understood the thing he couldn't name. He Saturday breathed. Let everything go again. The name. The village. The pain. Even the boy who died alone on a swing set. Everything dissolved. Until only the pulse remained. Not his heartbeat, but something older, deeper, like the rhythm of a clock too ancient to tick, buried in the bones of reality. He opened his eyes. This wasn't the same place he'd been before. It wasn't the endless black void Hagoromo had appeared in. No. This was worse. The space around him bled time. Not in metaphor. In substance. The air shimmered like water, but every ripple warped his perception. He blinked. And his body rewound, then snapped forward again. A stone crumbled in reverse. Then aged to dust. Then grew back into a pillar. The floor was made of gears. Not literal ones. Conceptual ones. The idea of inevitability made form. Clocks too large to see turning. Time too slow to measure. And high above, a sky made of hourglass sand, suspended midfall. Everything moved. Everything decayed. Everything returned. And then, he was there. Not appearing. Being. As if he had always been standing behind Naruto, but Naruto was only now allowed to realize it. He didn't walk. He didn't float. He hung. Not by force, but by presence. Tall. Impossibly so. But not through height. Through weight. Like the spine of time had stood upright just for this meeting. He wore robes woven from collapsed seconds. His skin was etched in hour lines. His eyes were clock faces, each one spinning backward. Inside the left, Naruto saw his birth. Inside the right, he saw his end. It's not every day you meet your grandson. Naruto didn't answer. Not out of defiance, but because the words made the world tilt. What? What did you just say? The figure smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly. Just knowingly. Like someone who had already seen Naruto react 10,000 ways. And had loved only this one. You heard me. Kronos doesn't repeat himself. Kronos. The name hit Naruto like a falling pendulum. The way Hagoromo's name did. The way the gods' titles did. Except he didn't feel divine. He felt foundational. You're my. Naruto's throat closed. How? Kronos waved a hand. Time folded. An image appeared in the air. A single thread made of gold and black fire, twined together. Some truths are best devoured slowly. Like regret. Naruto stepped back. The floor shifted with him. It didn't move. It obeyed. Kronos crouched. Still impossibly tall, even on one knee, and stared directly into Naruto's eyes. You came here seeking the loop source. But that isn't the question you should have asked. He leaned closer. You should have asked. What was trying to get out? Naruto's stomach turned. His vision shook. What? What is trying to get out? Kronos' voice was quiet now, but each word struck with weight. The thing you know as the Black King. The world slowed. The gears above trembled. The hourglass sky cracked. Just from naming it. Naruto whispered. I've seen it. When I used Foxtail. When I broke the sky. His voice broke. It shouldn't exist. Kronos chuckled. A sound like watches rusting. It doesn't. And that's the problem. He stood. The void obeyed him again. Time ticked once. Then bled backward. Then started again. The Black King is not a god. It is not a demon. It is not even a concept. It is the failure of all three. Naruto clutched his chest. Then what is it? Kronos didn't answer. Not directly. He reached into his own shadow. And pulled out. A mask. Black. Smooth. Cracked. And behind the cracks. Screaming light. This is a face. One of the many broken aspects of the Black King scattered across the spiral of timelines. He held it out. Naruto didn't take it. He couldn't. Just looking at it made his fingers ache. Sometimes these faces forget what they are. Sometimes they become people. And sometimes. He paused. They remember. Naruto felt sick. So the faces of the Black King are. Kronos nodded. Players. Gods. Creatures. People. He looked Naruto straight through. You've already met several. Naruto staggered. Then why tell me this now? Why here? Kronos didn't smile this time. Because you were finally quiet enough to listen. He stepped back. The mask floated in the air. It didn't move. It waited. Kronos began to fade. Not into light, but into seconds. His robes dissolved into countdowns. His hands became dust that never fell. You asked what caused the loops. But now you know. It was never about the loops. It was about what was trying to survive through them. When you're ready, we'll talk again. But be warned, boy. The more you unmake yourself, the closer you come to remembering what you were before you were you. He vanished. Time snapped backward. Then forward. Then held. And Naruto stood alone again. Breathing hard. Eyes wide. Staring at the mask. Staring at the Black King's smile. Reflected in the cracks. The world had paused. But the scenario demanded the tournament continue. Rock Lee was gone. And the system did not grieve. It ticked. Like a noose tightening. Combatants remaining Team Konoha. 8. Opposition 14. Unified combat override enabled. Balance unstable commemorative buffs locked. This phase will continue until resolution. Across the fractured battlefield, every village left standing had formed a circle of desperation. Suna, IWA, Humo, Kiri, old rivalries forgotten. Now united by one fear the leaf hadn't broken. They had killed the Taijutsu prodigy. Burned him until nothing remained. Watch him refuse death twice. And still, the ones he left behind didn't fall. They stood, taller than before. On Konoha's side, They stood like 8 eulogies turned into blades. Minato and Kushina, Kakashi and Guy, Tenten, scrolls trembling, Niji, Hinata, Sasuke, and no one moved. Not yet, because the wind was still carrying the sound of Lee's final breath. Then it began. The enemies surged first. Raza launched gold. Darui flared lightning. Tamari's fan screamed. Ao, Mangitsu, Chojuro, Pakura, Yagura, Suigetsu, and at the front of it all, the Raikage. Fury made flesh. And yet, they didn't reach Konoha's front, because someone stepped forward, someone who had watched Lee melt from the sidelines, and never cried, not once, because he had been waiting for this moment. Niji Hyuga. His robe fluttered, not from wind, from resolve. His hair glistened with sweat, not fear. His eyes, still Byakugan, gleamed with a clarity even fate could not read. They thought Lee was the only one, he said softly. The only one of us who believed in effort. They forgot I was watching the whole time. He turned to Hinata and Sasuke. Let me go first. He ran, not with flash, not with speed, with rhythm. Each step a prayer, each breath a vow. He moved like a man trying to outrun the version of himself that never stood up. And when he met the Raikage, the mountain moved. They collided. The Raikage, a wall of iron flesh. Niji, a storm of points that fate had overlooked. 1 palm, 2, 5, 8. The Raikage struck. Niji dodged. Not because he was faster, because he knew the rhythm, because he had watched the world dance around him and waited for the step that faltered. 1 jab, to the shoulder, then the ribs, then the side of the neck. The Raikage grunted, stumbled, turned to elbow him. Too late. Niji stepped through it. A spin, a palm to the heart. Crack. Chakra conduction impaired, 57%. Vital point disruption confirmed. Kakashi blinked. He's not just playing defense anymore. Guy whispered he's dancing with ghosts. The Raikage backed up, and Niji didn't follow. Not yet. He bowed his head. This is for the one who proved me wrong. Then he charged again. Meanwhile, Hinata moved. She had said nothing. Even as Lee died. Even as the ground opened. Even when the system tried to cut his thread. She had been watching. Feeling. Waiting. No? She let go. The ground beneath her shook. Would burst from her feet. Not vines. Roots shaped like memory. Old. Ancient. Alive. Tenten backed up instinctively. Even she didn't know what was about to happen. Hinata raised one hand. And her chakra, normally soft, quiet, roared. It pulsed green, then white, then every color memory could render. She didn't activate a jutsu. She let the cycle flow. Azura memory sync, initiated. Avatar state access granted. All past lives acknowledged. Warning, the system cannot track this form. Her eyes didn't glow. They opened, wider than the system had ever rendered her. Eyes that did not belong to this era. And the world responded. Wind rushed to her. Soil cracked. A mountain bent in the distance. The Avatar state had awakened, and she floated forward, as if gravity was too new to remember her. Yagura screamed, launched water bullets. She waved her hand. The ocean evaporated. Pakura burst flame. She raised her palm. It turned to ash before it touched her skin. Hinata wasn't casting. She was channeling the memories of herself. Azura, healer, warrior, lover, storm. Every life she had lived was now her shadow. And she whispered, I remember every one of you. The trees behind her wept sap. She stepped into them. They moved with her. Then she dropped. Just once. Onto Yagura. Impact. Silence. Collapse. Tenten covered her flank. She didn't yell. Didn't boast. She reached into the scroll. Drew the spear. Gibalg. The spear that kills before it's thrown. She spun it once. It hummed. She looked at Suigetsu. He grinned. She threw it. He blinked. It struck his past. And he dropped. No scream. Just blood. Back at the front. Sasuke moved. Not like a fighter. Like a constant. Lightning surged through his skin. Not over it. Through it. Reijinchu. Susanoo. Uchiha. Legend. He didn't announce himself. He simply rewrote the battlefield. Where he stepped. Ground cracked. Where he looked. People trembled. His hand. Now a blade. Not chakra. Intention. He walked forward. Through Darui's bolts. Through Chojuro's strikes. Each one faded before him like excuses. And he said, this is what you wanted. A contest of strength. He raised a finger. Thunder cracked behind him. Let's finish it. Somewhere far above the battlefield. Above the shattered skies, above the sealed domains, above the hands of the clock that had long since stopped counting human sacrifice. The gods watched. Not through screens. Not through divinations. But through something far more ancient than narrative itself. It twisted for them. Bent toward their thrones. Reflected every motion, every choice, every burst of rage or sorrow. And yet it shook. For the first time in thousands of cycles, the narrative trembled in the hands of its overseers. The gods weren't speaking. They were listening. Because something had changed. And they all felt it. In the myth-tier assembly hall of the Shinto pantheon, a long table stretched across stars made of memory and ash. 9 seats were occupied. 2 remained empty. Amaterasu, the morning matriarch of Black Flame, held a folding fan, but had not moved it in several minutes. She watched as Hinata Senju descended in the avatar state, wreathed in memory and root. Her fan cracked, not from anger, but from recognition. The cycle has failed her too many times, she whispered. And still, she gives the world grace. Beside her, Tsukuyami, the still eye of splintered light, did not blink. His gaze focused on Niji. Now pressing the Reikage back step by step, not through strength, but through inevitability. The dead boy lives through him, Tsukuyami murmured. A palm, not to destroy, but to say, I will not forget you. Opposite them sat Susanoo. The tide that drowns the moonlight. He had no words, but his hand tightened on the edge of the table. Where blood once flowed, now only storm pressure radiated from his fingertips. Watching Sasuke walk like a thought made into thunder. Further down, Benzaiten leaned forward, her 10,000 phantom hands painting the scene in midair. She could not stop. Every frame of the battle was art now. He dies, and they do not fall, she said. They become what he died believing in. How rare. At the farthest end, a man with a face like no one, and everyone sat silently. Omoikane, the eye that watches itself. He smiled. I see it now. The seeds planted. The second foxtail awakens. His smile faltered. Just a flicker. This timeline is incorrect, and yet more correct than any before. In another domain. Not Japanese. Not of any pantheon men remember. In the seed of fable-class foreign divinities, a Greek goddess touched her thread. Clotho, spinner of fate. She had nearly cut Rock Lee's thread. And now she hesitated. Because she saw something worse than defiance, she saw memory. It will not die, she whispered. The fire. It will be remembered even by the threadless. Beside her, Lachesis stood from her loom. Niji Hyuga is pushing a fixed point. He was never meant to live this long. Atropos held the shears again. But they would not close. I can't sever what the system has already etched in myth. It refuses. Across the void. In a black throne veiled in fog. A being with 9 slitted eyes watched. He did not speak. Not yet. The 9-tailed apostle of the end rested his claw over his heart. He could feel Naruto. Distant. Meditating. And still. Watching. Not yet, he whispered. Don't come back yet. Let them earn the world you'll inherit. Far beyond all these. A chain-bound god, laughing from beneath a collapsed mountain of divine restrictions, chained by a will the others fear. Saryuta. The laughing storm chained beneath the mountain. His chains rattled. He laughed louder. Oh, they're doing it. They're really going to rewrite it all. Come on, burn a little brighter. And somewhere deep within the system, where only anomalies lived, a terminal blinked. Unreadable code scrolled. Then, a message. Alert cycle instability detected. Foxtail synchronization threshold rising. Warning: second synchronization event may trigger myth layer collapse. Observation suggested avatar state entity Hinata Senju. Observation suggested divergent path entity Sasuke Uchiha. Observation suggested variance core entity Niji Hyuga. Error narrative thread approaching absolute density. New title detected the inheritors of the flame that refused. The gods said nothing for a while. Because the battlefield below wasn't just a tournament. It was a rebellion. Not of mortals. Of memories. And they could do nothing now. Except watch. The gods watched. The heavens held breath. And the world? The world was still burning. It remained from Konoha. 14 had stood against them. Now, less than half of the enemy coalition remained. And yet, no one called this a massacre. Because what Konoha had left was not an army. It was a funeral pyre turned into motion. Niji was first to strike again. He was bleeding. There were burns on his chest. His legs trembled between each movement. And yet, the Reikage was worse. I was panting. Fists cracked with effort. One arm hung half-limp from the shoulder. He had faced gods. Monsters. But he had never faced a storm made of nothing but resolve. Niji circled him. The Hyuga stance long forgotten. This was not clan technique anymore. This was adaptation. He whispered to himself. Not prayer. Just Lee's name. A lunged. Faster than thought. Faster than pain. Niji stepped in. Too close. Too reckless. But it worked. A's fist blurred. And missed. Because Niji wasn't dodging anymore. He was anticipating. He's seeing the pattern. Kakashi, from the sidelines, muttered. He's not reacting to attacks. He's reacting to the intention before they form. Niji struck. Palm. Palm. Fingertip. Then he pivoted. Dropped low. Spun. Rotation. But not like Hyuga rotation. This one was off-center. Broken. It caught off guard. Chakra peeled away from the Reikage skin. His defensive layer. Shattered. Niji surged forward. 1 strike. 2. 12. 64. 128. He didn't stop. You fought my friend, Niji whispered. Now you fight the one he left behind. His palms flashed. Final strike. Straight into his chest. A shockwave echoed through the canyon. The Reikage collapsed, teeth gritted. A howl caught in his throat. He didn't fall unconscious. He submitted. Because there was no strength left to spend. Niji stood over him, bleeding from the mouth, hands shaking, and turned back toward the battlefield. Where Hinata was no longer just fighting. She was carving legends. The avatar state pulsed around her. It wasn't just with style anymore. It was memory, dream, conviction, all of it shaped into a living force. Her past lives. Senja guardians, wandering healers, dying mothers, raging sisters. Whispered through her. Pakura charged her. Blazing fist of scalding vapor. Hinata raised one hand. Pakura's flames froze. Turned to dust. Not by force. By choice. You never asked whose blood the trees were born from, Hinata said. You assumed it was peace. It was always war. She moved forward. Her feet didn't touch the earth. The roots carried her. Like the world itself didn't want her to be weighed down anymore. She stepped in front of Ao. He stabbed with the chakra blade. Hinata's hand passed through it. And through him. The system glitched for a moment. System message avatar state entities are not supported under current parameters. Error logged. Memory interference detected. Ao dropped, seizing, his mind filled with lives he had never lived. Because Hinata had shown him. They were all me, she whispered. And I remember each one of them dying. Hinata floated higher. The battlefield dipped beneath her. Tenten and Niji watched in stunned reverence. Even Kakashi whispered she's not here to win. She's here to prove something. Then, she screamed. Not pain. Not rage. A name. A promise. A boy who died alone. I remember you, Naruto Uzumaki. I remember what the world forgot. The sky cracked above her. Wooden wings unfurled from her back. But they weren't angelic. They were gnarled. Knotted. Like the arms of trees that had refused to fall during war. And at the core of her chest, a spiral glowed. A new form. Fable mutation detected, the one who holds memory. Divine recognition pending at that moment. She wasn't just Hinata. She wasn't just Senju. She wasn't even Ajura. She was the one who held grief until it became light. She dove again. Yagura tried to form a seal. Her hand snapped outward. Roots tore through the battlefield. Grabbed him. Dragged him into the dirt. And did not let go. No more forgetting, Hinata whispered. Then Sasuke moved. He had been watching. Silently. Lightning wrapped around him like breath. His feet didn't touch the ground anymore. He hovered. A storm-given reason. Eyes dark. But not cruel. Empty. In the way that only someone who had burned away all softness could become. Suigetsu swung. Sasuke caught the blade. Broke it with a glance. Suigetsu's face split open with panic. Too late. Sasuke struck his chest. Sound and flesh split. Suigetsu collapsed. Sasuke didn't speak. Then, from Iwa's side, Deara, desperate now, screamed, "You're just like him. Madara, you're his curse-made flesh." Sasuke turned his head slowly. "No, I am what he was afraid you'd become." And he raised his hand. Lightning crackled. But not a jutsu. A command. A single point of devastation descended like truth. The mountain behind Deidara collapsed. He fell to his knees. Eyes wide. Defeated without being touched. Sasuke didn't blink. Because he had already moved on. Now, only two enemies remained. Temari. And Gaara. And the battlefield knew this would be the end. But before that, the system shuddered. Not from combat. From recognition. New divine class fable registered, the one who holds memory. New myth tier fable registered, the inheritor of the storm's silence. New legendary fable registered, the gentle revolution. The fight wasn't over. But the world had already written its ending. And every god watching now realized they hadn't been watching a tournament. They had been watching the rise of legends. They stood. Hinata, Sasuke, Niji, no longer the support cast. Now the center of gravity. Across from them, two remained Temari. Eyes wide, torn between vengeance and disbelief. Gaara. Silent as always, his gourd cracked, sand flowing like blood. They had seen it all. They had seen Deidara collapse without a word. Yagura dragged into the roots of Hinata's memory. The rakeage brought low not by rage, but by Niji's quiet, precise refusal to be less than remembered. Now, they didn't attack. They hesitated. And that was already a loss. Hinata hovered. Literally. The avatar state had not subsided. Wings of wood and breath curled behind her. Not flapping, just present. Her bare feet hovered inches above ground that now bent upward to greet her. The spiral on her chest still glowed. A symbol not of chakra, but of remembrance. Of everything the world had buried and she had chosen to hold. Niji limped forward. He was bleeding from 6 points. His breathing ragged. But his stance, perfect. He did not look like someone who had survived a fight. He looked like someone still defining it. And Sasuke. He didn't move. He didn't need to. Lightning pulsed beneath his skin. Not screaming. Just breathing. The battlefield had adjusted to him now. Like reality understood, it was no longer a contest. Temari raised her fan. It was cracked. Frayed at the edges. Still deadly. But she didn't swing it. She stared at Hinata. "What are you?" she asked. Her voice was rough. Choked with disbelief. And guilt. Hinata blinked slowly. And the many memories behind her blinked with her. "A girl," she said, "who kept choosing to remember." Temari's grip on the fan faltered. But before she could drop it, Gaara stepped in front of her. Quiet. Still. Unbreakable. He looked at Hinata. Then at Sasuke. Then Niji. And his sand began to rise. But it didn't strike. It formed. A dome? No, a shell. Protective. Embracing. Like a grave shaped into a sanctuary. Temari's fan fell to the dirt. "I yield," Gaara said. It was almost a whisper. "We lost the moment we killed your friend." The system didn't blink. Didn't grant mercy. Opponent defeat confirmed. Suna sector cease combat. Final scenario phase complete. Victory Konoha, 8 survivors. Fable consolidation in progress. Title inheritance begins. The battlefield fell quiet. And for the first time since the beginning of the tournament. Konoha exhaled. Minato stepped forward. Hand on Kushina's shoulder. Kakashi leaned against Guy, whose eyes were still red from screaming Lee's name. Tintin dropped to her knees, her scrolls finally cooling in her hands. But in the center, the three remained still. Neji, Hinata, Sasuke. Neji dropped to one knee. Hinata's wings of memory slowly withdrew into her back. Sasuke allowed the lightning to fade. But only slightly. His eyes never left the horizon. Then, the world shifted. Not the wind, not the ground. The system. World-class Fable confirmed. Myth-tier consolidated Fable, the inheritors of the flame that refused. New divine entity tags granted. Hinata Senju, the one who holds memory avatar of Azura's grief. Neji, Hyuga, the gentle revolution, the genius, who chose effort. Sasuke, Uchiha, the inheritor of the storm's silence, he who imposes the next step of fate. The text did not fade. It engraved itself into the sky, as if reality itself was no longer pretending to be impartial. And then, the message every surviving village feared. Divine audience has begun watching closely. God intervention suspended until judgment. Then one final line. Alone, blinking, burning. Rock Lee's fable has been accepted by the system itself. Fable, the fire that never gave out, will never be removed. The tournament was over. But what came next had only just begun. The battlefield was still. The enemies were gone. The gods were silent. Even the system took its time to process what had just happened. All across the world, watchers stared at glowing screens and divine mirrors. They had seen it. Hinata floating like memory given breath. Neji stepping beyond destiny. Sasuke walking as a concept. And now, Team Konoha stood as the last remaining victors. 8 warriors. Bruised. Bleeding. Whole. Except. Not whole. Scenario 40 War of Dominion. Complete. Victory Konoha. Allied villages eliminated. Suna, Iwa, Kumo, Kiri. Final authority enacted. As reward, Team Konoha is granted a collective wish of will. The battlefield flickered. And then, everything shifted. No longer ruins. No longer blood-soaked dirt. Now they stood in a chamber without walls. A domain built only of possibility. Stars shimmered in every direction, each one a potential reality. The air smelled of old prayers and unopened endings. And before them, a presence stirred. The twin aspects of death. Kindred. They did not appear as a figure. They appeared as 2 lights. One, a blazing wolf. The other, a quiet lamb. Both impossibly large, yet close enough to whisper. You may speak your desire, the wolf rumbled. The world will bend, the lamb added. Once, they didn't hesitate. Not one of them. Even Sasuke, usually silent, stepped forward with the rest. And they all said it at once. Some louder, some cracking, but all together bring back Rock Lee. The chamber did not move. The stars did not flicker. Only Kindred responded. And their response was silence. For several seconds too long. Until the lamb finally whispered, we cannot. The world cracked. Minato's breath caught. Hinata gasped. Neji's face twitched, searching for something. Anything. To say. But only Guy spoke. He didn't scream at first. He just blinked. Like he hadn't heard right. Then again. Louder. What did you say? Kindred didn't answer. So Guy stepped forward. Bring him back. You said anything. We won. We gave you everything. Give him back. The wolf lowered its muzzle. Not cruel. Not apologetic. Just true. His soul has not passed into our dominion. Guy stopped breathing. We hold the threads of the dead. But his thread did not fall into the weave. It refused. The lamb's voice cracked then, as if even she, death personified, was mourning. We cannot follow him. His flame rests somewhere we cannot reach. Somewhere beyond even our hands. Guy fell to his knees. Give him back. He screamed it now. His voice broke open, shattered in his throat. You owe us. You owe him. He didn't even get to see it. He punched the ground. Once. Twice. A third time. His knuckles split. The ground bled. He deserved to win. He deserved to be remembered. He died for us. He died alone. Tintin turned away. Neji clenched his jaw. Hinata's wings folded around her like a cocoon, tears falling in silence. Even Kakashi, the man who had seen the world end more than once, covered his eyes. Guy kept screaming. Until. Enough. It wasn't Kindred who said it. It was Minato. His voice was calm. Not cruel. But each syllable felt like a door being closed. Lee won. We know that. The world knows that. And wherever he is, he'll know we carried him. He looked at Kindred. Then this wish is a grave marker. A promise. He turned to Sasuke. If it's not going to be Lee, what will it be? Sasuke didn't hesitate. He didn't ask for strength, or power, or even memory. I want the other villages back. Silence. Even Kindred paused. Neji stepped forward, blinking. You. What? Sasuke's eyes never left the stars. We didn't win if we're the only ones left. This world is already broken enough. He tilted his head. Lightning crackled along his shoulders. I don't want to be the strongest in an empty world. Bring back Suna, Kumo, Iwa, Kiri, everyone who fell. Minato smiled softly. Kushina put a hand over her heart. Kindred did not question the wish. They simply granted it. Wish of will confirmed. All nations restored to state of pre-scenario existence. Fallen warriors returned. System-aware entities retain memory of the event. The stars dimmed. The chamber shook. And the 8 warriors of the leaf watched the sky bend. The world reforge. And the stage reset for a future that no longer belonged to gods. But Rock Lee did not return. His body still gone. His soul still unreachable. But now, the world would remember him. Forever. The world was rebuilding. But Naruto was not part of it. Not yet. Deep in the mountain-sized cave of stars, where meditation was not a practice, but a ritual of unmaking, Naruto sat beneath a galaxy of crumbling suns. The air was thinner now, not oxygen. There was less of him left. And maybe that was the point. He wasn't sure how many days had passed, or years, or eternities measured only in breath and memory fragments. But when he closed his eyes again, the sand fell from the sky, and the gears turned. He had returned to the place beyond void, where the air pulsed with seconds, where the walls bled countdowns, where time was not a concept, but a creature, and in the center of it all, he was waiting. Kronos, the god of time, the fallen divinity of the eternal reset. He looked older than before, not in wrinkles, in weight. His robe of rusted hourglass chains hung heavier. His crown of unwound clock hands tilted, but his eyes, still the same clock faces, one ticking forward, the other back. He smiled, not warmly, but like someone who knew the ending of the story, and still chose to tell it anyway. You came again. Naruto didn't answer. He just nodded. Kronos stood, and as he did, the gears beneath the floor trembled. They remembered his weight, and obeyed. He gestured to a corridor of time to the left. It unfolded like a spine made of calendars. Inside, images flickered. A man in silver plate armor, a sword of light pulled from stone, a warrior on a burning horse, swinging a blade engraved with divine scripture, a king at the edge of a dying world, clutching a broken crown and a bleeding child, a monk who carved his story into the bones of a god, a thief who stole fire from a sun that never set, a boy with no name who died trying to save his village. These were all you. Kronos said it plainly, as if it were not blasphemy, but math. Naruto staggered. What? What do you mean? Kronos waved his hand again. The corridor curled into a spiral, and in its center a clock stopped. 1 second from midnight. The glass cracked. Inside, something struggled. A heartbeat that had no heart. I once wore that face, Kronos said. He pointed to the mask still floating beside the clock. The face of the Black King. The same one Naruto had seen in the prior encounter. I was one of the Black King's first reflections. But I was not content. I wanted to own time. To measure it. To master it. He turned his back. I lost control. The chamber dimmed. As if even the stars refused to light this part of the story. I devoured my sons. All of them. Naruto's breath hitched. Kronos did not flinch. They were stars once. Concepts. Lords of order. Keepers of the divine wheel. And I. He touched his own chest. Were no heartbeat. I destroyed them. To escape the fear that one of them would replace me. He walked slowly across the chamber. And the world rippled with each step. In punishment, my pantheon scattered. They call me a curse. A ruin. And I knew they were right. So I tore myself apart. He turned back to Naruto. Eyes heavy. I cast off my divinity. And left behind only 2 pieces of myself. He pointed. To the clock. And the mask. The clock. To remind me of what I tried to control. The mask. To remind me of who I used to be. I chained them both. He approached Naruto. Each word now slower. Like time itself had to crawl to carry the weight of what he was saying. It should have ended there. But one of the threads I left behind was stronger than I realized. It slipped loose. Found its way into a bloodline still connected to fate. It skipped a generation. Your father, Minato, was too bright. Too sudden. The clock couldn't catch him. But you were softened. Molded. Forgotten. Left behind. The clock found its moment. Naruto whispered. So it cursed me? Kronos closed his eyes. No, it called you. It made you the anchor. So that the world would always turn back to you. So that the cycle would never truly end. Naruto stepped back. His voice was shaking. You're saying I loop. Because of you? Kronos didn't deny it. But he didn't affirm it either. He gestured again. The corridor changed. Now it showed warriors across time. Each holding a blade. You wielded more than just pain. You became legends. To atone. He pointed. To a golden knight pulling a sword from stone. Arthur. To a paladin screaming Durendal's name as he held back an army. Roland. To a black-haired boy facing a titan with a single dagger. Achilles, born in grief. To a man who tricked the heavens and wore a crown of ashes. Sun Wukong in one reality. Prometheus in another. Kronos' voice became thin and cracked. Each time. You tried to fix it. Each time. You failed. Naruto couldn't speak. Because the weight was too much. His body trembled. His soul, already frayed, now folded inward. Then what am I now? Another attempt? Another mask? Kronos finally turned to face him fully, and for the first time, he knelt, not as a god, but as a man, a grandfather. You are the only one I could not write, because you are not an answer. You are a question. And behind him, the clock ticked once, just once, and it echoed through the entire system. The ticking stopped. Only silence remained. Kronos still knelt, but now his eyes had changed. No longer remorseful. Now they were solemn, as if something terrible had just been decided. You asked what the ninth piece is. It is not a relic, not a fruit, not even a power. He stood slowly, and as he did, the world began to peel back. The stars faded. The gears cracked. The void around them fractured like glass. It is a story. Naruto blinked. What do you mean? Kronos touched the air, and the fragments froze. Each shard showed a different version of him, a boy, devoured by a father. A king, crowned in iron chains. A god, screaming as the world turned against him. A father, cradling a dead son. A monster, eating time itself. I was once a myth, before I was a god, and that myth was sealed away. Too dangerous, too corrupted, too filled with guilt and paradox. So I sealed it where no god, no system, no reality could find it. He looked at Naruto again. His voice was a whisper now, like he was saying something that shouldn't be remembered. That myth is where the ninth piece was hidden. The stars collapsed, revealing a single road, a path made of broken constellations and melted calendars. It led downward, not into the earth, but into a forgotten story, to claim the ninth piece. Kronos said, "You must return to my beginning, the place where I was not yet a god, not yet a sinner, only a son." Naruto swallowed. And if I fail? Kronos closed his eyes. You won't die. You'll become part of the myth. A character, trapped in someone else's punishment, doomed to replay it until the stars forget your name. He stepped aside, and the road rippled beneath his feet. You will face my father. You will watch my sons die. You will kneel before a throne made of their bones, and be asked why you came. And you will be given a choice, to become me, or to kill me. Naruto didn't look away. He stared down the corridor of collapsing storylight, and nodded once. I'll go? Kronos smiled. Not proud, not sad, just relieved, like a wound that had finally found its bandage. Then enter my myth. Walk into the lie that made me a god. And if you survive, you will return not as a child of prophecy, but as the one who rewrote a sin. And then the world collapsed. The cave of stars shattered. The gears tore open. Naruto fell. Not through space, not through time, but into a story the world buried to keep reality safe. Ninth fragment accessed the original sin of Kronos. You have entered the forgotten myth. Warning: this scenario is not supported by the system. The rules here are written in blood. Qualification begins. The original sin. There was no system message this time. No notifications. Just the sound of something dripping slowly. Naruto opened his eyes, and the sky bled. He wasn't in the world anymore. He was in a memory that had never been allowed to become history. The stars above him hung still. Not frozen, but held. Like they were afraid to move. Like if they blinked, they'd remember what they had been forced to forget. Below him a path, carved from vertebrae the size of palaces. Each bone carried carvings. Names. Dates. Screams. But none of them had voices. Just marks. Like fingernails dragged across time itself. Ahead of him, a door. Made not of wood or iron or chakra, but silence. It was shut like a coffin. And something behind it whispered again. You're early, a voice said. Kronos stepped out from the nothing behind him. Not the god. Not the penitent. A man. No, a boy. 10 years old. Dressed in cloth too heavy for him. With eyes made of twilight and hands that wouldn't stop trembling. He didn't look at Naruto. He looked at the door. They only let me out sometimes. He spoke with a voice like cracked glass. When it's safe. Naruto didn't speak yet. The boy continued. He doesn't like it when I cry. He says it makes me look like a replacement. That I'm just another version of them. Naruto slowly stepped forward. Who? The boy finally turned. And smiled. But it wasn't happy. It was the smile of a child trying not to be eaten. My father. He says I have the eyes of rebellion. He says I'll do to him what he did to his father. He held up his arm. It was bruised. The kind of bruising that comes from divine hands. The kind that doesn't fade with healing. Because it wasn't meant to be hidden. The door in front of them moaned. Not opened. Just shifted. Like it heard its name. I'm not supposed to know what's on the other side, Kronos said. But I remember the bones. I remember the chewing. I remember the silence that came after each one of them stopped calling for me. He looked up. His eyes wide now. Terrified. I didn't help them. I didn't stop him. Because I thought if I stayed quiet, I'd be the one he let live. Naruto clenched his fists. The ground beneath them didn't ripple. It recoiled. Like time itself hated what it was being forced to remember. Kronos pointed to the door. Do you know what the first sin was? Naruto slowly shook his head. It wasn't eating them. It wasn't killing him. He turned again. This time his eyes sharp. Old. Like 100,000 years had burned behind them. It was the day I believed I had to become like him to survive. The door opened. Not fast. Like a jaw easing open. Beyond it, a hallway, lined with torches. But the flames were frozen mid-flicker. And the air was thick with teeth. Not sound. Teeth. like the hallway wanted to bite the memory away. Kronos walked first. Naruto followed. And each step felt heavier, like the bones beneath their feet remembered who they once belonged to. As they walked, Kronos spoke again, softly, like someone unburying the worst part of themselves. My brothers were older. One played the flute. One painted the sun every morning. One cried for the trees. One spoke every language. One could write entire lives with just a brushstroke. And the last one. He loved me. He stopped, voice shaking. He held me when I was scared. He told me I was more than what father said. And I let him die. They reached the end of the hall. A small chamber. A throne. Not grand. Just tall. Made of twisted metal. The kind that bends only when gods scream. On it sat no one. Just shadows. But they were shaped like a man. And they opened their arms. My son, the shadow said. You've come to take my place? Kronos looked at Naruto. Now older again. The child was gone. In his place. The man who had once taken time by the throat. This is the memory where I devoured the world. Not because I was hungry, but because I thought no one else could be trusted to protect it. He turned toward Naruto. And now Naruto could see. The crown on Kronos' head was not real. It was made of the pieces of others. Of regrets, shaped into gold. Of what-ifs melted down and forged into burden. To find the ninth piece, Kronos said, you'll have to understand what made me do it. Not just see it. Understand it. The shadow opened its mouth. And the hallway behind them closed. Myth engaged the trial of the first sin. Your role is being written. Please wait. Naruto stood still. The shadow of the father reaching toward him. The sins of the son watching. And somewhere far beyond the memory. Time turned its back. You are now assuming the role of Kronos, the seventh son. Synchronization level 17%. 42%. 93%. Warning, ego boundaries severed. You are now Kronos. He was born again. But he wasn't crying. Because he already knew how the story would end. He remembered the throne. He remembered the devouring. He remembered himself. But the child body didn't. It only knew fear. The new mother. If she could be called that. Was a silhouette made of stars and glass. Her face was kind. But she didn't name him. She called him seventh. Because names were promises. And promises got broken. The sixth held his hand when he cried. The fifth showed him how to paint the sky. The fourth brought him fireflies and told him not to be afraid of silence. The third laughed like sunbeams. The second carved music into the air. The first didn't speak often. But he was the one who stood in front of their father when the yelling got loud. He didn't protect them. But he tried. Kronos. Naruto. Grew in that palace of dread. Each hallway was a temple. Each shadow wore teeth. And their father was everywhere. Never seen. Only heard. He would sit in his room and press his ear to the floorboards. Sometimes he would hear chewing. And then someone would be gone. First it was second. Then third. Then fourth. The day fifth disappeared. He found a smear of red paint on the garden wall. And it wouldn't wash off. Sixth vanished without a sound. Just a cold plate of food left in the hallway. And the fireflies stopped coming. He was alone. Why? He whispered it once. Only once. To a mirror that didn't show his reflection. Why am I still here? And that night, the palace opened a door that had never been there before. A swamp. It wasn't inside the palace. It was inside a place beneath it. Beneath time. Beneath logic. Beneath love. The swamp didn't stink. It was quiet. Too quiet. The water was mirror smooth, but didn't reflect anything real. Only possibilities. Dead ones. He walked in. Because what else was left? Each step sucked his ankles deeper. Then his knees. Then his waist. The deeper he went, the more he forgot who he was. Not as Kronos. As Naruto. The memories came out of the water. Not his. Not really. But they felt like his. He saw a child burning the world with golden fire. Only to be called a monster. A boy protecting his mother from a drunk father, stabbing him once. Twice. Then crying as the world forgot what had happened. A thief, bleeding out beneath the sun he stole. A hero, abandoned by every god that made him. A god, screaming as he fell through the stars. He touched one, and felt his bones scream. Because it wasn't a memory. It was a fragment. Of something older. Of something watching. Then he heard it. The voice. What do you want? It came from the mud. From the stars. From behind his own eyes. He didn't answer. Because his mouth was full of silence. To be forgiven? The voice laughed. And the swamp shook. The trees. If they were trees. What think? You came here to see what made him fall. But you already know. You're already wearing the same mask. A ripple passed through him. The water rose to his chest now. And the stars began to dim. Synchronization level 100%. You are now Kronos. Reenactment of origin phase I descent. He opened his eyes again. And the world was made of glass clocks. Each one carried a reflection. Each one showed Naruto. But not just him. Versions of him. Thousands. Millions. All across every timeline he had looped. The one who hung himself in the orphanage at age 7. The one who stabbed himself after Mizuki told the truth. The one who laughed all the way off the Hokage monument. The one who made it to adulthood. Only to die when no one came home. The one who loved Hinata. And watched her marry someone else in a timeline that forgot him. They looked back at him. But none of them moved. Because they were echoes. and he was the last sound they remembered making. He walked between them, and the glass cracked beneath his feet. With each step, the pressure grew, because something was watching now, and it wasn't the swamp. It was the Black King. Or something before the Black King. It whispered, "You have felt every ending, but you have never seen the first. You are Kronos now. You must walk to the heart." The path opened. The swamp receded, but the weight never lessened. He had passed the outer trials, but the face had not yet appeared. Only when he reached the final tree. A twisted spiral grown from dead time. Did he see it? Hanging from a branch. The mask, black porcelain, veined with starlight, etched with every life he had ever looped. He reached out, and before he could touch it, it opened its eyes. "You've come far. Are you ready to wear me?" Naruto clenched his fists. "I came to break you." The mask laughed, not mocking, almost pleased. "Then become me." And everything shattered. He awoke in his own bed, breath ragged, heart hammering, mouth dry, but not with fear, with foreknowledge. He was not Naruto anymore. He was Kronos, the seventh son. And this was the day before it all went wrong. The sun rose like it was afraid of being seen. Outside his window, the palace stretched out endlessly. Spires carved from obsidian memory and gold that whispered the names of long-dead gods. Time here didn't flow. It coiled. The servants didn't have faces, just hourglasses embedded in their chests. Some full, some cracked. He passed them like they weren't there, because he'd done this before. System error. System has been denied access to this timeline. Narrative authority Kronos exclusive. You are the story now. At breakfast, the table was empty. No brothers, no conversation, just one bowl, one spoon, and a shadow on the far wall that pulsed when he blinked. His father's voice echoed from nowhere. "You will inherit nothing. You will preserve the world by being forgotten." Kronos didn't answer, because he had. Already, that afternoon, he stood before a mirror. It was shaped like a coffin turned inside out. The reflection it showed wasn't his face, but Naruto's. Pale, cracked, fading. "Don't forget who you are," the voice whispered, "or you'll become who I was." The day passed like the world wanted to skip it. The sky blinked from dawn to dusk in a single heartbeat. And still, he hadn't seen his brothers. At night, he heard the scream. Not the kind that came from pain, the kind that came from understanding. He ran through the palace. The halls stretched longer than they were supposed to. Doors appeared, then disappeared behind him. The air grew colder, not with temperature, with regret. He reached the throne room. The doors were open. His father wasn't there, but his mother was. Or what was left of her. A statue, frozen mid-begging, hands reaching towards something that had already disappeared. And in front of her, a trail of gold dust. Faint footprints. One set. Small. "I begged you to run." The voice came from behind him. He turned and saw his eldest brother, pale, smiling, bleeding from the eyes. "I told you not to come back here. He only kept you alive because you were the youngest, because he wanted you to remember." Kronos fell to his knees, because he knew what came next. He knew what had already happened, but the myth wouldn't let him escape it. "He ate me last, because I loved you most." And then the mirror cracked, and the world shifted. Now he stood again in the swamp, but it was no longer quiet. It was roaring, like the past had come alive again. A storm churned in the sky, lightning made of memories. Each bolt a scene of failure, each clap of thunder. Another name he let die. Kronos walked through it, because he had no choice. Because destiny was a room with no doors, and he had already walked inside. The black tree stood in the center, the same one from before. But now, it was alive, and it was calling him. Its bark peeled open, revealing faces, screaming, laughing, some begging, some simply watching. He touched it, and it let him in. Inside, a spiral staircase made of clock hands. Each step counted backwards. With every step down, he felt himself lose something: his name, his face, his guilt, his mercy, until all that was left was the question, what would you sacrifice to save the world from yourself? At the bottom of the stair, a basin waited, filled not with water, but reflections, each one a future where he had become something worse than his father. "Choose one," the basin said, "the one you fear most." He looked, and saw it: a throne, a mask, a child crying in his arms, a sword in his hand, a crown made of broken promises. "This is the path," the tree whispered. "This is the sin. This is how a boy becomes a face." He reached into the basin, and pulled the reflection free. It was cold, wet, heavy, and it fit his hand perfectly. The world shattered again. Now, he was not a child, not a man, not a god, but something in between, something watching. He stood atop a spiral tower made of years, and at the center of the sky, the Black King, not a figure, a presence, endless, voiceless, but alive. A single eye opened in the void, and looked at him. "Do you accept my face?" Kronos. Naruto knelt, not in obedience, in surrender. "I already wore it. You just made it visible." The eye blinked, and a mask appeared in his hand. It was not black, not yet, just blank, waiting to be filled. Final synchronization begins. "You are assuming the true memory of the first sin. Please proceed to the throne." He sat upon the throne, and for a moment, the world refused to breathe. The swamp stilled, not because it was calm, but because even the soil had begun to remember. The throne beneath him pulsed faintly, as if recognizing a new shape trying to wear an old sin. Naruto didn't move. He couldn't, not because of fear, but because he could feel it. The weight, the wrongness, the prophecy that never should have been remembered. And then, the sky split. Not open, not apart. It peeled, like something ancient had exhaled too hard and reality forgot how to hold itself together. The first to step through the rift was Izanami, shrouded in mourning robes, eyes hidden behind weeping ash. Each step she took made the swamp wither beneath her. She did not speak at first. She only stared, and then whispered, "This place is supposed to be sealed. What is a dream again?" Then came Tsukuyami, draped in light from broken moons. His gaze passed over Naruto without touching him, as if to look directly would be a kind of permission. He said nothing, only folded his arms and watched. The earth cracked open next. Odin emerged, taller than the trees, older than the stars above him. His beard dripped constellations. His one eye burned with judgment. And still, he flinched when he saw the throne. "This was supposed to be erased," he muttered. "We let it be erased." Then descended Metatron, not flying, just falling slowly, wings of rotating script curling behind him in layers of metallic gospel. His face was unreadable, but his aura screamed scripture. One word pulsed behind him like a chime unwritten. And finally, the world bent. Time paused, and she arrived, the heavenly demon. She did not walk. She did not fly. She did not appear. She was, and everything else had to make room. The swamp lowered. The sky dimmed. Even the gods. Odin, Izanami, Tsukuyami, Metatron. Stepped back. Only a single pace. But it was enough. Her robes did not flow. They commanded. The air behind her split with every breath. And the world washed itself through her eyes. She did not glance around. She did not take in the swamp or the throne or the corpse in the sky. She only looked at him. At Naruto. At the boy who now sat on a chair made from the bones of sin. And when she spoke, her voice was not loud, but the silence that followed it lasted longer than sound was meant to hold. "You." Naruto's throat closed. Not from fear, but from the pressure of being seen. Not his mask. Not Kronos. Him. The other gods said nothing, because this was no longer their moment. This was hers. She took a step forward. The swamp boiled. The corpse in the sky began to twitch. Metatron's script grew jagged. Odin's grip tightened. Izanami whispered a prayer for something already dead. And she spoke again. "I don't know why my future self let you live in the library." The silence cracked like a blade dragged across stained glass. "But I won't make that mistake." She raised her hand. No glow. No chant. No flourish. Just her hand. And still, the swamp began to burn. Not with fire. With memory. Naruto stood. He didn't remember doing it. His body just moved. Because something inside him said, "Not yet." Above, the corpse of the outer god split open. Its ribs peeled outward like rotten pages in an eternal book. Inside a spiral staircase of black script. An endless library. A void made from the weight of forgotten truth. He jumped. She moved. The other gods released their power. The air cracked. The swamp shrieked. The world turned upside down. But the ribs sealed behind him. And Naruto was gone. Just like that. The throne emptied again. And time resumed. But it was different now. Slower. Wounded. Like the world had just remembered a story it had sworn to forget. The gods stood in silence. Odin lowered his gaze. Tsukuyami turned to leave. Metatron's wings slowly folded into words that would not be spoken aloud. And Izanami whispered he made it inside. The heavenly demon didn't move. She stood in place, staring at where the boy had disappeared. And her voice, at last, was quiet again. "So it begins." There were no stars inside the corpse. Only pages. Naruto landed hard. But there was no ground. Only scripture. Boundless, drifting, stacked in ways geometry should never allow. The library was not quiet. It shivered, like a breathing thing pretending to be dead. Like it knew someone had entered who should not have been allowed. He stood, and for a moment, nothing moved. Even the books, even the air, even the thing at the center. Waited. Location dead library of the forgotten god. System access locked. Chronocausal access absolute. Warning: the Black King watches from behind the ink. The staircase spiraled down into a hollow filled with floating texts, bound in skin and shadow. Some glowed. Some whimpered. One opened as Naruto passed, and screamed a single word again. Before dissolving into smoke, he walked. Slowly. Each step felt heavier. Not with exhaustion. With narrative pressure. The way old tragedies sit in the lungs of a cursed world. He reached the center of the library. There it pulsed. A thing. Not alive. Not dead. A body shaped like an eye that had been folded in half, then inverted. It had no face. But he could feel it watching. The corpse of an outer god. Still breathing. Even in death. Even now. Kronos' memory burned behind Naruto's vision. This is where I should have stopped. This is where I should have run. But he hadn't. And now Naruto wouldn't either. The outer god began to stir. The books around it turned their pages inward, hiding themselves. Some combusted. One tried to crawl away. The silence shattered. The corpse moved. A mass of blackened limbs uncoiled from the ribcage. No mouth. No roar. Only scripture. Words older than law spun through the air like smoke. Each one burning just to perceive. Naruto fell to one knee. Not from attack. From memory. But they weren't his. They were Kronos's. Pouring into him like seawater into a drowning soul. You can't kill it. Not like this. You have to wear it. Naruto looked down. The mask of the Black King hovered before him. Still blank. Still asking. Still waiting to be chosen. Face of the Black King synchronization 72%. Warning: incomplete merger will result in ego bleed. Proceed. He reached out. Because he had no choice. Synchronization accelerating. 89%. 94%. 99%. Face assimilation complete. Divine impurity granted. And then everything screamed. The books. The corpse. The world. His mind. He stood. But he wasn't standing on anything. The library had become a maelstrom of reversed memory. And at the center, the outer god surged toward him. But Naruto didn't dodge. He stepped forward and rewrote its trajectory. The space between them glitched. Like the library couldn't accept that someone had just changed fate. The air became ink. Naruto spoke. He didn't know what he said. But the library did. And the corpse heard. And the world obeyed. The outer god convulsed. It tried to flee. Too late. Naruto moved once. And the cause of its existence broke. Not its body. Its reason for being. You have slain the outer god of forgotten domains. Reward: forbidden scripture of the inverted Omega. Warning: this knowledge cannot be forgotten. The corpse collapsed into a book. The book opened itself. And Naruto's hands turned the page. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then he saw it. A prophecy. He could not look away. Even as his skin trembled. Even as his breath vanished. Even as the mask of the Black King began to fuse deeper into his face. He read it. It was only 3 lines. But they did not end. The child will kill the father. The father will become the child. To prevent the end, he will devour the future. His hands shook. He couldn't stop reading it. Even as it began to loop. Even as it changed. The 7th will eat the 6th. The 5th will call him savior. The 4th will beg him to stop. The 3rd will hold his hand. The 2nd will cry his name. The 1st will forgive him. And still, he will devour them all. He tried to look away. But the prophecy grabbed him. Not with hands. With certainty. It climbed into his mind. And whispered this was always how it ends. He screamed. But the sound had no exit. Because there was no air left. Only prophecy. Only ink. Only him. Kronos had not killed his children out of power. Or hatred. Or destiny. He had done it because the book had told him to. And now Naruto knew what it felt like. To read something so absolute. You could no longer tell which thoughts were yours. Cognitive overload detected. Sanity threshold breached. Identity stabilization failing. Attempting isolation. He dropped the book. But it stuck to his hands. Like it wanted to be read again. The library folded. Reality cracked. And somewhere, the Black King whispered, it begins. The sky was a battlefield. Clouds did not drift. They clashed. Lightning cracked like iron gates being torn from reality. And at the center of the storm, 2 gods faced one another. Kronos stood barefoot in the heavens. Cloaked in memory. Eyes veiled by the face of the Black King. His hands held no weapon. Only the weight of what he had seen. Across from him. Wreathed in thunder and fury. Zeus. Not as man. Not as myth. As judgment. You are not my father, Zeus thundered. You are a shadow of yourself. Kronos didn't argue. Because it was true. He had read too far. Lived too long. Held the prophecy too close. And now, the face on his skull did not resemble the one he was born with. He didn't fight back. Because there was no point. Because he had already lost. Zeus hurled the final bolt. And Kronos. Once the devourer of time. Once the king who broke fate. Shattered. But the story did not end. He opened his eyes. The morning before. Again. The birds sang. The stars lingered a little longer in the sky. And the clouds hadn't yet begun to bleed. He stood again. Same clothes. Same breath. Same dread. He faced Zeus that day too. And he died. And the day repeated. Again. 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 Sometimes he begged. Sometimes he tried to win. Sometimes he did nothing at all. But every time, Zeus's bolt fell. And Kronos died. Until, one day, he didn't resist. He stood atop the world. And let the wind run through his ribs. The mask hung from his fingertips. No longer fused to his face. Only waiting. This isn't your story anymore, Kronos whispered. And it's not mine either. Zeus appeared again. Lightning in hand. Eyes ablaze. Ready to end the cycle once more. But this time, Kronos reached into himself. Not for power. Not for time. Not for the prophecy. He reached for his divinity. And cut it loose. The sky cracked. Not from thunder. But from release. The thread of Kronos. The divine authority of time. Unraveled. Fell like golden ash. And then, the mask of the Black King shattered. Not from force. From choice. And beneath his feet, a spring burst open. The spring. The hidden one. The unnamed one. The last river of hope. It flowed backward and forward. Carrying regret and love and sacrifice in equal measure. It did not carry power. It carried second chances. Kronos fell into it. Not screaming, not resisting, just letting go. And the spring fell to the earth. It passed through skies that no longer remembered their gods, through forests that had forgotten their first names, through mountains that once knew the shape of prayer, and then it crashed into the world. It landed not with a quake, but with a pulse, a quiet shock that rippled across the earth like a skipped heartbeat. It touched every corner, and no one noticed, because it was not meant to be seen. In one age, a boy was born holding a blade that remembered a war no one spoke of. In another, a girl wept for a world that hadn't died yet, but would. Elsewhere, a wanderer refused to kneel before kings, even as his bones turned to dust. And again, and again, and again, Kronos lived. He lived as a knight who gave his name to a ruined castle, a poet who spoke only in riddles that predicted death, a warlord who marched alone so his army wouldn't have to, a thief who stole time from the mouths of tyrants, a monk who carved names into the wind. And finally, he was born in a village that fought war from the moment he opened his eyes. A child named Naruto. No throne, no mask, no spring, just an empty name, and a world that never wanted to remember, because it wasn't supposed to, because it couldn't. Not until now. Not until the mask cracked again. He thought it was over. He had severed his divinity, broken the loop, let the spring fall to earth, and turned his back on time. He had no name anymore, no mask, no title. He lived simply, quietly, as a man. His hair turned white early. People said it was the wind, the sorrow of wandering. No one remembered his face. No one ever did. But then he found her, not at a temple, not in a war, not in a field of prophecy, in a marketplace, selling oranges. She had laugh lines and stubborn eyes, hair like sun-warmed bark, and a smile that never looked at him, just past him, like she already knew how the story would end. She wasn't Ria, not yet, not outwardly. She was a woman named Mirai, and when he spoke to her, he felt nothing at first, just warmth, just curiosity, just comfort. They met again, and again, and again. He began to walk slower through town just to catch her voice on the wind. He memorized her footsteps. He laughed at things that weren't funny, just to hear her do the same. Years passed. Seasons changed. He never told her what he had been. She never told him who she really was. Because in this life, they were not gods. They were just people. And then, one night, it rained. They sat in silence, a candle between them, and she said, "You never asked me about my past." He said, "I don't want to wake something we finally got to let sleep." She stared at him for a long time, then nodded, and smiled, the same way she had when he first called her Ria, back before he wore a crown. They never spoke about it again. They didn't need to. They built a home. She planted peach trees in the garden. He built a koi pond that never filled. They argued over flooring. They laughed about thunder. And then one day, she put his hand on her belly, and he cried, because he had never known peace could come back. Their son was born in spring. They named him Minato. He was beautiful, sharp-eyed, quiet-hearted, fast even as a baby. He smiled like sunlight, trying not to blind anyone. And the man who once devoured time itself, named the child after a wish. "Minato," he said, "because I want someone to remember it one day." And for a while, everything was good, but nothing gold stays, and the spring never forgets. The first sign came in winter. The koi pond overflowed. The stars disappeared for 3 nights. And on the 4th, he saw it, a crack in the sky, thin, bleeding ink, pulsing like a wound. The Black King had noticed. Not him, not Ria, not even Minato, but what their bloodline represented, what their story had survived. He tried to run, to flee with them, to hide, to bury their names so deep no system could find them. It didn't matter. They came anyway. The silence, the narrative static, the mask without a face, and it began to sever. Not limbs, not life, narrative presence. He felt himself disappearing from memory, not dying, being overwritten. Ria screamed. She hadn't screamed since the war of the first cycle. He grabbed her hand, but it was already beginning. Minato couldn't see them anymore. Not really. He ran into the house, crying. And the man named Naruto, who had once been Kronos, made a choice. He called the spring back. Only once. Just a whisper. And it answered. Chronostasis activated. Target Ria. The air turned blue. Ria froze mid-breath. Eyes wide. Mouth parted. Tears still falling. A statue of everything he had to leave behind. He sealed her. Not in a tomb. Not in a scroll. In the last second she was still loved. And then, the Black King severed him. The world did not explode. It simply moved on. Without him. Without memory. Without legacy. Minato grew up remembering nothing. Only that he liked the name Naruto. It felt right. So he kept it in his heart, and gave it to his son. And one day, the spring would open again, and someone would remember. But not yet. Not for a long, long time. It was quiet again. Not peaceful. Just quiet. The pages around him had stopped shifting. The corpse of the outer god had curled in on itself. The library of the forgotten god was closed. But still breathing. Still waiting. Naruto stood in the hollow center of it all. And inside him, Kronos stirred. Not like a possession. Not like a spirit. Like a memory that had never truly ended. And finally, he spoke. Not aloud. Not in words. But in thought. In gravity. In the weight that books sometimes carry when the truth inside them is too heavy to read. I tried to come back. Naruto closed his eyes, and the library let him see the world as it once was. Cloaked in dusk, held hostage by prophecy, the Black King ruled through silence. Not by speaking, but by erasing. Every god that rose from below was chained. Every god that came from above was broken. He saw it. Entire pantheons reduced to narrative husks. Scrolls rewritten. Statues melted into myth. Whole faiths devoured by the gap between chapters. And I was no different. When I severed myself, I thought I had escaped him. I was wrong. He remembered the day he first felt something new arrive. A crack in the ink. A laugh. A twitch. A single anomaly. Then he came. The mischievous plotter. An outer one, yes. But unlike the others, where the rest whispered corruption. He told stories. Tiny ones. Jokes. Games. A punchline with a knife behind it. The Black King hated him. Because he couldn't erase him. Couldn't predict him. Couldn't contain him. He was the first to defy the great silence. And the moment he appeared, the Black King's grasp began to decay. Kronos tried to follow him, to ride that loophole back into the world. But something stopped him. Every time. A wall. No. Worse. A man. A man wrapped in gravity. Burning not with hatred, but with order. Nagato. Naruto's breath hitched. Because he knew that name. But not like this. Not as a sentinel. Not as a force of nature. Kronos continued. He wasn't born to stop me. But something changed him. He became a border. A law. No god may walk the world. No ghost may re-enter the story. No piece may return to the board once removed. He enforced it all, even on me. And then the library around them shivered. Because even the books knew what memory came next. The last time Kronos tried to reclaim his place, it was a broken field of red sand. A battlefield already forgotten. The sky held no clouds. Only pressure. Like the world was waiting for a reason to end. Kronos walked alone. No weapon. No mask. No spring. Just the memory of being someone who once mattered. And then, he was there. Nagato. White-robed. Eyes empty. Hair like ash at the bottom of an eternal fire. Behind him. Conan. Silent. Watching. The only thing about her that moved was her shadow. Kronos stopped 20 paces away. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't make threats. He just said, please, let me see my son again. Nagato didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Only said you are not part of this world. You gave that up. You cannot re-enter what you severed. Kronos stepped forward. Just one pace. And the sky screamed. Not thunder. Not wind. Just pressure. Collapsing. Conan flinched. Nagato didn't. He simply raised his hand. And the world obeyed. Chains erupted from the ground. Not metal. Not chakra. Law. Conceptual anchors shaped like kanji. Each one bearing a rule of reality. Each one dragging Kronos to the edge of forgetfulness. He fought. But not like a god. Like a man who'd already lost. He screamed a name that no longer existed. The spring boiled behind his eyes. His memories cracked. The mask appeared again. Flickering. Asking to be worn. He refused. Nagato approached. You think your story matters? You think it deserves to be remembered? It doesn't. Not here. He raised his hand. And the narrative enforcement surged forward. And Naruto, now watching all of this unfold, tensed. Because he could feel it. This wasn't over. Not then. Not now. Kronos turned back toward him from memory. Eyes fraying at the edges. And whispered, I failed. But you're still inside the page. The memory shattered. But the fight hadn't ended yet. The library held the rest. And Naruto knew. He had to see it. All of it. The world had rejected him. Kronos stood bleeding across a battlefield that no longer remembered its own name. The sky was folding inwards. The law of the scenario screamed. And Nagato stood at the eye of it all. Not angry. Not merciful. Just inevitable. Kronos could barely lift his arms. His divinity long since gone. The Black King's face melted off his skin long ago. And yet, he stood. Chains of system law wrapped around his ankles. His shoulders. His memory. Each one branded with kanji, too old to be read. Each one representing a different rule. No ghost may return. No page may refill once burned. No time beyond the system. No spring after silence. And yet, he moved. Nagato raised a hand. Not in threat, but like he was pressing something beneath the narrative. And the world collapsed. The ground dropped away. The sky sharpened into knives. Kronos felt the presence of gods watching from behind the code. Silent. Unblinking. Unwilling to intervene. Because this was enforcement. Kronos struck. No power behind it. Just refusal. He drew nothing. And yet his hand remembered a sword that cut probability. A spear that returned with each kill. A chain that dragged sins from the past. Each motion triggered echoes. And in the air, those echoes formed weapons. Each one brief, like a story halfway erased. Nagato dodged none of them. He unwrote them. Reality behind his eyes blurred. He did not move fast. He simply moved correctly. Every strike Kronos made. Allah answered it. No looping blades. No fate-forged arrows. No time-lost armor, and still. Kronos kept swinging. His fists cracked through the mist. Each blow landed like a myth trying to retell itself. And for a moment, the world almost let it happen. But Nagato raised both hands and whispered, "That's enough." And reality ended. Kronos hit the ground. Breath gone. History peeling away. The sky above became white. Then blank. Then void. Conan stood behind Nagato now. Still silent. Still mourning. Because she, too, had once believed in stories. Kronos reached for the spring. But it didn't respond. Not yet. He'd hidden it too well. Found it too deeply. Nagato turned away. Kronos could already feel it. He would not survive this timeline. Not as a person. Not even as a memory. And so, he chose the last thing he could do. He cast the spring. It broke through his chest like a beam of light. Swirling. Changing. Crying. And he whispered its true name. Not to Nagato. Not to Conan. To the world itself. Your name is time. And the spring heard him. It became a sword. Then a bow. Then a bell. Then a hammer. Then a staff. Then a ribbon. Then a ring. Then a whisper. Then a seed. And then a drop of light. Falling. Ninth piece created the spring that never broke. True name time. Divine weapon type all. Final function. System incompatibility detected. Object is beyond narrative enforcement. Nagato turned back in surprise. Too late. The spring passed through his domain. Passed beyond the system. Fell through the seams of the scenario. And disappeared. Kronos smiled. As the chains finally pulled him into non-existence. He had no last words. Just the memory of one promise one day. Someone will find you. Someone who needs a way out. And far, far away. In the present. In a cave filled with collapsed constellations. Naruto opened his eyes. The meditation room pulsed once. And in his lap lay a small, silver object. A tiny stream of mist flowing around it. Changing shape every time he blinked. It was not active. Not yet. Because the spring had not acknowledged him. And on the edge of his hearing. Kronos' voice whispered to claim the ninth piece. You must earn its name. And time itself must acknowledge you. The spring shimmered. And stilled. Waiting. Like it always had. The spring waited. It didn't shine. It didn't pulse. It simply was. A stream of silver and blue. Shifting in form. Holding its breath. Naruto sat cross-legged before it. The meditation cave had long since folded into silence. There was no system here. No time. No scenario. Only this. His hand hovered above the stream. It shimmered at his presence. But did not open. Access denied. Narrative identity incomplete. You are not yet yourself. He closed his eyes. And whispered. Then I'll become me. And he began. Not with rage. Not with defiance. With release. The first thing he unmade was his name. Naruto Uzumaki revoked. Legacy binding nullified. Lineage undefined. Then his face. He reached into his memory and unstitched it. The blur others saw. He made it complete. Removed the illusion of self. Perceived identity obscured. Visual form dissolved. Then his story. Every loop. Every death. Every friend he couldn't save. Every version of himself that had died unnamed. He burned them. And not one screamed. Because they knew. This was mercy. Then came the hard part. He erased the part of him that wanted to be loved. That wanted to be remembered. That wanted to return home. That wanted to be seen. And the last thing he removed was his fear of being alone. There was nothing left. Not even chakra. Not even pain. Just stillness. And in that stillness, he felt it. A step. Not physical. Not sonic. Just a presence. Like a ripple through a pond of fate. He opened his eyes. And she was there. Not beautiful. Not divine. Just right. Like a missing heartbeat rediscovered. She wore no crown. No wings. Her hair flowed like stardust made tired. Her dress was a sundial made of regret. And her eyes? Her eyes were not eyes. They were moments. So she said, you let yourself go. Her voice was not kind. Not cruel. It was true. You threw it all away. The names. The bonds. The pain. Everything. So what do you want now? He said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. He simply bowed his head. And reached forward. To the spring. You don't get to hold me, she said. Not until you tell me who you are. He looked up. And whispered, I don't know yet. She stepped closer. And for the first time, she smiled. Correct answer. The spring surged. Silver flames wrapped around him. Not burning him. Fusing to him. Each flicker of light turned into a story. Not of gods. Not of warriors. But of choices. Of consequences. And she spoke, I watched you die. Thousands of times. In timelines that never stabilized. In memories the world threw away. You screamed for someone to see you. And no one did. Except me. I heard you. Not because I had to. But because I was the only one who couldn't look away. You never chose to be born. You never chose to loop. But you chose to keep going. You chose to remember others. Even when they forgot you. And finally, she touched his hand. And the spring wrapped around his fingers like a ribbon of silver fate. The spring that never broke awakened. Ninth piece claimed. Divine weapon function all. True name time. Status acknowledged. Narrative identity reconstructed. Designation the one chosen by time. She leaned down. Her voice softer now. Remember this. You weren't born for them. You were born for you. Now go write the ending. And the world around him lit up. The cave exploded into galaxies. The constellations spun backward. The ground shifted into starlight. And Naruto stood, whole, alive, self-made, in his hand. The spring curled into a sword of glass, then a chain of light, then a staff wrapped in wind, and finally, a flicker of a blade that cuts through forgotten things. He didn't speak, because time had already said everything. And when he stepped outside, the stars bowed, because someone who had been erased had written himself back in. The system didn't stop just because Naruto was gone. After the tournament of power, after the Leaf Village bent the narrative to its will and paid for it in blood, there had been no time to mourn, no time to rest. The scenarios rolled forward like a tide that forgot how to recede. Scenario 40, the convergence of 5. Cleared. Scenario 41, the Ashen Creed. Cleared. Scenario 42, the Apostate's Trial. Cleared. Scenario 43, the Gate without a name. Cleared. Scenario 44. In progress. Current survivors 1,140. Scenario clearance requirement 3 Pantheon keys. There were fewer players now. The world had fractured into floating fragments of what once was. Each region a battlefield. Each village reduced to borderless sanctuaries of shifting rules and impossible maps. And still, they continued. Konoha's survivors were among the strongest. Hinata moved alone, trailed by whispers of wood that bloomed in her footsteps. Sasuke wore the storm now like a coat. He didn't speak often, but when he did, the world listened. Kushina and Minato operated like a war duo from legend, their divine coordination earning them reverence even from enemy factions. Niji, Tenten, Kakashi. Each one broken, each one still standing. They all pushed forward. But there was one name no one spoke anymore. One person not listed on the scenario survivor rankings. Not confirmed dead. Not confirmed alive. Just absent. Might Guy. No one knew what had happened to him after scenario 40. Not really. There were rumors that he had lost his will to fight after Lee's death. That he had vanished into the folds between scenarios. That he'd tried to revive his pupil and failed. No one had seen him since. Some said he retired. Some said he broke. Some said he ascended. And then, just before the 44th scenario began, a system message flickered through every open channel. Not an alarm. Not an urgency. Just in quiet, trembling respect. Update mortal power rankings adjusted. The Martial King Sasuke, Uchiha Nagato Hinata Senju Minato Namikaze. Note the title Martial King does not correspond to any known registered survivor. Kakashi was the first to see it. He blinked at the name and whispered, Guy? Tintin dropped her blade mid-cleaning. Niji paused mid-movement during his kata. Kushina clenched her fist and turned toward the southern sky. No one spoke the name, but they knew. He hadn't died. He hadn't stopped. He had just left, somewhere far beyond the reach of the current scenario. Outside the range of the Pantheon observers, a man sat alone atop a cracked plateau of stilled lightning. His hair was longer now, unkempt. His eyebrows still refused to obey gravity, but his posture? Straight as ever. He breathed slowly, deeply. With every exhale, the wind adjusted to accommodate him. With every inhale, the system blinked once and tried to pretend it hadn't. Status not a participant. Status not a god. Status not a weapon. Title the Martial King. System note this entity exists outside all recognized classifications. Observation privileges suspended indefinitely. He opened his eyes, and the sun adjusted its orbit by a fraction, just enough to acknowledge his gaze. This man no longer walked with youth, because he had become it. Not the burning kind, the enduring kind, the one that says, even if no one sees me, even if no one remembers me, I will keep walking. His fingers curled into a stance. No chakra, no enhancements, no divine sponsor, just motion, just breath, just resolve. The Martial King stood and began his morning form. Each step cracked the clouds. Each movement bent the wind. Each pause felt like history catching its breath. Far away, Sasuke paused mid-swing during a solo match. His eyes narrowed. You felt that? Hinata asked. Yeah, Sasuke said. I did. You think it's him? He didn't answer. Just looked to the horizon. Because sometimes, you don't need a system message to know someone's alive. Sometimes, the world just tells you. The wind moved differently that morning. Not faster, not slower, just smarter, like it didn't want to interrupt what was coming. The Martial King, once Might Guy, had just finished his 10,000th form repetition of the day. His hands were cracked. His bare feet bled slowly into the stone. His hair was wind-battered and untamed. But his breathing, still steady, still warm, still full of fire. The plateau where he stood was high enough that clouds often tried to settle here. None succeeded. The air pressure bent around him like a prayer too humble to interrupt training. And then, it shifted. The sound didn't come from footsteps, or chakra, or power. It came from certainty, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. A white-robed figure stood at the edge of the horizon, watching, silent. He had no need to speak, but he did anyway. It's been a long time, Might Guy. The Martial King didn't turn. He just took another step in his kata, and exhaled. I don't go by that name anymore. Nagato approached. His robes moved like paper through water. never quite touching the world, but never separate from it. His Rinnegan eyes didn't judge. They measured. He stopped 10 paces away. Any closer would have been an affront. They call you the Martial King now. A title, not a name. A principle, then. Maybe. They stood in silence. Just the wind between them, and the weight of every god in the sky that didn't dare look down. Nagato eventually spoke again. Softly, like a crack forming in unbreakable steel. You know, out of everyone that exists, every mortal, every demigod, every ascendant. If you wanted to ascend, you're the only one I couldn't stop. The Martial King didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He just finished his movement, lowered into a grounded stance, and responded. Flat. Certain. I won't. Nagato watched him carefully, as if trying to solve a puzzle that didn't want to be solved. Why? He asked. Why limit yourself from exuviation? The Martial King raised his gaze. For the first time in years, he looked someone in the eye. Because Lee wouldn't. The words didn't echo. They rooted. They took hold in the space between them and grew into something the system couldn't classify. He didn't stop growing. Not until the end. He believed in reaching your limit. Only to break it. Again. And again. He lifted a fist. Not to fight. To show. The skin torn. The knuckles worn. But the fire still present. Until I'm strong enough to destroy everything. Until I can rewrite the meaning of effort itself. I won't ascend. Nagato was silent. But not in disagreement. Just reverence. Most beings seek transcendence to escape suffering. But you're dragging suffering with you. The Martial King nodded once. Because pain is proof of effort. And effort is proof I haven't given up. Nagato studied him. And in his voice, for the first time, there was something approaching admiration. Do you believe you'll ever reach that peak? The Martial King gave a tiny smile. Not smug. Not confident. Just alive. No, but that's not the point. And again, silence. But this time it was warm. Nagato closed his eyes. And for a second, he looked tired. Not old. Not weak. Just burdened. Like someone who'd carried the rules for too long. The world is nearing its final arc, he said. The outer gods are stirring. Even my mother is beginning to move. Soon, I won't be able to protect this plane from them. The Martial King remained still. He didn't offer comfort. He didn't panic. He just listened. When that time comes, Nagato said quietly, will you stand with the living? The Martial King turned back toward the horizon. A storm was gathering there. Not clouds. Just intent. I'll stand where my student would have. Nagato smiled faintly. A fraction. And then turned to leave. Then I hope the world deserves you. He vanished into mist. The system did not register his departure. Because it couldn't. Because the system knew. This place wasn't for it anymore. The Martial King stood alone once again. And took his stance. The wind shifted back into its orbit. And the morning forms continued. Because the world hadn't ended yet. An effort couldn't be paused. Scenario 49, the Frozen Sieve. Status ongoing, objective locate. And stabilize the pulse of the Forgotten Deity survivors 1091 scenario ranking first. Sector Konoha time remaining 3 days. It was rare for everyone to be still. The scenarios didn't usually allow that. They punished stillness. Demanded action. Measured the value of breath by how many gods watched you take it. But now, even the gods were quiet. The frozen ruins of Scenario 49 were buried beneath aurora-colored snow, untouched by blood or ambition. For the moment. So they Saturday Konoha's champions. No longer a squad. No longer just survivors. Something in between a family and a fading dream. Kushina cleaned her chain blade by the fire. Minato sat near her, quietly etching ceiling symbols onto scraps of cloth. Not for power, just out of habit. Niji meditated under the flickering auroras. His blindfold fluttered gently. He didn't speak, but his silence had stopped being lonely a long time ago. Tintin twirled a dagger that looked like it came from a god no one remembered. Kakashi snored under 3 layers of cloaks. Guy was gone. Rock Lee didn't need to be spoken of. And Sasuke stood on the edge of the ice, watching the stars, like he was waiting for one of them to fall so he could chase it. Hinata sat cross-legged, wrapped in wool and story. She had grown quieter, not in fear, in weight. There was something inside her now that felt older than before, like she had inherited memory itself. The others sometimes asked her what the gods told her. She never answered directly, only said, I don't hear them. I feel them reading. Tonight, she had a scroll in her lap. Blank. Not for training, not for planning, just blank. And she whispered, when all of this ends, I'm going to write a book. Sasuke didn't turn, but he heard. For Naruto, she said, I want him to know what happened while he was gone. What he saved. She traced the edge of the parchment with her fingertip, smiled a little, like it hurt. I want him to know he wasn't alone, even if no one remembered him. I did. She didn't know about the other her. The one who already wrote the book. The one whose name, Wyman, was whispered by the spring. The one who had already filled 1,000,000 blank pages under moonlight. She just knew that she missed him. Tintin looked up. Think he'll read it? Hinata nodded. Even if he can't. Even if he doesn't know it's from me. Even if it's never published. Even if the gods erase it. He'll feel it. Niji opened one eye. His chakra hummed like winter breath. What would you title it? Hinata looked toward the stars and whispered, "Hope." Elsewhere in the camp, Kushina looked up from her seal work, watched Minato's fingers move automatically, eyes heavy with a fatigue he would never speak aloud. "Do you ever think we should have known?" she asked. Minato blinked. "Known what?" She didn't answer, just exhaled. Near the outer ring of the scenario boundary, Kakashi stirred from sleep. A dream he didn't remember had passed through him. It left no image, just a name he couldn't say out loud, and a pulse of wind, somewhere far from them all. The martial king walked along a path no one else could follow, and paused. His hand twitched. He looked up at the sky, and smiled, and even farther than that. In a place before time, but after choice. Naruto sat in the starlight of his final meditation. The spring curled at his feet, waiting, and somehow, he heard her. "I'll write it all down, I promise." And though he didn't remember her voice, he cried anyway, because sometimes, hope speaks before the story is ready to hear it.